Welcome to Senpai, your new home for immersive manga, manhwa, anime-inspired novels, and fantasy audiobook stories. Here, every episode brings you into a world of overpowered heroes, revenge arcs, cultivation journeys, virtual reality games, monsters, magic, and emotional character moments. Whether you enjoy dark fantasy, action, reincarnation, system stories, or epic adventure novels, Senpai is here to turn every chapter into a cinematic listening experience. So relax, put on your headphones, and let the story begin. Subscribe to Senpai and join the journey.
Then, did you recover all of your previous memories as well? Ling Mo hurriedly seized the opportunity to change the subject and asked, "No, I only feel as if there's a lot more things in my head." Shana's eyes revealed yet another perplexed look and said, "A lot of things, but they all feel very hazy." It was hard to blame her. Although her memories had probably come pouring in over the past 3 days, the enormous amount of information would take longer than that to process. In fact, she might be even more muddle-headed than before. After every evolution, some of her previously repressed memories by the virus would be set free. She was even regaining bits of her sanity, even while she continuously observed and pondered over things. But even if that set some of the foundation, suddenly thinking about many things at once would be rather difficult to recover from in such a short period of time. Being able to speak so fluently after just waking up could already be considered an impressive achievement. This was especially so after looking at Shana's expression. She seemed rather indifferent towards these memories. This was probably due to her mentality as a zombie. She had absolutely no interest in her past as a human. Even after waking up, the very first things she thought of were events that had happened after turning into a zombie, such as the shameless things that had happened between her and Ling Mo. Ling Mo vaguely felt that Shana might have been intentionally avoiding her past memories. Upon seeing the strange look in Ling Mo's eyes as he looked at her, Shana shook her head and said, "I feel that the way things are right now is good, so you don't have to look at me in such a way." It looked like Shana had indeed recovered by a lot. She even knew how to read a person's body language. Ling Mo suddenly let out a bitter laugh. In truth, he couldn't quite describe how he was feeling at the moment. He had originally hoped that Ye Lian and Shana would be able to completely recover. Even if their bodies were still that of zombies, Ling Mo would be happy as long as their minds reverted to that of humans. After all, Ling Mo always subconsciously felt that despite Ye Lian and Shana's status as zombies, a day would surely come where they'd be able to completely regain their sanity as humans. This was especially so for Ye Lian. She was already a zombie when found her, and Ling Mo placed the most hope on her turning back into a human. After all, the majority of his relationship with Shana was built after she had turned into a zombie, while his relationship with Ye Lian was one that was built solely while she was still human. But from the looks of things, such a way of thinking wasn't going to come true. Once one turned into a zombie, their nature would be completely changed. Aside from their appearance, they bore no other connections with humans. As a zombie, one would treat humans as prey. How could anyone hope for them to harbor any emotions towards their prey? As for Ye Lian and Shana, the only person they treat differently would be Ling Mo. This was due to their inseparably close spiritual bond. On the other hand, Ling Mo might be the same as them due to that very same link. Could he be considered as half of the same race? "You don't look very happy." Shana stared firmly into Ling Mo's eyes before she suddenly moved forward, her cool lips gently making contact with Ling Mo's own as she said, "Will this make you happy? You seem to like doing it." Shana's kiss left Ling Mo dumbstruck, but it only lasted for a moment before he quickly broke out of his confusion. True, Shana and Ye Lian would probably never be able to turn back into normal humans ever again. But so what? Ling Mo couldn't help but secretly curse himself in his heart. He'd previously never thought of how Ye Lian and Shana would regard their own zombie bodies after regaining their sanity. To them, the best-case scenario would be ending up like how Shana currently was. While Ling Mo shared many memories with Ye Lian, could he really say that the memories he formed with her after she turned into a zombie weren't precious? Fighting side by side and depending on one another, these emotions, when compared to his previous memories with her, were definitely not inferior. Thinking up to this point, Ling Mo let out a laugh and held Shana in his arms. He suddenly asked, "How about you tell me, do you like being flirted with?" This was most definitely a milestone question. Chances are, not many men got the chance to face a younger girl and ask such a question, let alone pose the same question to a younger zombie girl. Ling Mo was probably the only one who had the chance and the guts to ask such a question. In reality, Ling Mo had inadvertently blurted those words out. But after asking, he was filled with expectation as he looked toward Shana. "Kneading my chest is painful, I don't like it." Although she was a zombie, Shana's words indicated that she was only lacking when it came to making judgments. At the very least, she was clearly able to discern between what was and wasn't painful. Ling Mo suddenly felt a little nervous. Admittedly, kneading her chest was painful, but her first time was going to be even more painful. Shana wouldn't reject him when the time came, right? In the off chance that her zombie nature violently surfaced, would he still do the deed? Speaking of which, Shana always showed signs of turning back into a zombie whenever she felt pain. But when he saw Shana's furrowed brows, as if her unending stream of memories were giving her a headache, Ling Mo felt that he shouldn't have brought up such matters so soon. After all, What he had was time and multiple opportunities. Don't worry about it for now. Get some rest, Ling Mo said with some heartache. Ye Lian awoke a few hours after Shana. Ling Mo's heart skipped a bit when she suddenly turned her head to look at him. Shana's evolution was vastly different from that of Ye Lian's. She'd never truly lost all of her sanity from the beginning, and her spirit benefited the most from her subsequent evolutions. Ye Lian, on the other hand, was different. She was a zombie through and through, and her evolutionary process was the same as that of regular zombies. In truth, Ling Mo had already braced his heart after looking at the advanced zombie. Compared to Shana, Ye Lian's evolution was, unfortunately, leaning towards the development of her body. Her mental faculties would probably be like that of the advanced zombies, going from a mindless beast to that of one with a certain level of intellect. But wanting her to have human-like emotions as soon as possible would prove to be a difficult task. The moment Ye Lian woke up, Ling Mo immediately felt that Ye Lian was different from how she was a few days ago. Her eyes were gradually returning to their usual color, but her body was exuded a terrifying aura, enough to make one think that they were facing a ferocious animal. There wasn't much difference when he compared her to the advanced zombie they'd met earlier. After consuming roughly 2/3 of the viral gel, the evolution that Ye Lian obtained turned out to be extremely terrifying. Ling Mo faintly felt that she was at the verge of becoming an advanced zombie. All she needed was another round of advancement before she could truly become one. But Ling Mo found that she was different from an advanced zombie after manipulating her and moving her around for a bit. The advanced zombie that they encountered was extremely quick, but it clearly excelled in strength. But Ye Lian's strength was lacking. Instead, her agility saw a meteoric improvement. After her most recent evolution, Ye Lian's speed was now comparable to that of Cheetah. It looked like each zombie's evolutionary path was different. On the other hand, Ye Lian's budding consciousness had finally shown traces of having a true consciousness. Ling Mo could even feel her spiritual realm becoming more active. In the following days, Ling Mo scouted the periphery of X City University, continuously going in and out of this exceedingly flourishing city center. Apart from scouting the area, he gathered a fair bit of supplies. Of special note were medication that he was severely lacking and some high-energy food. After Ye Lian and Shana's evolution, their newly found strength allowed them to hunt mutated zombies with even greater ease. However, Ling Mo didn't allow them to take action most of the time. Rather, he seized these precious opportunities to train his puppeteer ability. After all, Ling Mo had only just started making use of his tentacles. His skill in smoothly manipulating them was still lacking. Bang! A mutated zombie jumped out from behind a counter. Ling Mo had no choice but to dodge by rolling away on the ground, using the shelf behind him to temporarily obstruct the zombie. His spiritual tentacles were warded off by it, only giving this tall and burly mutated zombie a brief moment of pause. Ling Mo, who was feeling depressed at the sight of this, simultaneously used the surrounding obstacles to hinder this extremely strong zombie, while pondering over the best way to use his tentacles at the same time. The sound of the shelves behind him being continuously trampled and overturned made it seem as if the entire shop was about to be torn down by this mutated zombie. Ling Mo had no choice but to brace himself as he turned around and rushed towards the zombie. As he did, formless spiritual tentacles madly rolled towards his opponent. In reality, facing this kind of mutated zombie made it very difficult for Ling Mo's puppeteer ability to have much of an effect at all. This was especially so when his opponent was attacking so relentlessly. With the two of being so close to one another, Ling Mo might have been torn to pieces right then and there if his attempts at domination had failed like it previously did. Even Shana, who was keeping watch nearby, showed a trace of hesitation, unsure of whether she should jump in to provide assistance. Ye Lian's reaction, on the other hand, was even more direct. Her eyes suddenly turned red and her knees bent slightly, as if she were ready to rush at a moment's notice. If it weren't for Ling Mo pacifying her, she might have lost control and dashed out. Ye Lian finally obtained a sense of awareness after her previous advancement. Her aggressiveness had grown as well, becoming more than 10 times stronger than it was before. Although Ling Mo's control over her didn't decrease, he rarely forcibly took control of her, attaching importance to guiding her and pacifying her instincts instead. 10 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters. Ling Mo's spiritual tentacles twisted around the mutated zombie's spiritual orb, briefly dazing it. But it quickly broke free from its mental shackles and directed its sharp claws filled with various dubious substances towards Ling Mo. However, at this time, something strange happened. The zombie's target was clearly Ling Mo, but its pair of hands went for a location that was a meter away from Ling Mo instead. It looked as if the zombie had sprained its ankle during its attack, causing its body to shift to the side and its attack to go wide. Visual distortion. Although Ling Mo's tentacles couldn't immediately control the zombie, they could still influence the zombie's movements in a very short period of time, affecting any subsequent judgment. Looking at the mutated zombie's attack that veered off course, a trace of a smile immediately surfaced on Ling Mo's face. As they brushed past one another, Ling Mo thrust the short saber in his hand into the mutated zombie's ribs, followed by a forceful twist. Fresh blood gushed out. The mutated zombie staggered forward for a few steps before falling to the ground with a loud bang. It was only then that Ye Lian's restless desire to attack calmed down, and Shana's eyes returned to their usual color. She walked over with brisk steps, and with precise technique, took out the viral gel from the back of the mutated zombie's head. Phew, that nearly gave me a heart attack. Spiritual power is versatile, and its effects are very strong, but it really is difficult to flexibly use them. At this point, Ling Mo's legs went soft. If it wasn't for him leaning against Shana in time, he might have fallen on top of the zombie's corpse. His forehead was filled with sweat, and his head was throbbing, but his heart was filled with delight. This zombie was his cleanest kill he'd gotten while using his puppeteer ability over the past few days. Although his use of the ability wasn't very flexible as of yet, the puppeteer ability's true power was beginning to show itself. Ling Mo took the viral gel from Shana and said, "I can't go on any longer. We'll stop here for today, let's head back." Training spiritual power was just like training one's body. There'd be adverse effects if one overdid it. This was especially so since he had to maintain his spiritual connection with Ye Lian and Shana. Shana looked at him curiously before nodding her head. Soon after, she couldn't help but say, "Your way of fighting is very strange." "It's strange," Ling Mo doubtfully replied with his own question before coming to a realization. His spiritual tentacles were something that only he could see. What Shana probably saw was him miserably fleeing and being forced to face his opponent. In the end, he took advantage of the mutated zombie's bad luck to strike when it sprained its ankle, earning his fluke of a victory. Ling Mo still wasn't proficient in his use of his spiritual tentacles. It was difficult for him to avoid cutting a sorry figure in battle. But Ling Mo felt that he'd managed to get an idea of how to go about using them. Things likely wouldn't turn out the same way when he used them next time. He still needed a lot of practice, though. The pitter-patter of raindrops could be heard within X City over the last few days. From the looks of things, autumn was about to arrive. Following the gradual drop in temperature, an even harsher challenge drew closer for humans. Zombies weren't afraid of the cold, but humans were. The past few days of rain had scrubbed away most of the thick smell of rot that pervaded the streets. However, the smell of blood that clung in the air had surprisingly grown thicker. They happened to pass by a clothes shop along the way. Since it was convenient, Ling Mo found a few sets of relatively thick pieces of outerwear for Ye Lian and Shana to change into. Ling Mo, on the other hand, got himself a black windbreaker. However, under Ling Mo's request and malicious guidance, Ye Lian and Shana wore extremely erotic underwear. After changing their clothes, Shana actually displayed a strong interest in the hollowed-out parts of her clothes. Seeing her unexpected reaction, Ling Mo couldn't help but think how fitting she'd look if she wore some hollowed-out underwear as well. Their range of operations within the vicinity had gradually increased over the past few days. If a person didn't have a strong physique, they might not be able to make it back to the construction site before it got dark. But Ling Mo suddenly stopped when they were around 100 meters away from the residential building, the look on his face turning extremely ugly. The zombies he'd intentionally left behind at the construction site were gone. A trace of unease flowed through him. Using the rain as cover, Ling Mo immediately ran towards the residential building with Ye Lian and Shana. And sure enough, he found a freshly slain zombie's corpse beside an abandoned car. Luckily, no zombies were attracted for the time being because of the past few days of rain. This zombie dying here meant that not only did someone pass by, they even entered the parking lot and killed it. Ling Mo immediately knitted his brows and drew the short saber from his waist. He squatted down and used the tip of his saber to pry open the zombie's rain and blood-soaked clothes. Badly mutilated wounds could be seen on the zombie's chest and abdomen. After being cleansed by the rain, Ling Mo found that the zombie's deathly pale skin had been turned inside out, revealing a terrifying wound that was half a finger deep. Wounds like that shouldn't have been inflicted by a normal weapon. Based on Ling Mo's observation, this person might have used an exceedingly heavy weapon. A person who could wield such a heavy weapon would definitely have a certain amount of strength. After standing back up, Ling Mo cast his gaze on the nearby residential building. Regardless of this person's reasons, he definitely wouldn't come over and clear out the zombies out of altruism. The only thing of worth within this construction site was the residential building. It was also where Ling Mo hid his supplies. The other party's objective was likely that as well. Encountering a survivor after the world ended wasn't necessarily a good thing. Ling Mo cautiously approached the residential building and quietly entered after noticing that there were no abnormalities with it. Ling Mo heard a person's laughter upon reaching the second floor. That was good. Based on the sound, this person had only entered the second floor, likely to take shelter from the rain. This meant that the supplies Ling Mo hid on the third floor wouldn't be discovered. But this person's laughter was exceptionally ear-piercing. Haha, boss, you're not planning to finish her off, right? Don't toy with her till she dies. Our brothers still haven't had their fun. After taking a breather, a man's slightly coarse and heavy voice resounded. What's the rush? With me around, women will throw themselves at you and beg you to fuck them. Damn, this woman is even better than that brat from before. After he spoke, the man's voice suddenly started to reverberate. A woman's tragic cries could be heard in the midst of the men's laughter. Her mouth was more or less covered, muffling her cries. But in spite of that, one could still hear the pain in her voice. Shut up. What are you crying about? Your father, knows that women like you used to look down on us last time. But now you'd better make sure you make your father feel good, or else I'll slice you up and feed you to the zombies. Haha, boss, you almost scared her to death. Make sure you don't kill her. Finding a woman nowadays is hard. What's there to be afraid of? It's hard for us to get a chance like this to have fun. It's raining and the zombies can't hear us. Ha ha. Ling Mo's expression turned a little unsightly, but his legs didn't stop moving. He slowly went along the stairs as he approached the second level. Ling Mo originally planned to chase these people out, but the grip on his short saber tightened after hearing them insult the woman, his eyes flashing with a trace of murderous intent. Sure enough, a majority of the female populace could be considered as a disadvantaged group once the world ended. And in this world without order, people with power naturally possess the qualifications to have greater resources. Of course, women who were willing to stick to people like these for the sake of survival were included as well. But Ling Mo felt disgust from the bottom of his heart towards people like this group who insulted women. Societal restraints didn't exist anymore, but that didn't mean that people could act like animals. What the hell? You guys still haven't finished, even after playing around for so long. The voice came from a man who stood near the third-floor staircase. A thin wooden stick hung from his lips, and he held a kitchen knife in his hand. He looked a little fidgety. A large tent had been pitched at his crotch after hearing the sounds from inside. He turned his head towards the corridor as he bellowed. Hurry up and send someone over to swap out with your father. Fuck, I'm the only one standing out here being blue-balled. The rain's so huge that you wouldn't even be able to see the hair on a zombie. What are they so scared of? In the moment his head was turned, a silhouette suddenly rushed out from the corner of the staircase and pierced his throat with a short saber, pinning him to the wall. All four of the man's limbs went limp and the kitchen knife in his hands fell out, but Ling Mo deftly caught it in his hands. Seeing the man's eyes that went wide with fright and despair, Ling Mo swiftly withdrew his short saber from the wall while holding onto his arms at the same time, laying him on the floor in one smooth motion. Fresh blood leaked out from his mouth. A puddle of blood also flowed out from a stab wound at the back of his head. His body continued twitching even though it had already breathed its last. The entire process could be said to have been done noiselessly. None of the others were alerted. A filthy scene was currently playing out in a dirty room on the second floor. There were another 4 men within the room who were excitedly cheering on their bald leader. When Ling Mo appeared, the bald man had just finished, and another man had impatiently walked up. That idiot has been shouting his head off. Why don't you go and switch with him? Let him have some fun as well. The bald said while pulled up his pants. However, he saw a slim figure appear at the room's entrance when he turned his head. Whoosh! A cold glint of metal brought along a severe gale as it shot towards the man that had just walked over. He was completely unaware of the abnormality behind him. He was preparing to have fun when he suddenly felt a sharp pain from his buttocks, causing him to fall face first on the ground after issuing a cry of pain. This sudden turn of events caused everyone in the room to be momentarily dumbstruck. That brightly shining kitchen knife had nearly split the man's buttocks in half. The strength used was so great that it was enough to render others speechless. Although the improvements to Ling Mo's body from repeated upgrades weren't all that obvious, he was still much stronger than a normal person. The man still continued to draw breath even after having his chrysanthemum 1 buttock sliced, but that incident had left him twitching uncontrollably on the ground as he led our mournful screams. The bald man was the first to recover. He grabbed the shaft of an axe beside him and locked his rage-filled gaze on Ling Mo, who'd appeared at the entrance. Ling Mo appeared to be an ordinary youth, but his aggressive methods and the unbridled murderous intent in his eyes made the bald man feel absolutely terrified. What kind of person is that? The bald man didn't bat an eyelid as he took half a step back, widening the gap between Ling Mo and him. What the fuck is your problem? Why the hell are you killing my people? From his expression, it seemed as if he didn't realize that Ling Mo had taken action because of the woman's humiliation. The reason was simple. To him, women were meant to be used for venting his emotions. This was so much so that it was a given in the eyes of the men gathered here. But Ling Mo didn't think that way, especially since he had 2 girls by his side. Ling Mo didn't reply after hearing the bald man's furious roar. He only coldly swept his gaze across the room before finally resting it on the woman's body. Ling Mo immediately clenched his teeth upon seeing the state that the woman was in. Her face was filthy, and it was hard to make out her appearance, but she didn't seem to be that old. However, she appeared to be at death's door thanks to the torment inflicted by this group of men. They probably did it for the fun of it, but the woman's body was filled with numerous cuts, dyeing her body blood red. Both her hands were bound together, and all 10 of her fingernails had been stripped as blood continuously poured out of her fingertips. Even her mouth had been stuffed with a dubiously colored smelly sock. Although she was still able to utter cries of grief, it was clear from her voice that she lacked the strength to do anything else. She might even be letting out more air than she took in. Screw you. Who the hell do you think you are? The bald man vaguely felt that the youthful man in front of him was trouble. But as the boss of this group of people, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and bellow out. Sure enough, his chi-infused roar of fury had immediately broken the other 3 men out of their stupor. They weren't idiots. Their expressions turned vigilant upon seeing the blood-stained short saber in Ling Mo's hands as they grabbed their weapons that had been tossed to the side. Ling Mo acted as if he was turning a blind eye to their actions, But not only did that not set the bald man's mind at ease, it even made him feel a chill from the bottom of his heart. This group of men could tell that Ling Mo wasn't afraid of them. In fact, he completely disregarded whatever they did. These men were scoundrels who could murder someone without batting an eyelid. Although the aura that Ling Mo exuded made their scalp tingle, the pressure they felt also stimulated their vicious nature. Although the scene of Ling Mo splitting someone's chrysanthemum with his kitchen knife was shocking, he was only one person, with only one knife. But following close behind him were two delicate and charming figures. Although their faces were pale, and they had indifferent looks on their faces, to the point where they looked emotionless, their exquisite faces and their tall and slim figures that couldn't be concealed by their raincoats had left these men in a daze. If one said that Shana still looked rather immature, and that her facial features still hadn't fully developed, then Ye Lian's could be considered as a first-class beauty. Her pure black eyes and her temperament as a zombie in particular gave her an air of mystery and allure. There were very few chances for others to lay eyes on an outstanding beauty like Ye Lian once the world ended. When compared to her, the woman that was bullied by this group of men could, at most, only be considered average. The other men were entranced by her beauty, but the bald man's brows had knitted instead. This youthful man's strength was definitely pretty good if he was able to live until now while bringing along such a beauty. And while his attack from before had caught everyone by surprise, the astonishing strength and accuracy that he displayed wasn't something that just anyone could pull off. But he quickly revealed an evil grin as he intentionally shouted, "This brat killed our people and even took the trouble to deliver 2 high-quality items to us. Slaughter him and snatch those 2 girls." His instigation saw immediate effect. These men were already running wild after the world ended. Committing slaughter and plundering others was something they did on a regular basis. Although Ling Mo looked like he had some skill, all they needed to do was kill him and they'd be able to have their way with 2 high-quality beauties. Naturally, this group of people weren't idiots who'd risk their lives just to get their hands on a beauty. They knew in their hearts that Ling Mo didn't come with good intentions. They had to get rid of him. Since that's the case, they should strike first and gain the upper hand. No matter how strong he was, they held the advantage in numbers. As for Ye Lian and Shana, they had long since dismissed the 2 girls as ordinary and powerless. Following the bold man's signal, 2 of the men within the group exchanged a glance before suddenly raising their weapons as they went in separate directions to flank Ling Mo. Shana held onto the handle of her long saber and was just about to draw it when she was stopped by Ling Mo. There was no need for Shana and Ye Lian to dirty their hands on these dregs of society. Ling Mo took a deep breath and tightened the group around his short saber. His right leg slowly shifted backwards and his body leaned forward, adopting a posture that was ready to lunge out. Ling Mo clearly knew what these people were thinking, but they were sorely mistaken if they thought that he was only capable of mounting sneak attacks. His weakness at close combat only applied to monsters like that advanced zombie. Although these people looked valiant, but they were, after all, just normal people. How could they compare to him? To their astonishment, Ling Mo vanished just after they issued their war cry. No, he didn't vanish. Rather, Ling Mo had rushed towards them the moment they advanced. Ling Mo was blindingly fast. The first person only saw a blur before he felt a slight chill from his chest, followed by a jolt of pain that felt as if he were being torn apart. By the time he clearly saw Ling Mo, a fresh stream of blood had gushed out of his chest. Ling Mo, on the other hand, just withdrew his short saber before he emotionlessly stepped over the man. Ling Mo's attack was carried out so swiftly that it made the other man turn pale with fright. But just as he was about to halt in his tracks, Ling Mo turned his body and leapt towards him. At the precipice of life and death, the man exploded out with all of his strength as the vegetable knife in his hand suddenly came stabbing towards Ling Mo. The bald man chose this moment to act. He brandished the axe in his hand, sending it chopping down as his plump body abruptly descended from high above. Facing a pincer attack from both his front and back, Ling Mo would undoubtedly be split in half by the bald, even if he managed to dodge the other man's vegetable knife. This was why a vicious sneer had appeared on the bald man's fierce-looking face before his axe had completely fallen. Ling Mo's pupils contracted when he saw the vegetable knife flying towards himself. While charging forward, Ling Mo suddenly twisted his body, allowing the knife to brush past his back and sending him straight towards a man. It looked as the entire side of Ling Mo's body had rammed into him, sending his short saber straight into the man's belly. Ling Mo had learnt this move while watching Shana fight. Ling Mo was a regular person, although he was experienced when it came to risking his life at the end of the world. But were he to compare himself to Shana's professional techniques, he would obviously lose out to Shana's aggressive swordplay and equally smooth movements. In battle, Ling Mo was constantly absorbing whatever he'd experienced, after which he'd digest everything he'd experienced, transform it into his own battle style. At the same time, Ling Mo released his spiritual tentacles. His objective wasn't to take control of any person in particular, but rather to influence the bald man behind him. The bald man, who was initially charging at Ling Mo, suddenly felt a stab of pain at his temples. His vision blurred for a moment, and the axe in his hand veered off course. Borrowing the momentum from their collision, both Ling Mo and the man took a few steps backwards before knocking into the wall. As a result, the bald man's sneak attack struck air. The man who'd been struck by Ling Mo's saber let out a blood-curdling screech. The acute pain running through his body caused him to drop his vegetable knife as it landed on the floor with a ding while fresh blood spewed out from his mouth. At the same time, the bald man's attack had landed heavily on the ground. He shook his head as a trace of astonishment flashed past his eyes, the fat on his face jiggling a little. He abruptly let out another roar, before once again sending his axe chopping in the direction of Ling Mo's back. Ling Mo had already drawn his short saber before the gust of wind from the bald man's attack buffeted him. Ling Mo turned his body and bent his knee, sending his short saber stabbing upwards towards the bald man's belly. At this rate, he was probably going to impale himself. But this bald man definitely had some skill if he was able to become the leader of this group. When the bald man saw Ling Mo's nimble movements, while there was no change in the movement of his hands, the veins on his forehead bulged as he let out a loud roar, and he twisted his stiff body. In spite of that, a bloody gash was viciously drawn across his waist, turning half of his body red in the blink of an eye. The bald man's face turned extremely sinister after being cut, but in the end he wasn't a zombie. He wasn't able to counterattack immediately after receiving such a grievous wound. Instead, he staggered backwards. In the blink of an eye, the only person left standing without any injury was a man with a dark look on his face. "Fuck you." The bald man cursed in a fit of rage, but he took no further action against Ling Mo. Instead, he threw the axe in his hand towards Ye Lian and Shana, who were standing at the entrance. From the looks of it, this bald man really was a vicious person. He wanted to drag someone down with him, even if he was going to die. He had a pretty good way of thinking. Looking at Ling Mo's nimble movement, sneak attacks would probably have no chance of succeeding, so he switched his target to Shana and Ye Lian. But Ling Mo took notice of the bald man the moment he threw his axe. Ling Mo immediately made Ye Lian take a step to the side, while Shana coolly brought out her long saber. Shana had no intention of backing down as a mutated zombie and instinctively felt a sense of danger when the axe flew over. Brandishing her long saber, she immediately clashed head-on with the axe. The sound of metal striking metal rang out. Shana's hand trembled under the enormous force, even causing a small chip to appear on her long saber. Although she accurately blocked the axe, Shana's hand had gone soft as well. She probably wouldn't be able to use it again for the time being. Luckily, zombies had very strong regenerative abilities. Although normal people could recover on their own as well, they were incomparable to zombies in terms of both speed and degree of recovery. While zombies weren't able to recover from injuries that defied the natural order, such as lost limbs, superficial injuries wouldn't affect them in the least. Be that as it may, the sight of Shana getting injured had finally caused the fury in Ling Mo's heart to reach its boiling point. He suddenly gritted his teeth and charged over to the bald man in the blink of an eye, abruptly slashing out with his short saber. Although the bald man managed to dodge in time, the cutting edge of the saber had bit into the bones of his shoulder, causing him to momentarily howl in pain. Without waiting for him to struggle free, Ling Mo's other hand swiftly reached down to his waist and pulled out his dagger. He gave the bald man a cold stare before he thrusted the dagger into his belly and slowly twisted his wrist. The acute pain drained the color from the bald man's face, turning it deathly pale. His mouth hung open as every inch of fat on his face continuously trembled and despair welled up in his eyes. This painful process continued on for a full minute. During that time, the bald man's blood-curdling screams continuously rang out. If it wasn't for the torrential rain masking it, the zombies might have been attracted by his cries. During this time, Ling Mo never loosened his grip. Even the look in his eyes remained the same. This scene made the man with a black face so terrified that his entire body was started trembling, putting any courage he might have to conduct a rescue to rest. Ling Mo abruptly thrust his dagger through the bald man's body only after his eyes turned white, thoroughly snuffing out his life. Ling Mo withdrew his short saber and stepped on the bald man's corpse before turning to face the man with a black face. By then, he'd lost whatever will he had left to fight, the weapon in his hand falling to the ground with a ding. "Don't kill me! Don't kill me!" Ling Mo gradually awoke from the life or death mental state he was in as he slowly walked towards the black-faced man with his saber raised. I took a few breaths to calm himself and suppressed the rage within his body as his pair of faintly red eyes became clear once again. Ling Mo had killed many people ever since Liu Xan hurt Shana, but this black-faced man was the first one to beg for his life. Ling Mo was completely influenced by his rage when he killed the bald man and his lackeys, but he was awakened from his impulses when he faced this black-faced man. He coldly stared at the black-faced man. During this time, Ling Mo's murderous intent hadn't receded at all in spite of the man profusely begging for his life. All of these people deserved to die. The woman from before definitely begged them for her life as well. Did they let her go? The black-faced man had probably guessed Ling Mo's murderous intentions from the look in his eyes. He suddenly shouted out as he made a mad dash towards the entrance. Although Shana put on a brave and fierce performance, in his eyes, these two girls had no means of stopping him. All he needed was to get out of here alive. But to his surprise, the moment he dashed to the entrance, Ye Lian appeared in front of him with a speed that was almost imperceptible to the naked eye and stretched out her hand with the speed of lightning. In that moment, her strong and sharp fingers ripped into the black-faced man's chest. Then, as the black-faced man stared on with a look of disbelief, Ye Lian used her 5 fingers to grip his heart. Thump! Thump! In the blink of an eye, the only thing left that the black-faced man could hear was the sound of his own heartbeat. He looked at Ye Lian with despair-filled eyes, as if he couldn't believe that the frail-looking girl in front of him was actually so terrifying. The only thing that he could see now was Ye Lian's pair of eyes that had suddenly turned red. Zombie! Ye Lian indifferently tightened her fingers just after the black-faced man managed to squeeze out those 2 words. His heart was crushed, and the black-faced man drew his last breath as his entire body went limp. Ye Lian swiftly pulled back her slim and delicate palm that was covered in blood, thick droplets of fresh blood flowing along her slender fingertips as they fell to the ground. Even Ling Mo was stunned at this sight. It was only at times like these that he would abruptly realize that Ye Lian was a savage zombie with astonishing strength. This was the real Ye Lian. She was able to tear apart a person's body with her bare hands and crush any ordinary zombie. Ye Lian's previous attack was one she did purely out of instinct. Ling Mo's greatly relaxed his control over he when he thought about how she had her own consciousness now. Thankfully, Ye Lian had only killed him. She didn't have any interest in his flesh and blood like a regular zombie would. In the blink of an eye, 5 corpses were lying on the ground, and a thick stench of blood hung in the air. Even the man whose chrysanthemum had been sliced was no longer breathing in the midst of all his twitching and screaming. Shana, are you all right? Ling Mo spat out a sigh before he walked over and grabbed Shana's hand to get a closer look. That's good. Looks like there's nothing wrong. Shana's expression was devoid of pain as she slowly shook her head. Her curious gaze swept past Ling Mo and landed on the woman who was lying on the bed. Ling Mo followed her gaze, unconsciously heaving a sigh in his heart. In truth, although he'd done away with these beasts, he didn't want to face that woman. Based on her condition, she was definitely going to die. He wouldn't be able to change her fate, even if he tried to help her now. No, I had no way of helping the people of this world in the first place. Ling Mo's thought, his heart filled with turmoil. Ling Mo clearly knew that he wasn't a saint. He wouldn't mind helping someone only if it was within his power to do so, and it wouldn't affect interests after all. They were all still part of the same human race. But many beasts like the bald man existed in this world. They were driven mad after the world ended. Destruction brought them joy, while tormenting the weak brought relief to their hearts filled with panic and despair. What would he possibly do to help? The answer was of course nothing. To Ling Mo, just being able to live on with Ye Lian and Shana was enough for him. While he made Ye Lian walk to the window and wash her hands with rainwater, Ling Mo slowly walked over to the woman's side. Sobi. At this moment the woman shifted her gaze to Ling Mo. A trace of brilliance suddenly flashed in her eyes that were about to go dark. Was this her last flash of life before she passed on? Ling Mo hurriedly stretched out his hand and took away the smelly sock from her mouth. He also severed the ropes that were binding her hands. The woman's gaze was firmly locked on Ling Mo, but she hadn't breathed out even after quite a while. It looked to Ling Mo like it was the end for her. Then, her lips parted and she, very weakly, said 2 words, "Thank you. I didn't do anything to help you. There's no need to thank me." The woman shook her head, tears immediately forming in her eyes. "No, I'm very thankful to you. I never thought that I'd be saved." She tried with great difficulty to raise her hand, but couldn't move a single inch after being bound together for so long. She stopped moving just after Ling Mo stretched out his hand. Although her eyes were still open, her expression had frozen, and she died under such humiliating circumstances. "Yeah, go in peace." Ling Mo sighed and reached out to close her eyes. He then pulled over a worn-out blanket that had been tossed to the side and covered her corpse. Looks like this group of people had come looking for supplies as well. That being said, they naturally have lots of things on hand. Although it couldn't be compared to what Ling Mo had, it was a pretty good result based on the number of people they had and their strength. Ling Mo could tell from the previous battle that this group of people were not only vicious and merciless, they even had some brains. They might have been able to survive for a long time if they hadn't run into Ling Mo. Ling Mo gathered the rest of the usable supplies aside from their weapons, which he couldn't be bothered with. Unexpectedly, the bald man carried a Swiss Army knife. This type of knife, with a myriad of uses, had a wide range of application. It could be considered a useful tool at the end of the world. Ling Mo unceremoniously took it off the bald man's waist and stored it in his pocket. In addition, the bald man also had a pack of cigarettes in his pocket, which Ling Mo didn't hesitate to kindly accept as well. Ling Mo inwardly sighed while he searched the corpse. Although he had his zombie puppeteer ability, making it easier for him to survivors when compared to others, he still had to try to fine line between life and death when he hunted mutated zombies every day. Apart from taking liberties, his 2 mutated female zombies, which helped to ease his nerve a little, he normally had to maintain an extremely cautious attitude. He'd usually only look for essentials when he went out to gather supplies, never taking notice of comfort items like cigarettes. These dregs of society really are scum. They didn't even bother to put any thought into improving their chances of survival. Whatever little thoughts they had were all spent on finding ways of enjoy themselves. Ling Mo said with some disdain. It was important to have the right attitude in the face of adversity when the world ended. One shouldn't bother with minor things like cigarettes for the time being. People like them who vented their emotions on a woman's body were far too contemptible. Ling Mo's haul over the past few days was plentiful. Now, he even managed to get his hands on some unexpected riches. His large travel bag was so full it was practically bursting at its seams. He was even forced to leave some things behind to lighten his load. But to Ling Mo, these supplies were incomparable to the loss of Shana's long saber. Her clash with the axe had led to a chip forming on the edge of her long saber. Although it wouldn't affect its performance for now, its lifespan was definitely greatly shortened. He definitely had to help Shana find another saber when he had the chance. Unfortunately, finding a suitable weapon when the world ended wasn't such an easy task. Take for instance the bald man's group. The quality of their weapons was inconsistent. Aside from the passable lethality of the axe, the rest of their weapons was insufficient for dealing with zombies. The current situation was related to weapons control. While items such as vegetable and boning knives could be found in supermarkets, how could a normal person holding a vegetable knife engage in close combat with a zombie? Doing so with just courage was impossible. Even if one was able to get close by risking their lives, how much use could a vegetable knife be against a zombie that wouldn't stop madly chasing after its target unless it was chopped to pieces? This was the reason why Ling Mo put himself at risk by going to the Wang family's handmade sword shop to look for a suitable weapon. Although his short saber was only a third of modern long, it won out in terms of sharpness and was of superior quality. It was completely able to match up to his current level of strength. After all, a good horse had to be paired with a good saddle. I might as well let you use the dagger. Just as Ling Mo planned to hand his knife over to Shana, she unexpectedly shook her head and said, "No, I have my memories. This saber is very important to me. It doesn't matter if it's chipped, it can still be used. The dagger that you have was made by my younger sister. I don't like the things that she makes." All right, Ling Mo was rendered speechless for a moment. It looks like Shana still didn't like Wang Lin, even after turning into a zombie. Of these two sisters, one was headstrong and had vicious temper, while the other was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She was a kind, silly girl before she turned into a zombie. It looks like these two sisters with diametrically opposed personalities were truly fated. After going back upstairs, Ling Mo found a track of muddy footprints. From the looks of it, this group of people had searched through the building very carefully. But they didn't see through Ling Mo's subterfuge, so Ling Mo's room, along with the remaining clean water that he had, was left untouched. This helped improve Ling Mo's mood a little, but he lost interest in staying here any longer when he thought about the corpses downstairs. Those corpses would attract an ever-increasing number of zombies, giving rise to a troubling predicament. And the fact that the bald man's group had made an appearance meant that this residential building was far too conspicuous. It was alright as a stopover point, but would lead to problems if he planned to stay there in the long term. Ling Mo had gotten a rough idea of the surrounding area situation over the past few days. He knew which was the safer route to take when traveling to X City University. Of course, he was unaware of the situation within the university at the moment. But based on the situation of university surroundings, it was likely very bad. The environment was complex, and there were many zombies. Going in and out of the university would prove to be difficult. But this obstruction that would cause a majority of the survivors to shrink back wasn't all that difficult in Ling Mo's eyes. With his puppeteer ability, he could rely on zombies to find a path for him, greatly reducing the difficulty of this task. Therefore, Ling Mo very quickly made his decision. He'd make his way towards X City University tomorrow. But Ling Mo couldn't just let the remaining clean water and gas that he couldn't bring along go to waste before he left. Should he take a warm bath first? Or he might as well bathe together with the female zombies like a married couple instead. Survivors who were able to use water for cleaning themselves were already considered as living pretty good lives. Those who use hot water to bathe could be considered as living extremely luxurious lives. Then what would having two beautiful girls wash your back count as? Likely no one was able to experience such pleasures yet. But when Ling Mo wore a face of satisfaction as sat in front of the two beautiful girls, he found that it wasn't as wonderful as he'd imagined. Gentler, be good. Even gentler. It's okay, it's not that painful. You're rubbing it too hard. You're rubbing it too hard. You can't rub that part. The two of you don't need to wash that part. You really don't need to. There was only one ending when he allowed two female zombies who didn't know restraint and were filled with curiosity to help him bathe, and that was an ending filled with pain and happiness. Ling Mo was still filled with lingering fear when he thought about the previous day's experience after getting up. Seeing Ling Mo awake, Shana immediately looked towards him, her pupils glimmering with curiosity. She then followed Ling Mo's gaze as she looked down, eventually stopping at Ling Mo's important place. Ling Mo's scalp immediately started tingling, unconsciously covering his crotch. "When do you plan to bathe again?" Shana asked, her voice filled with some anticipation. After being infected and turning into a zombie, although she managed to recover a majority of her memories, she was still a zombie. She didn't have the same way of thinking as a normal girl. Simply put, Shana was like a blank sheet of paper when it came to things like common sense. Ling Mo originally had no intention of stripping, but Shana and Ye Lian impatiently pulled off the towel affixed to his waist. When the two female zombies saw that Ling Mo's body structure was somewhat different from theirs, they became a little restless. Ye Lian's reaction was a little dull because what had awakened within her wasn't her memories, but rather the true consciousness of a mutated zombie. She was just a little interested when it came to Ling Mo's body, giving it a few looks and stretching out her hand to give it a few cursory rubs. Shana, on the other hand, was different. There were many memories within her mind. Although her way of thinking was different from humans, having more knowledge would make it easier for her to pick up some bad things. I remember what this is called, but this is my first time seeing it in person. Apparently, it possesses the ability to change its shape. Shana not only had a great amount of curiosity towards Ling Mo's little Ling Mo, she even unhesitatingly reached out her zombified hand too. It would truly be a tribulation for Ling Mo if a female mutated zombie, who didn't know how to regulate her own strength, held little Ling Mo in her hand and entered her zombified state because of her excitement. One had to have a certain amount of mental fortitude before they could maintain their calm, while allowing two female zombies to face an unknown object. The only thing worth celebrating was the fact that they had no intention of treating Ling Mo as prey. It looked like the rain was gradually dying down. Ling Mo swiftly rearranged his backpack and left the building with Ye Lian and Shana. As for the corpses inside it, they'd likely attract zombies very soon. Dying without even leaving behind a skeleton was an inevitable outcome for everyone who lived in this current world. The construction site was, in actual fact, only a short distance away from X City University if one traveled in a straight line. However, in this flourishing area filled with many high-rise buildings, just passing through like that was impossible. After a few days of scouting, Ling Mo chose a path with relatively fewer zombies. In order to reduce the time spent hurrying on their journey, Ling Mo specially selected a zombie and placed it far ahead of their group to lead the way. His spiritual strength had grown somewhat, increasing his range of control to nearly 500 meters. But for the sake of preserving his strength, Ling Mo usually maintained a distance of between 300 to 400 meters. With this, not only would he be able to exert more control over the zombie, his stamina consumption wouldn't be as large as well. Once the zombie leading the way provided intelligence on the enemy, it was then Shana and Ye Lian's turn to take care of them. Ling Mo himself stood at the back, conserving his physical strength as best he could. As the rain gradually died down, this hazy-looking city gradually regained its sense of permanence. Dark clouds towered over a large building, its streets desolate and decaying. What was once a flourishing city had now transformed into a meat grinder where danger lurked around every corner. The route that Ling Mo chose was previously a gourmet street. It used to be packed with people once night fell. But aside from that, it usually experienced relatively little human traffic during other times, resulting in few zombies lingering around the area. But what counted as little in a flourishing city center was almost the same as many in the surrounding areas of the city. Luckily, there was a zombie leading the way, giving Ling Mo advance notice of zombies hiding within shops along the way. Ling Mo had no interest in getting rid of these regular zombies if he could help it. He even made the zombie he controlled close to the doors of shops with a larger number of zombies within them, locking them in completely. Not long after, they'd start massacring one another. In the end, a mutated zombie might even appear from within them. Roar! Ling Mo suddenly heard a howl from somewhere off in the distance when he reached the middle of the gourmet street. He immediately stopped and furrowed his brows, looking towards the direction of the sound. Ye Lian and Shana had stopped as well, a blood-red layer of color surfacing from within their eyes, as if they'd been influenced by something. Yet another zombie. Why are there so many zombies roaring out lately? This wasn't Ling Mo's first time hearing such a sound. He'd vaguely heard this sound many times over the past few days of living in this district. It was different from the low growls he'd hear when he fought zombies. It was much clearer and of a higher pitch, and hearing it would give others the faint impression that their blood was boiling. It gave them a sense of discomfort, just like these zombies, who seemed like they were crying out. Ling Mo tried to ask Shana about it, but unfortunately, she unhesitatingly shook her and said, "I don't really understand what's going on." This zombie was far too incompetent. However, Ling Mo wasn't going to let her get away with this, so he proceeded to make a series of careful inquiries. What Shana could confirm was that this roar originated from a male zombie, and that it wasn't crying out about anything in particular. Also, Shana's eyes displayed a rare look of displeasure. Simply put, the color of her eyes had started to change. When I hear it, I feel a little uncomfortable. Could be a form of protest for zombies. Ling Mo asked with some doubt as he knitted his brows. He even guessed that the one roaring out might be a mutated zombie or even an advanced zombie. After carefully approaching, Ling Mo unexpectedly saw just a few regular zombies. There wasn't a trace of blood on the ground either. He originally planned on hiding in a corner and observing what was happening, but little did he expect the direction of the wind to go against him, allowing them to pick up on the scent of blood drifting off from his short saber. Feeling depressed, Ling Mo had no choice but to take care of them, resulting in a small, unresolved question. Unexpectedly, he'd heard this very same sound today while walking, and when Ling Mo looked over to Ye Lian and Shana, their reactions seemed to be a little odd. However, the origin of this sound was too far away. Who knows how many times he'd have to go around this district just to find its source. Shana had tightened her grip on her long saber, while Ling Mo was hesitating. She turned towards him and said, "Let's go. You won't hear this sound anymore." Ling Mo gave Shana a look of doubt. Shana looked as if she didn't know how to explain herself. After giving it some thought, she said, "The last roar sounded it like received a reply. That's why he won't be calling out any longer. Since all of you are zombies, you should be able to tell what he's roaring about, right?" Ling Mo curiously asked. Shana gave Ling Mo a glance and said, "It's not very clear. I only know that I myself feel like going over after hearing his cry. But you and I share a connection, so I won't leave you. That's why I feel uncomfortable. Could this be similar to how members of the same race beckon one another?" The connection that Shana talked about should be referring to the spiritual connection they shared. Shana would indeed be unable to leave Ling Mo's side on her own accord after remaining connected to him for a period of time. But when Ling Mo thought of the time they spent together, where their life and death depended on one another, he guessed that Shana wouldn't see him as prey even if their spiritual connection were to disappear. Probably, seeing as Shana was unsure as well, and the fact that this roaring seemed annoying, Ling Mo had no choice but to suppress his thoughts of going over to take a look. Instead, he continued on while using the zombie in front to search for a path. After roughly an hour had passed, Ling Mo's group passed through the Gourmet Street and entered a narrow street that led straight to the rear entrance of X City University. This place looked a lot more dreary when compared to the Gourmet Street. Buildings that were 2 or 3 stories high were constructed at one side of the street, while the other was the enclosure surrounding X City University. These buildings looked rather aged. Their walls were plastered with all kinds of propaganda posters. This, coupled with the neon lamps arranged in front of their doors, was enough for one to realize what kind of place this was. Musical Ship, Red Spider. Their varied kinds of pubs and discos were so numerous that it threatened to overload one's senses. Many different signboards were hung on the second floors of these buildings. Love hotels, accommodations, hotels. On the contrary, there were virtually no kiosks around. This was the most important red light district near X City University. Rumor has it that a number of beautiful young women from universities would moonlight here. As for what they did, one should be able to easily guess. If one didn't have enough money in their pocket to go to a high-quality club, but still wanted to have some fun, then this was the best place to do so. All these factors combined together caused business within the district to boom in the past. It was reasonable to say that places like this red light district were simply unable to operate in the vicinity of a university. But since this issue wasn't settled in the past, its presence now was a foregone conclusion. Based on the current situation, Ling Mo felt that humans wouldn't be able to reclaim this world from the hands of the zombies. A majority of the survivors were bitterly hoping for someone to save them, but in the end, no one came. Now, they were holding onto the delusion of relying on someone else for help. It was unavoidably ridiculous. Of course, this was just Ling Mo's way of thinking. But to him, regardless of whether or not help came, the 2 female zombies by his side were an undeniable truth. Bad things might happen if he got too close to other survivors. Although he'd picked up and dropped Ye Lian off at X City University a few times before, this was Ling Mo's first time passing through the red light district behind its rear entrance. But this was the sort of place where people frequented only at night. So when disaster struck, it had the least amount of zombies. Who knows, we might even be able to find a suitable place to stay here. Ling Mo rubbed his nose and got the zombie in front to take the lead, as usual, and they walked further into the red light district. The rain had stopped and gusts of cold wind blew along the lonely street. A strange odor was mixed into this terrifying chill, causing Ling Mo to involuntarily sniffle and slightly furrow his brows. It smelled of blood and rot. Even a few days of continuous rain wasn't enough to completely eradicate this scent. This was a city in the midst of rotting away. What died were only survivors, but the civilized world as well. Ling Mo felt a moment of regret, but he didn't notice Shana quietly observing the changes in his expression from the side. Completely different from his reaction. When the scent of blood and rot drifted over to them, Shana and Ye Lian's eyes flashed with a hint of infatuation. "You seem to dislike this smell." Shana unhurriedly took in a breath before turning to look at Ling Mo. She asked with some doubt, "Why is that?" Ling Mo was momentarily stunned. He gave a wry smile and shook his head. "You wouldn't understand even if I told you. I like a lot." Shana remained silent for a few seconds before she suddenly said seriously, "But if you don't like it, I'll pretend to dislike it as well. My memories tell me that as a female, I should do this to make you happy." This Shana, what was her head filled with in the past? Ling Mo was sweating buckets. He hurriedly said, "You don't need to do that. Also, don't use female to describe yourself. You're a girl zombie. You liking this scent is normal. Is that so?" Shana seemed to have some trouble understanding what Ling Mo said. Ling Mo nodded and encouraged her. "I won't turn my back on you no matter what you are. Just act like how your big sister Ye Lian does. That's enough. In that case, there are times where I feel like biting you. Is that fine as well?" Shana gazed at Ling Mo and asked. When she asked this question, Ling Mo distinctly felt her piercing gaze stop directly at his neck. She even unconsciously licked her lips. "That's fine, but it'd be even better if you took away the word bite." Ling Mo's scalp went completely numb. In truth, he'd long since noticed this. This was especially so when Shana and Ye Lian had fully entered their zombified state, where there'd be minute changes in the way they looked at him. But they were never hostile towards Ling Mo due to their spiritual connection with him. The only time this wasn't the case was when they were trying to break away from their connection with him. However, Ye Lian's hostility towards him was completely disappeared as they grew closer. His connection with Shana, on the other hand, was still stuck at a superficial level. Although their connection had coincidentally deepened previously, it still wasn't deep enough. But Ling Mo felt that didn't need to be demanding. Restraining a zombie's nature was already a difficult task. He'd be going too far if he were to stop her from even doing one part of the Ross. Sure enough, upon seeing that Ling Mo didn't seem to mind, Shana shifted her gaze and said, "I don't know why, but I won't attack you. You're special." Bullshit. The puppeteer ability would be useless if they attacked the manipulator as well. Ling Mo secretly rolled his eyes, but suddenly knitted his brows. While he spoke with Shana, the zombie leading the way was searching through the shops along the way and checking for zombies within them, preventing Ling Mo's group, who was following closely behind it, from being suddenly attacked when they walked by later on. But the back of the zombie's head was suddenly smashed in by something when it walked into a pub. Ling Mo could even hear the fracturing of his skull. Ling Mo originally shared in the 5 senses of his zombie puppets, resulting in him feeling as if he'd experienced the zombie's death himself, less the feeling of pain. Which was why when a zombie hit the ground, Ling Mo's face turned white, and his heart suddenly started beating several times faster. Ye Lian and Shana immediately detected the change in Ling Mo's state of mind through their spiritual connection and turned to look at him. Although their gazes lacked emotion, Ling Mo knew that they were deeply concerned. Once the zombie leading the way died, Ling Mo's link with it was severed in a flash. The sensation of his spiritual connection being severed wasn't very comfortable. It felt as if a cracking sound had rung out in his mind. To Ling Mo, it was akin to someone viciously chopping off one of his tentacles. Was the one who did a zombie or a human? Ling Mo was now on his guard, had ducked to the side with Ye Lian and Shana. After concealing himself, he stuck his head out from a neon lamp and quietly surveyed his surroundings for a while. The zombie was killed in a pub called Music Emperor. Ling Mo was directing the zombie toward a row of private rooms within it when it was suddenly attacked. The entrance was ajar. This wasn't something a majority of the survivors would do. Could it be a zombie? A zombie that knew how to mount sneak attacks would have to, at the very least, be a mutated zombie on the level of Ye Lian. It might even be an advanced zombie. Ling Mo didn't expect such a strong zombie to appear in a place like this. Although Ling Mo found it odd, his desire for viral gels won out in the end. Exceedingly pure viral gels, such as these, weren't your run-of-the-mill goods. It was something that could only be found and not asked for. Thinking up to this point, the corner of Ling Mo's lips revealed a trace of a malicious smile as he stretched out his hand and drew his short saber. The dazzling edge of the short saber, coupled with the dark brown marks that weren't able to be cleaned from its fuller, resulted in an extremely cold aura being exuded from this well-forged, handcrafted saber. A blade that had taken the lives of others was indeed different. "Shana, can you feel anything?" Ling Mo knew that mutated zombies had a special reaction towards one another, so he asked her this question while deciding on a course of action. Shana gave Ling Mo a glance and shook her head. "It's very far." Unexpectedly, both parties weren't all that close to one another. There was a distance of at least 400 meters that separated them. The fact that she could even detect one from such a distance away meant that she was practically a radar. On the contrary, Ye Lian's eyes took on a faint shade of red. She learned from Ling Mo's appearance and took out her scimitar, bending her body as she hid behind him. Ling Mo was given a fright when he saw Ye Lian's actions. Sure enough, after developing her true consciousness, Ye Lian's rate of learning had increased greatly. She was consciously imitating Shana and his own actions in battle. Indeed, zombies as a species possessed a terrifying amount of potential. "Ye Lian, did you notice something?" Ling Mo asked in a low voice after suddenly recovering from his astonishment. Compared to Shana, Ye Lian's evolution was at a higher stage, and just from her lineage alone, she was a pure zombie as well. Therefore, Ye Lian would have a stronger reaction when it came to detecting other mutated zombies. Ye Lian only glanced at Ling Mo after hearing his question, offering no other response. Apparently, although she knew that the words Ye Lian referred to herself, she couldn't understand the meaning behind a sentence. But Ling Mo wasn't disheartened by this. Ye Lian's reaction meant that there was definitely a zombie within the pub. Music Emperor, validating his own guess. "It's good if it isn't a human. Compared to humans, I'm much more willing to fight with zombies." Ling Mo took a deep breath and, with great effort, adjusted his mindset to its peak condition. In a while, a bitter battle for life and death might just break out, but it was worth it for the sake of getting more viral gels. References plus. The entrance hung open and soft. Creaking sounds could be heard when the wind blew past. Through the cracks in the door, apart from the dust-covered furniture, one could see the shocking vestiges of slaughter. This was a common sight for a majority of the shops when the world ended. Compared to desolate streets, these pitch-black shops made one feel even more vigilant and fearful. A zombie could be quietly hiding behind a counter, a shelf, or maybe even a nook behind the door. Once someone drew close, they'd throw themselves at the intruder like a bolt of lightning and tear them to pieces before they even had the chance to react. No one dared to casually approach places like these. The shop's entrance was like the ferocious mouth of a beast, devouring all life that came its way and striking fear into the hearts of others. Music Emperor, which was a pub situated in X-City University's Red List district, was representative of this archetype. Nothing out of the ordinary could be discerned from its exterior. Thinking about it, no business was conducted on this street during the day, resulting in few zombies remaining. It was impossible for a mutated zombie to be born here. But that didn't eliminate the possibility of an advanced zombie hiding inside. The advanced zombie in New Era Shopping Mall had already learned how to conceal its whereabouts. It even knew how to look for appropriate places to mount sneak attacks. Beasts, in general, knew how to mount sneak attacks and had some tactical knowledge, let alone a zombie that had developed its own awareness. Although they'd been infected and lost their humanity, as a member of a new species, zombies were gradually developing a system of behaviors as they evolved. This was the conclusion that Ling Mo had arrived at from his observations. The advanced zombie within was adept at concealing itself, swiftly dispatching its enemies once it struck out. Under such circumstances, Ling Mo didn't want to risk sending Ye Lian or Shana in to investigate. He first squandered some time at a nearby shop to look for a short zombie. Then, after controlling it, he used it as bait by sending it straight into Music Emperor. Under Ling Mo's manipulation, his bait drew closer to where the zombie leading the way was felled. Ling Mo's group quietly followed behind it, maintaining a distance of around 10 meters. Ling Mo very quickly spotted the lead zombie's corpse via the perspective of the zombie acting as bait. But what amazed him was the fact that its corpse wasn't eaten. In fact, there wasn't even the least bit of damage on it. How could there be a zombie that didn't consume its prey after finishing it off? Attacking humans was part of their nature, but attacking their own kind was out of hunger. How could they just disregard this banquet in front of their eyes? Ling Mo felt that something was a little off. Ling Mo considered the possibility of an advanced zombie hiding inside, so he didn't bother concealing the figure of his bait. On the contrary, his objective was to draw out this advanced zombie that knew how to mount an ambush. Therefore, the more of a disturbance it made, the better. Ling Mo thought that he might as well follow through with his plans when he noticed the tightly shut doors of several private rooms near his zombie puppet. He manipulated his bait to kick open the room's door. Bang! The first room was devoid of people, but with the amount of noise made, the advanced zombie should have heard it no matter how deaf it was. After kicking open the room's door, Ling Mo commanded his bait to stick to the wall and carefully survey its surroundings. Something fell off. There was no activity at all. He slowly controlled his bait, slowly brought it over to the entrance of the next room. However, just as Ling Mo's bait was about to turn toward the next room, Ling Mo, who was hiding at a distance, suddenly saw a person's silhouette jumping out from within the previous room towards the back of his bait. This silhouette looked petite, and its actions were quick and violent. As it dashed out of the room, it jumped high into the air. A cold glint flashed in its hands as it viciously stabbed into the back of the bait's head. Along with the bait, the silhouette landed on the ground with one foot on its back. After that, the silhouette forcefully withdrew their weapon. A survivor. Ling Mo was startled by this realization. Never did he expect there to be a survivor hiding over here. No matter how he looked at it, this place wasn't suitable as a hideout. After thinking about it again, Ling Mo realized he might have been jumping to conclusions. He felt that a creature who possessed the ability to silently take out his zombie puppet would inevitably be an even stronger zombie. But in reality, after managing to stay alive till now, which survivor didn't possess a certain amount of ability? Even the bald man's group maintained a sufficient level of vigilance. Furthermore, they weren't lacking in viciousness and had a certain level of strength. This silhouette was able to maintain their composure when facing a zombie. It even knew how to look for opportunities to attack. Most importantly, it didn't harbor the slightest bit of hesitation when it seized the opportunity to launch its sneak attack. One had to know that Ling Mo's bait would have dodged out of the way if the survivor had shown even an iota of indecision. Naturally, Ling Mo was indeed caught by surprise, resulting in his inability to react, resulting in his bait being disposed of by the time he'd recovered. With the successive appearance of two zombies, this silhouette didn't immediately return to the private room after killing Ling Mo's bait. Instead, they carefully stuck to the corner of the wall and approached the entrance of the pub. Ling Mo felt a huge headache coming when he saw this person drawing closer to his party. After all, he wasn't far behind his bait. Although he concealed his position, there weren't many places to hide within this pub. Based on this person's actions, it was clear that they intended to investigate the entrance and would inevitably discover Ling Mo's group along the way. Rather than furtively attempt to hide, he might as well make his presence known instead. As for the issue of his bait, no one would be able to figure out his relationship with the zombie. Although he brought along two girls while shadowing a zombie, which made it difficult to avoid arousing suspicion, likely no one would be able to puzzle anything out if he himself didn't provide an explanation. Thinking up to this point, Ling Mo helplessly stood up and said, "This." Little did he expect that this person would immediately notice him the second he revealed himself and promptly pressed their back against the wall. The person then pulled something out from their pocket and ruthlessly threw it in Ling Mo's direction. Ling Mo paid no mind to the dark shadow that flew towards him. He casually brandished his short saber, intent on sending it flying. Unexpectedly, a red mist immediately erupted from within it the moment his short saber made contact with it. Ling Mo issued a wretched cry and found himself unable to open his eyes. It felt like a ball of fire had been set ablaze within both his nose and throat, causing him incomparable suffering. Thankfully, Ye Lian and Shana were close by, and they weren't affected. Pepper, what was inside that thing was actually pepper, and it was even wrapped in a paper napkin. It immediately scattered its contents upon contact with his short saber. This was practically the only recourse for a woman when facing a difficult situation, and it was very effective against zombies as well. But this was Ling Mo's first time seeing someone use it, let alone end up on the receiving end of it. After succumbing to the trick, Ling Mo endured the feeling of discomfort that lingered at the corner of his eyes and immediately lashed out in a horizontal motion towards his front with his short saber. As expected, once the silhouette saw Ling Mo fall for their trick, they dashed towards him without a shred of hesitation like a lively monkey, jumping before him in just a few steps. With their weapon in hand raised, they ruthlessly stabbed at Ling Mo's chest. But just as this person raised their arm, a cold glint swept past their eyes, and He immediately felt a cold chill on their neck. Although Ling Mo's eyes were dazed, he could still perceive everything this person did through Shana and Ye Lian's vision. To say nothing of his manipulation ability, Shana herself wouldn't allow anyone to hurt him. In truth, this person's head would have rolled if Ling Mo hadn't restrained Shana a little. A sliver of pain was transmitted from the blade that was resting on their neck. The person's arms that were raised up high immediately stopped in midair, their pair of calm eyes revealing a sudden flash of panic. Shana stepped on the person's foot the moment they thought of moving, her tyrannical strength immediately distorting their expression. But in spite of that, the person didn't dare to move an inch and could only issue a stifled cry. Shana, who possessed no sympathy for humans, wasn't moved by the person's miserable shriek. Instead, she slowly twisted her ankle, causing the survivor's entire body to break out in cold sweat from the pain. It felt as if the sole of their foot was about to be split in half. Only at this time did the person realize that their target wasn't a zombie, but a human, and that they'd bitten on an extremely hard bone. This girl's strength alone was already so strong. Ling Mo didn't stop Shana, even after hearing the survivor's stifled cries. Instead, he immediately opened his canteen and washed his eyes. Although he could perceive his surroundings through Shana and Ye Lian's vision, the situation within the pub at present was unknown. Regaining his own vision was a must. As for the survivor, it was only right for them to suffer a little since they injured him. The survivor was only freed from their suffering after Ling Mo had cleared out his eyes. The survivor's hair was soaked with sweat when Ling Mo laid eyes on him with his pair of bright red eyes. The survivor's face, which could originally be considered handsome, was now distorted by the pain. His screams of pain might have attracted the entire street's zombies if he hadn't clenched his teeth. That's enough, Shana. Let him go. This sentence of Ling Mo's made the survivor feel as if he'd been given amnesty. He raised his head and glanced at Shana, his eyes filled with fear and vigilance. This girl looked as if she wasn't even using her full strength, but she'd almost split his foot in half. Such monstrous strength wasn't something any ordinary person could have. The timing of her strike was precise, and the strength she used was calculated. If she'd applied just a little more strength, his head and body would have likely been separated by now. Upon hearing Ling Mo's words, Shana coldly glanced at the survivor before she slowly withdrew her long saber from his neck. The survivor's body immediately tensed up, and a trace of harshness flashed across his face. But before he had the chance to make a move, he saw a blur in front of his eyes and a fist smashed into his right eye. With a snort, the weapon in his hand was wrested away by Ling Mo. Ling Mo couldn't help but widened his eyes upon laying eyes on the weapon. He secretly thought that this person was truly ruthless. More precisely, this wasn't a weapon. It was just a sharpening steel that had been specially sharpened. Something of this quality was sufficient to defend oneself, but its tip wouldn't be sharp. Using an indeterminate amount of time, this youth sharpened the tip of the sharpening steel into the shape of a sheet and covered it with the blood of zombies. With the vigorous vitality of the virus against other survivors, all one needed to do was pierce their skin to infect them. Clearly, such preparations were made for the sake of dealing with other survivors. After giving the survivor another look, Ling Mo smashed him to the ground with his fist, while Ye Lian silently lifted her leg and stepped on his wrist. The pain he experienced was even more severe than before, causing him to curl up like a shrimp. Shana's previous attack was done of her own accord, but this one was commanded by Ling Mo. At first, this survivor's attack could still be considered accidental, but he clearly had the intent of launching another attack after Shana released him. If Ling Mo's reaction was a little slower, this virus-soaked weapon would have scratched him, potentially threatening him. Ling Mo wouldn't be lenient when it came to others who harbored intentions of attacking him. This survivor was actually very strong-willed. Although his body was bent in the shape of a bow from the pain, he refused to cry out. From his figure, he should be a youth that was just past 20. He wore a filthy men's jacket and a pair of sports shoes. Who knows how long it's been since he washed his head of short and messy hair. But with his sharp chin and his pursed, chapped lips, Ling Mo immediately judged that he looked like a delicate and pretty gigolo. That's enough. Ling Mo squatted down after Shana released him and pressed the sharpening steel against the survivor's neck. This action of Ling Mo's immediately stilled the survivor who was about to resist. He was very clear of the sharpening steel's lethality. What do you plan on doing? He cautiously asked as he looked at Ling Mo. It was clear from his tone that he was rather anxious. I didn't intentionally attack you. But you were just about to, Ling Mo coldly said. A strange look flashed across his eyes as he said, I only wanted to escape with my life. Nonsense. You're definitely living in this pub. Yet you want to talk about escaping? Ling Mo's sneer was ceaseless. This person had some skill, but their lies were far too flimsy. No one would take the trouble to go to a pub for the sake of hunting zombies. And from Ling Mo's perspective, aside from the 2 zombies that he'd sent into the pub today, this pub was unlikely to see even the hair on a zombie's head. Based on that point, this was actually a pretty decent place to live in. But just after his words fell, Ling Mo suddenly felt that something was a little fishy. He gave the survivor a deep look and abruptly asked, You wanted to draw us out? Why? Are there other people inside? Speaking up to this point, Ling Mo raised his head and glanced at Ye Lian. Ye Lian's expression clearly signified that there were zombies around, but little did he expect to run into a survivor instead. However, Ye Lian's instinctual reaction couldn't be wrong, and this person's actions were suspicious as well. Who knows, there might even be some unspeakable secret within this pub. Could there be someone like him who had the ability to control zombies? No. If that were the case, they wouldn't have sent a living person out here to risk their life. But regardless, there was something going on within this pub. Sure enough, a look of panic flashed across the survivor's face upon hearing what Ling Mo said. Although he did his best to mask it, coupled with the rays of dusk which made it even more difficult to discern any peculiarities, Ling Mo still had his shared vision with Shana and Ye Lian. And, as luck would have it, the zombie's night vision was formidable. You look very nervous? If that's the case, I should be right. Ling Mo insipidly said. With the light of resistance burning within his eyes, the survivor clenched his teeth and said abruptly, What do you want? Supplies? I'm not afraid of being honest with you. I'm poor. I don't have any food. Ling Mo was stunned at first. He then disdainfully said, I'm not here to steal your food. I only wanted to ask. Forget it. Looking at you, you probably wouldn't say anyway. I'd be better off just looking on my own. Ling Mo stood up as he said that. This person would seize any opportunity to escape and immediately struggle, only to be stepped on by Ling Mo in response. After which, Ye Lian would drag him along with his hands behind his back. This person wasn't tall. He was slightly shorter when compared to Ye Lian. Although the other party was a girl, he didn't have the slightest means of resisting with Ye Lian pressing down on him. But when Ling Mo indifferently looked over, he could see the absolute panic in the survivor's eyes, giving him confidence in his guess. There was definitely something strange going on. They opened the doors to the private rooms as they advanced along the corridor, but weren't able to reap any returns. Ling Mo even ran over to the washroom and searched it all over. Ever since they'd been ambushed by the advanced zombie, Ling Mo had this vague feeling that zombies as a race might be partial towards dark and narrow places. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything within the washroom either. Back at the corridor, Ling Mo was somewhat depressed as he furrowed his brows. But at this moment, he realized that the survivor's expression seemed to have eased a little. After giving him a few glances, a trace of a smile suddenly sprouted on Ling Mo's face. Your gaze followed me wherever I went, but I realized there was one place that you never looked at. Are you intentionally avoiding that area? The survivor immediately revealed a look of astonishment as he started to violently struggle at the same time. Unfortunately for him, he was like a sick cat in Ye Lian's hands. Ew, how did you find out? Realizing he wasn't able to break free, his eyes turned somewhat frantic as he shouted out in a low voice. Ling Mo was even more sure of himself upon seeing the other party's intense reaction. The other party was confident that with dusk falling, the changes in his expression wouldn't be noticed by Ling Mo. And in truth, Ling Mo had always been walking in front, other than growing eyes at the back of his head. How could Ling Mo have noticed him? He probably wouldn't be able to figure out even if he split his head, and Ling Mo had no intention of telling him either. Don't go over. I only hurt you by accident. Isn't an apology enough? This person was obviously very flustered and babbled nonstop. Ling Mo disdainfully snorted and said, I've already said it before. I know you didn't do it on purpose in the beginning, but you obviously tried to kill me after that. As he said that, he flashed the sharpening steel and said, You don't seem to be all that friendly towards survivors either. He persisted in his attempts to justify himself. This is just my weapon. If you feel that my apology was insufficient, then hit me again. Ling Mo smiled as he shook his head, no longer responding to him. Indeed, it'd be difficult for a normal person to determine if the blood on the sharpening steel was that of irregular humans or zombies. But the spiritual powers that Ling Mo and zombies had were practically one and the same. Although there weren't any changes in his ability to detect the scent of blood, he had a special reaction when it came to the virus scent. When Ling Mo smelled this piece of sharpening steel, apart from the thick stench of blood it exuded, it also faintly emitted a light fragrance. It was very light, but it still signified the presence of the virus. In addition, several layers of blood had to be applied for it to achieve such an effect. Perhaps this person might use never cleaning his weapon after killing a zombie as an excuse, but only an idiot would believe that. Normal people would stay far away from the blood of zombies due to their fear of it, viewing it as a poisonous snake or a ferocious beast. Even Ling Mo would dry off his blood-soaked short saber after a battle, aside from its fuller, which he truly had no way cleaning. Moreover, Wasn't his attempt at covering things up highlighting the problem itself? Employing vicious methods wasn't wrong. It'd be difficult for a regular person to avoid using unscrupulous methods if they wanted to live on. But Ling Mo had absolutely no goodwill towards the survivor who resorted to such malicious means, much less be moved by anything that he said. The survivor's eyes turned dull upon seeing Ling Mo resolutely walk towards the end of the corridor. A door sat at the end of it, but the pile of junk stacked up by the other party and the low-light environment made it difficult for others to notice it at first glance. If Ling Mo's powers of observation weren't keen enough, he wouldn't have found anything odd either. Upon opening the room's door, what greeted him was in fact a kitchen. The inside of the kitchen was dim as well. Ling Mo glanced around the area before realizing someone had boarded up the window with various items, allowing only a sliver of light to come in through its gaps. There weren't many things in here, and from the looks of it, everything was meticulously arranged. A ground sheet was laid out beside a wall with a plastic basket sitting beside it. Some food could be found within it. A majority of them were expired pieces of sliced bread and some dried fruit, likely found from within this pub. Apart from that, this person had a sizable number of beverages that filled up the entirety of the kitchen stove. But what Ling Mo found strange was the fact that he couldn't find traces of anyone else within this room. Could Ye Lian's instinctual reaction really be wrong? At this moment, Ye Lian escorted the survivor over. Upon seeing Ling Mo's cheerless expression, which seemed to indicate that he came up empty-handed, he hurriedly summoned up his courage and said, "I really don't have anything. Help yourself to whatever catches your eye." Ling Mo, who was somewhat undecided, immediately made his decision when he saw the survivor's reaction. Under the survivor's increasingly frantic gaze, Ling Mo slowly walked alongside the wall as he searched around, eventually stopping in front of a refrigerator. The survivor's eyes abruptly widened when he saw Ling Missouri place his hand on top of it, nervously watching Ling Mo's each and every movement. But the survivor's final shred of hope was completely eradicated when Ling Mo started pushing it. As Ling Mo pushed the refrigerator, he wondered, what exactly could the survivor have hidden to make him so nervous? In fact, this concealment wasn't all that skillfully done. All one needed to do was look at it more closely, and they'd realize that the refrigerator was out of place. Ling Mo predicted that there'd definitely be another door behind it. As expected, an entrance appeared once the refrigerator was pushed out of the way. There was even a metal plate on top of it that wrote, "Restricted Warehouse." So it turns out that this was Music Emperor's warehouse. The alcohol on top of the stove should have come from this place. Ling Mo slowly twisted the doorknob, but the moment he opened the door, a black shadow suddenly leaped at him. Startled, Ling Mo took a step back and sent his spiritual tentacles out in a flash. Falling under the influence of Ling Mo's tentacles, the figure that pounced towards him abruptly stopped. It looked as if it had suddenly slammed into an intangible wall. But in reality, it was just being affected by Ling Mo's spiritual powers. Ling Mo was feeling a little depressed after narrowly avoiding being jumped on. At the moment, he still wasn't capable of freely extending and retracting his spiritual tentacles, restricting its flexibility. From the looks of it, he still needed much more training. Ling Mo suddenly froze when he stared at the figure. The one who rushed up towards him was, in fact, a pretty and delicate girl. She seemed to be around the same age as Ye Lian, but her face was exceedingly pale and her lips were chapped, making her seem like she was suffering from serious illness. No wonder the survivor seemed so desperate. From his perspective, he probably thought that someone like Ling Mo, who didn't have the least bit of lenience, might even raise his hand against this girl. The girl held a sharp piece of metal within her hand as she stared dumbstruck at Ling Mo. She clearly couldn't understand why her attack had been mysteriously interrupted before she even reached Ling Mo. "Who are you?" The girl's gaze seemed a little disorganized, but she very quickly voiced her question. In truth, Ling Mo himself was stunned as well. Based on Ye Lian's reaction, shouldn't there have been a zombie inside? Why it turn out to be a girl instead? On top of that, based on her appearance, she didn't seem to bear any traces of mutation either. Ling Mo was certain she was human. Seeing Ling Mo remain silent, the girl cast her gaze behind Ling Mo and furrowed her brows. Her temper truly flared up when she spotted the bruise on the gigolo's eye as she shouted, "Let go of Sherbin." As she said that, she unhesitatingly sprang into action. It was then that Ling Mo realized she had something that set her apart from others. Although she didn't move quickly when she charged towards Ling Mo, his resistance met with air while the piece of metal in her hand had ripped open his jacket. He might have gotten injured if he hadn't used his spiritual tentacles to distort the girl's senses. The thought of this made Ling Mo turn pale with fright. The first time could still be considered a mistake on his part, but this series of near misses caused a term to finally flit across Ling Mo's mind. A psychic. This girl was definitely a psychic. Going by that logic, could Ye Lian have reacted that way because she discovered psychic? Although he'd previously come across Wang Lin, who was also a psychic, Ye Lian hadn't developed her true consciousness yet. This reaction of hers might have only come about after she obtained her true consciousness. However, this development made Ling Mo feel like something was a little odd. For normal humans, psychics should be the equivalent of a mutated zombie within the zombie race. Both of them were somewhere along their evolutionary path. Could there be some subtle relationship between the two of them? But Ye Lian reaction towards psychics was a good thing. After all, the word psychic wasn't carved on all their heads, which made distinguishing them at a glance a difficult task. While Ling Mo was distracted, the girl's attacks turned extremely vicious in an instant. Her actions clearly weren't fast, but they were always somehow able to get past Ling Mo's counterattacks and find a gap in his defense. Ling Mo felt apprehensive as his spiritual tentacles completely surrounded this girl and constantly disrupted her attacks. After interrupting her countless number of times, Ling Mo finally found an opening and pressed the sharpening steel against the girl's throat. The girl's reaction was indeed swift, or it might be due to the help of her psychic ability. After the sharpening steel was pressed against her throat, she was strangely able to free herself. But how could Ling Mo let her go so easily after grabbing onto this opportunity? Ling Mo grabbed her arm as she tried to dodge and pinned her against the wall. The girl's face was flushed after a round of battle, but her eyes, on the other hand, appeared even dimmer than before. Apparently, she'd used up all her stamina after forcefully moving her body around. She wouldn't even have a chance of touching Ling Mo if she didn't possess that strange psychic ability. "Don't touch her!" The survivor immediately shouted hoarsely. "You bullying a girl doesn't amount to anything." Resorting to provocation? Ling Mo sneered. He turned his head and said, "Wasn't she the one who took action first? The two of you must be suffering from some illness. You both insist on taking the initiative to provoke me first. You caught Sherbin, and you even beat him up till he ended up in such a state. Hi, I only took action to save him." After running out of stamina, this girl's way of speaking became dispirited as well. Ling Mo decided he might as well let her go. Either way, she no longer posed a threat to him in her current state. "I didn't grab him. He was the one who attacked me first," Ling Mo said as he pointed at his eyes. "See this?" The girl looked at Ling Mo's bloodshot eyes and was stunned for a moment. Thereafter, she helplessly laughed and said, "My pepper is very effective, isn't it? Were you the one who thought of it?" Ling Mo asked as he stared blankly at her. "Oomph." The girl let out a snort and said, "If he didn't apologize, then I'll apologize to you now. It looks like you've paid him back for earlier as well. Could you let it go now?" "No rush. I still have something I need to ask you." Ling Mo revealed a faint smile, causing a look of doubt to appear on the girl's face. The gigolo named Sherbin roared once again. "What are you thinking of doing?" "Don't touch her." The girl coughed twice, said, "Sherbin, don't blindly worry about me. Can't you see the two beautiful girls by his side? I'm not up to his standard." But last time, Sherbin's face was flush with anger as he attempted to rebut her. "That's enough. We can't beat him, and we can't hide from him, either." Hi. The girl looked like she was suffering from severe illness, but Ling Mo felt that she also seemed to be suffering from some grievous injuries based on how powerless her left hand seemed. From Sherbin's tone, there was apparently a survivor who harbored ill intentions towards this girl in the past. But this girl was rather clever. Putting aside the fact that Ling Mo didn't lack women by his side, even if he didn't have a woman beside him, he wouldn't have laid his hands on a girl with a body so sickly that she could breathe her last at any time. After all, he wasn't cruel and vicious like the Baldy's lackeys. Ling Mo was suddenly filled with curiosity, but he had a more important question to ask. "Are you a psychic?" The girl gave Ling Mo a look of amazement, but she quickly understood what was going on and said, "That's right. And my eyesight wasn't going bad just now. You were using your psychic ability to influence me. You're a psychic too." Upon hearing this, Sherbing's eyes immediately widened in disbelief as he looked towards Ling Mo, his expression turning exceedingly complicated. "I know Sherbing's methods may be a little extreme, but he did that for my sake. Could you release him?" The girl asked once again. Ling Mo rubbed his nose and said, "He may have done it for your sake, but what does that have to do with me? How about this? I'm very curious about your ability." "Bullet time. My psychic ability is called bullet time." The girl answered straightforwardly. Ling Mo was stunned for a moment. Bullet time was a concept he had some knowledge of. Slowing down the movement of others? This strange ability would undoubtedly be a great killing tool if used properly. But this ability wouldn't be all that useful with the terrible state that the girl's body was in. "You're unexpectedly frank." Ling Mo couldn't help but feel somewhat astonished when she freely told him about her powers. The girl smiled and said, "In any case, you yourself are a psychic. Telling you doesn't mean much. Besides, I'm your captive and my friend is in your hands as well. Do I have any other choice?" This girl really was smart. Ling Mo previously felt that Sherbin was a level-headed survivor, but now, after looking at this girl, Ling Mo had this vague feeling that Sherbin's behavior had manifested itself under her guidance. Her sudden resistance from before was the result of her expending all of her strength and relying on her psychic ability in an attempt to catch her opponent off guard, which most people would fall prey to. But her strategy was flawed in that she hadn't expected Ling Mo to also be a psychic. On top of that, he turned out to be stronger than her as well. After losing, the girl displayed a rarely seen level of calm. Ling Mo felt that if her body was healthy, she definitely wouldn't have fallen to such a state where she had to hide in a place like this just to get by. The warehouse was pretty nicely decorated. Although it was gloomy, the area wasn't moist. Ling Mo allowed Ye Lian to release Sherbin while he unceremoniously sat on the only single bed within the room. Ling Mo's vision was still somewhat obstructed, and his eyes continued to hurt. He wouldn't feel better unless he rested for a while. "I pay my respects to your pepper. Now, I plan to rest here for a while and think about how you can compensate me for my losses. Didn't you already hit Sherbin? And it looks like it wasn't just once either. Now, you're asking for compensation as well. The girl sounded somewhat helpless, but Ling Mo was far too powerful. With no way of resisting, whatever objections she raised would naturally have no effect. However, what she said was true. Not only was Sherbin beaten up, after he was released, both of his arms moved in a very awkward manner, and he had a limp in his stride. Sherbin vigilantly gazed at Ling Mo before slowly walking towards the girl. Although he brushed past Ye Lian and Shana, he seemed to have lost all thoughts of resisting. He had no way of contending against these two frail-looking girls. What's more, his sharpening steel was still in Ling Mo's hands. To an ordinary person like him, taking away his weapon was as good as eliminating all of his fighting strength. But when Sherbin stretched out his hand to help the girl up, she shook her head and rejected him. Sherbin didn't insist on helping her up either. He probably understood her personality very well. Ling Mo observed them with the cool eye of a bystander from the side. He felt that this girl was probably the type of person who was tenacious and strong-willed. However, her tone was gentle when she spoke, completely different from the impression gave off when she took action. Once she restrained her relentless and sharp aura, there'd be no way of telling that she was a psychic. Although Ling Mo was completely able to block her first attack, and he had his guard up due to Ye Lian's special reaction, he still almost fell prey to her assault. From this, it could be seen that absolutely no one would look down on her strength if she were able to recover her health. The girl supported herself up with great difficulty and slowly walked over to Ling Mo's side. She then sat on the bed and said, "You don't mind, right? As you can see, I'm unwell." "I don't mind," Ling Mo secretly thought to himself. "How could I mind if you're not bothered? After all, the one who can't resist now isn't me, but you." Sherbin hurriedly and nervously followed her over. He glared at Ling Mo, but having learned from his past experiences, he didn't dare to get too close to Ling Mo, and neither did he dare to display his hostility too openly, which Ling Mo found rather hilarious. While exchanging blows with Sherbin, Ling Mo had already discovered that his ambushing abilities were passable and he was prudent. But making him go out onto the streets and face numerous zombies would probably be too much for him. Looking at the amount of food he'd collected, Ling Mo could tell that he did indeed lack the ability to face zombies head-on. The girl's weak body didn't permit her to leave the premises either. From the looks of it, she'd been putting up with her suffering all this while. Falling sick at the end of the world was a very grave matter since there weren't any doctors. It was also difficult to find the appropriate medicine. This was especially so when one had to go out in search of medicine but lacked the strength to do so. In that case, their fate would be left to divine providence. But looking at the girl's current state, she likely wouldn't be able to do so. However, Ling Mo always felt that Sherbin's reactions were a bit too excessive, which probably had something to do with what happened the previous time. The girl suddenly stretched out her hand towards Ye Lian and said, "Actually, I do have some recollection of that big sister." Ling Mo was stunned for a moment. Soon after, he gave the girl another glance and said, "Did you study at X City University as well?" "Correct. If my memory serves me right, she should be the campus belle." The girl gave a faint smile and said, "My name is Ling Mo, a first year in the English faculty. Sherbin is part of the physical education faculty. Don't think ill of him, he actually has a really good personality. Only, he might be a bit too oversensitive." Sherbin wasn't the least bit angry even after hearing Ling Mo say such a thing about him. Instead, he fiercely said, "I'm not being oversensitive, it was those people from before." Ling Mo had roughly guessed what happened after hearing Sherbin repeatedly talk about it. This girl probably ran into a group like the Baldy's posse in the past. If that were really the case, Sherbin's way of looking at other survivors, especially males, like they were a threat was understandable. One had to understand that at the end of the world, tensions amongst everyone were as taut as a bowstring. This was especially so when disaster first struck. At that point, even Ling Mo was at a loss of what to do, living in a daze from day to day. He was like a rat desperately trying to survive. There might be some people left in the world with good personalities, but they were definitely in the minority. Ling Mo was only able to cross this hurdle because he had Ye Lian in his heart. Others who weren't able to overcome this tribulation would instead have their hearts twisted because of this. Although most people still seemed normal on the surface, they'd sink into hysteria once their fragile psyche was provoked. Sherbin was probably one such case, while Ling Mo, on the other hand, had clearly crossed this threshold. "I've already told you they're not that kind of people." "That's right. Why are you guys here? Did you escape from X City University as well?" Ling Mo inquired once again. Her tone was calm. It was as if she wasn't the least bit concerned about Ling Mo doing anything. Ling Mo shook his head and said, "No, I plan to enter X City University." "Did you guys escape from there?" Sherbin gave a snort and responded, "Ling Mo and I escaped from there a few days ago." "I advise you not to go." Ling Mo had a complicated look in her eyes. "With your level of strength, escaping to the suburban areas with those two girls shouldn't be too difficult. At that time, you can look for a remote place to settle down and stock up on some food. After which, you just need to hold out till the nation sends someone out to help. Although no one has come yet, and all information about the outside world has been cut off, I still feel that the nation would be able to pull together a force to help us out." Ling Mo really was an intelligent girl, but how could she know that the two girls who stood beside Ling Mo were, in fact, zombies? Although the suburban area had zombies, the number of mutated zombies, there was little, let alone advanced zombies. Without gels, they wouldn't be able to survive. As a result, Lin Wanchio's well-intentioned advice was rejected by Ling Mo with a shake of his head. I have some things to do there, so I need to get in. Since you guys escaped from there, could you tell me how things are like inside? I'll consider it my compensation if you explain the situation to me in detail. Cough, cough. Lin Wanchio coughed once again, an unhealthy shade of red surfacing on her face. Ling Mo couldn't help but feel his heart clench when he looked at her, genuinely worried that she might cough herself to death. Previously, she took action without hesitation to save Sherbin. Because of that, she probably used up all her strength. Her actions from before might have even worsened her illness. This caused Sherbin to glare at Ling Mo in anger when she started coughing. Ling Mo rolled his eyes on the inside as he quietly thought to himself, if you weren't dishonest with me, I wouldn't have gone as far as to drag you in, and Lin Wanchio wouldn't have had to take action. Lin Wanchio managed to catch her breath after coughing for quite a while. Lin Wanchio slowly said, that works too. Sherbin was in the wrong just now, and I took action when I wasn't clear of the situation either. I'm at fault too. You're in luck. Lin Wanchio was a core member of the volunteer rescuers in X City University. She's the most knowledgeable when it comes to the school's circumstances. Sherbin thoughtlessly added on, causing Lin Wanchio to cast a withering gaze at him. Inwardly, Ling Mo thought that while Sherbin was rather skilled, but his brain wasn't all that sharp. With their inferior position at present, saying that she was part of the volunteer rescuers wouldn't be able to scare anyone at all. Instead, it completely revealed their hand. On top of that, she wouldn't have fallen to such a state if she really did keep in contact with the volunteer rescuers. After what Sherbin said, Lin Wanchio could only helplessly give a summarized version of her background. Sherbin is correct. I was part of the volunteer rescuers in the past, but only consist of some students and teachers that we gathered together for the time being. Once I found out about my psychic powers, I was pulled in to be part of their executives. But unlike them, I didn't have any ulterior motives. I only wanted to lend a hand till help arrived. It was normal for such a big school to have a volunteer rescue team. After nodding his head, Ling Mo asked once again, roughly how many survivors and zombies are left within X City University? Lin Wanchio looked vexed as she considered Ling Mo's question. After giving it some thought, she said, based on X City University statistics in the past, there are roughly 55,000 students. Taking into consideration those who weren't in school at the time, coupled with those that fled, I'd wager that the number of survivors and zombies left would be around 40,000. That number was already very terrifying, but Ling Mo was filled with satisfaction instead. A large number of zombies would increase the chances of a mutated or even an advanced zombie appearing. I don't have a definite statistic for the number of zombies in there, but my guess is that there are more than 30,000 of them. As for the number of survivors, there's probably around 3,000 of them. Lin Wanchio gave a relatively precise estimation after immersing herself in silence for a while. 30,000. Coming to X City University was indeed the right choice. How many mutated zombies would there be with so many zombies around? Entering X City University meant that one would be entering a nest of zombies. Although the danger there was great, the number of viral gels to be had was unequaled as well. Does your volunteer rescue team have enough members to look after 3,000 people? Although Ling Mo felt that this definitely wouldn't be the case, he couldn't help but ask anyway. Lin Wanchio laughed and shook her head. No way. There'd be more confusion once we increased the number of personnel. And we lack the ability to direct such a large operation. We basically just disperse to the various areas of the school. The group that I'm in, for instance, has only 30 people. But the number of supplies that we've been able to find have been growing increasingly little. So I had a few other people left in search of a way out. Little did we expect to run into somewhat of a mishap. Speaking up to this point, a trace of grief flashed across her eyes as if she wasn't willing to go any further. Doesn't this mean that you're very familiar with this route? Ling Mo's eyes twinkled, but he immediately gave a wry laugh and shook his head after giving a little more thought. With Lin Wanchio's body, even bringing her away might be too much for her. In truth, Ling Mo did want someone to lead the way. While the zombies he controlled could find a path, in the end, it was still the same as him slowly searching for a way through. With a campus this big, searching from place to place like a headless housefly would definitely be more troublesome. But he hadn't expected to run into a survivor from X City University so quickly, so he hadn't thought of this possibility. However, at present, although he'd met Lin Wanchio and Sherbin, one of them had an ailing body. Although the other's body was decent, their brain wasn't all that sharp. In some ways, these two complement one another very well. Ling Mo somewhat maliciously thought to himself. In that case, are there many volunteer rescue teams in X City University? Ling Mo curiously asked. Lin Wanchio nodded her head and said, yes, the largest teams have around 200 people. But there are limits to the school's resources. I reckon a majority of the people are thinking about how to escape. However, there's just too many zombies. We had to pay a huge sacrifice before we managed to escape with 10 people. Now, Sherbin and I are the only ones left. She paused for a moment before she said with some astonishment, looks like you're dead set on going to X City University, but even if you guys have outstanding strength, getting in would still be difficult, let alone coming out once again. The school isn't a suitable place for prolonged periods of stay. I have my own methods, but thanks for your reminder. Ling Mo smiled. After which, he said without any regret, it's a shame your body isn't well. You probably wouldn't be able to lead us there in the state you're in. Sherbin somewhat angrily interrupted and said, what kind of stunt are you trying to pull? She's already so weak, and you're still planning on bringing her along. Ling Mo couldn't help but feel a little fed up after being repeatedly interrupted by Sherbin. He was only voicing his thoughts. He didn't really intend to bring Lin Wanxiu along. Ling Mo didn't know whether Sherbin was truly incapable of understand what others were saying or whether he was particularly displeasing to look at, causing Sherbin to pick to nitpick on him. Ling Mo cast a sidelong glance as he asked with a sneer on his face, you seem very concerned about her. Sherbin's face immediately took on a faint shade of red. If he didn't have a black eye, this gigolo would have had a rather dignified and righteous air about him as he said, of course, I held back in the past, but now she and I are comrades. And if she hadn't protected me last time, I wouldn't be standing here now. My concern for her now is only natural. After saying that, he even took the effort to straighten his back as he stole a glance at Lin Wanxiu. Oh, Ling Mo dragged out the last syllable of his sentence before he abruptly stood up and coldly said, then what have you done for her? Place her under house arrest as you wait for her to die. What did you say? Sherbin furiously jumped up and was about to send out a punch, but was immediately stopped by Lin Wanxiu's shout, don't do anything stupid. After saying that, she turned to Ling Mo once more and said, he has a one-track mind, but you shouldn't have provoked him and used it as an excuse to beat him up either. Following that, she glanced at Shana and Ye Lian once again. After coming into this room, these two girls kept their distance from the rest of them, seemingly unwilling to interact with strangers. But when Sherbin tried to make a move, Shana's hand immediately went to the hilt of her long saber, tightening her grip around it, while Ye Lian's eyes took on a faintly cold luster. Lin Wanxiu had no doubt in her mind that if she hadn't stopped Sherbin in time, he would have been beaten up till he looked like a pig's head, even if Ling Mo didn't take action. Putting aside Shana for the time being, how could Ye Lian be so strong? But thinking about it, her knowledge of the campus belle was limited to mere rumors and hearsay. And from what she heard, Ye Lian kept a relatively low profile. Who knows, she might have even been a martial arts practitioner in the past. The repercussions that these two girls hinted at had increased Lin Wanxiu's evaluation of Ling Mo. Different from Sherbin, she didn't think that Ling Mo was forcing them to stay by his side. If that were really the case, why were they focusing their attention on Ling Mo all the time? As for being under house arrest, you yourself have seen it, I'm in poor health. This is just preparing for any eventualities. Lin Wanxiu sighed as she explained. But Ling Mo vaguely felt that things might not be so simple. Even if she went through a traumatic incident of being harmed by a survivor, that didn't mean she had to hide in a small warehouse like this. Thinking back to Sherbin's overreaction, Ling Mo felt that things were even fishier. But these were other people's personal matters, which Ling Mo had no intention of prying into. After glancing at Lin Wanxiu, he said, can you help me draw a map? No. Lin Wanxiu gave Ling Mo a profound look before she abruptly said, I plan to go with you guys to X City University. What? This cry of surprise originated from Sherbin, but before he even got the chance to say anything else, Lin Wanxiu cut him off and said, I've been here for many days, but I still haven't gotten any better. In fact, my illness is getting even worse. I don't plan on dying just yet, at least not from this illness. Lin Wanxiu's tone was calm, but Sherbin's face was flushed with embarrassment upon hearing it. He'd just been questioned by Ling Mo, and now, after hearing what Lin Wanxiu said, he felt as if both sides of his face were being slapped in succession, to the point where it was swelling. Looking at Sherbin silently purse his lips, Lin Wanxiu revealed an apologetic smile before she turned to Ling Mo and said, don't worry, I won't drag you down. Sherbin can take care of me. In return, I'll show you the way to school. I'll even brief you on the situation within the school. I only have one condition. You have to let me come along with you guys to the school's infirmary. What? You don't plan on going back to your team? Ling Mo unintentionally glanced at Shana when he questioned her. At first, Shana insisted on going back to Third High as well, which resulted in her being harmed by Liu Xian and turning into a mutated zombie. Lin Wanxiu shook her head. What can I do even if I do go back? With the state I'm in, they might even drive me out the second I step past the entrance. I only plan on going to the school's infirmary to find some medicine. It beats waiting to die. Don't worry, I won't slow you down. You'll be able to save lots of time with me leading the way. I can find a most appropriate route for you regardless of where you plan to go. Seeing as your group seem to be pretty strong, I'll place my trust in you guys, and I hope that you'll trust me too. What she said was filled with confidence, and that had indeed moved Ling Mo. With someone who knows the way leading, he could cut down on the amount of time used. Based on Lin Wanxiu and Sherbin's abilities, safely arriving at the school's infirmary was a pipe dream. Making such a decision for the sake of her survival was the most natural decision. What satisfied Ling Mo the most was that this intelligent girl understood the meaning of equivalent exchange. Although what she said might make others feel like she was being arrogant, Ling Mo felt that her way of displaying her own worth was very appropriate. The only thing that Ling Mo wasn't satisfied with was Sherbin's presence, but Lin Wanxiu's health was truly ailing. Although Ling Mo allowed her to lead the way, that didn't mean he was willing to be her nanny and take care of her. This was why Ling Mo nodded his head after thinking for a while and said, that's fine. But I want to make it clear that if you cause any trouble along the road and put us in danger, my first priority would be the safety of my people. Rest assured, I won't cause any trouble. Lin Wanqiu seemed to be in a good mood after hearing Ling Mo's agreement, to the point where she even joked about herself as she said, "With the way I am, what kind of trouble could I cause?" Sherbin's muffled voice sounded out. "Everything's fine as long as you guys don't try anything funny. When do you plan to leave?" Lin Wanqiu asked once again. Ling Mo rubbed his nose and said, "We probably won't be able to set out today. I was originally planning to find a place to rest here before slowly finding out about the circumstances further in. Then just stay here for the day. Although it might be small, there aren't any zombies around." Just as Lin Wanqiu finished speaking, Sherbin added in a gloomy tone, "There weren't any before this, but 2 zombies suddenly appeared today. What rotten luck." There was some underlying implication to his words, but Ling Mo had no intention of responding to him. He little nodded his head and said, "That works." Lin Wanqiu revealed a look of astonishment when she found that 2 zombies had actually appeared within the pub. But since she confined herself to this room, she wasn't familiar with the circumstances on the outside, so she didn't harbor any suspicions. Likely due to her renewed hopes of living on, Lin Wanqiu was rather spirited as the 2 of them sat and talked for a while. After settling upon their cooperative relationship, Lin Wanqiu didn't conceal her knowledge anymore and told Ling Mo everything that she knew about the current situation. Although Shana and Ye Lian didn't cut in, they still earnestly listened on. They didn't look as if they understood everything that was being said, but the 2 zombie girls were still very interested when someone spoke to Ling Mo. Shana, in particular, was being especially attentive. Ling Mo had some understanding of the situation within X City University after listening to Lin Wanqiu's explanation. There were many volunteer rescue teams like hers in X City University. After all, 3,000 survivors wasn't a small number. She wasn't clear about the situation of the other volunteer rescue teams, but 2 factions existed within her own team. One faction wanted to hold fast within the school, while the faction that Lin Wanqiu was in wanted to escape as soon as possible. They believed that the possibility of holding out till the nation's help arrived would only exist if they were on the outside. There were also others who'd completely given up hope and felt that both the act of holding out and waiting for help was a pointless affair. This group of people was the ones giving Lin Wanqiu a headache. In the course of talking with Ling Mo, Lin Wanqiu herself started to feel that these people were akin to trash. If they're trash, then aren't they vermin? From the looks of it, vermin existed everywhere. Apart from survivor camps like Song Tian and Wang Lin's, all the other survivors were likely clustered in this area, lacking the restraints of both proper organization and regulations. With such a structure, the volunteer rescue teams falling apart was a given. But while Lin Wanqiu had spoken at length with Ling Mo, she didn't touch upon the accident that had happened to her in the past in detail. She only vaguely mentioned it by saying that her current health and her past accident were closely related. All right, what do you think is the proportion of psychics to normal humans? And just how many psychics are there within this city? Lin Wanqiu suddenly asked. This question had truly stumped Ling Mo. In his heart, he thought, how the hell would I know? He was constantly on the move, but the survivors he'd met up to this point hadn't been many, and amongst them, the number of psychics he encountered was just 2. One was Wang Lin's useless ability that required her to be close to her target, while the other was a formidable ability that was ironically in the hands of Lin Wanqiu, who had a weak body. Ling Mo even felt some regret in his heart, and thought that he really did have some luck. On top of that, he was fortunate enough to keep Ye Lian by his side because of his ability. Shana was included as well. There probably aren't many psychics. From what I know, apart from myself, there's only one other person. But that person isn't all that good, so it's better if we do our best to stay away from them. Lin Wanqiu gave a profound smile, but didn't speak any further on the matter of psychics. There were only 2 psychics amongst 3,000 survivors. This really was a small proportion. However, using the number of survivors in X City University as a yardstick would clearly lead to inaccuracies. At this moment, Ling Mo had an even bigger quandary in his heart. He looked to Lin Wanqiu's pair of eyes and finally voiced his question. How do you get your psychic ability? Lin Wanqiu was dumbfounded, but a strange light continuously flashed in the depth of her calm, black eyes. She remained reticent for a while before she said with some uncertainty, I don't know, I just felt like I naturally knew it. Was it the same for you as well? Ling Mo sighed and helplessly nodded his head. Maybe it has something to do with high-tech stuff, or it's an invasion by aliens? Sherbin suddenly interjected. Just like in the movies where a microchip is inserted into your brain? Lin Wanqiu wordlessly lowered her head the moment he opened his mouth, while Ling Mo couldn't help but laugh out loud. He really was a rash person who didn't know how to use his brain. Just as Ling Mo had thought, psychics and mutated zombies both evolved from within their respective races. So how could this be explained by mentioning high-tech aliens? Even if he did assume that aliens existed, why would they want to install a chip in the brains of humans? To give a portion of the human race the ability to stand up to zombies and the chance to fight for their lives? Ling Mo couldn't care less about what other people thought, but he himself didn't believe it at all looking at Lin Wanqiu's face that had "I don't know him" written all over it. It was clear that she found his way of speaking comical. Forget it, there's no point thinking about it. What we should be considering is how to properly use our abilities. Ling Mo seemed indifferent as he spoke, which caused Lin Liuqiu to glance at him again. As psychics, this should be an issue that concerned all of that greatly, but she had to admit that what Ling Mo said was true as well. There was no point in making wild guesses about issues they had no understanding of. The two spoke a few more words before Lin Wanxiu adopted an expression as if she was intentionally trying to get into Ling Mo's good books. She proposed, "I'll sleep outside, you guys can stay here." But Ling Mo laughed as he shook his head and said, "No need, I can sleep in the kitchen." What a joke! How could he spend the night in a completely enclosed area such as this one? Although Lin Wanxiu was intelligent, Sherbin was rash. Putting aside his appearances, he couldn't even bring himself to believe in what Lin Wanxiu said. If they ever happened to lock him inside, all they'd need to do was start a fire, and he'd be burned to death. Or they could make use of the smoke and suffocate him if they were eyeing his possessions. In short, vigilance was a necessity. Even when Ling Mo was looking for a place to spend the night, the most important factor to consider was the presence of an escape route. Some survivors might think that they'd be safer by locking themselves in, but Ling Mo felt that it was essential for him to ensure an escape route was available. This habit of Ling Mo's more or less came about because of his experience with the very first zombie he controlled. In the past, the spiritual link with his zombie puppet was frequently broken while he was sleeping, resulting in him escaping by the skin of his teeth. Just imagine, if he'd stayed in a completely enclosed area at the time, he'd have long been turned into a pile of waste. Although this issue was easier to solve, since all he needed to do was leave Ye Lian and Shana outside. Who knows whether they dispose of Lin Wanxiu and Sherbin once he fell asleep. 1. If you're having trouble understanding what's going on, Ling Mo chose to stay in the kitchen instead of the warehouse that was completely closed off because he wanted to ensure an escape route was open to him. Seeing as Ling Mo wasn't grateful, Lin Wanxiu didn't insist upon the matter. Instead, she said, "That's fine too. Sherbin will be taking care of me tomorrow and probably won't be able to help you guys out. How about this? Let him stand vigil outside the private room tonight. After all, zombies came by today, which means that this place isn't all that safe anymore." Her suggestion was made with the intention of allowing Sherbin to make amends for his past actions, and Ling Mo had no reason to refuse, so he nodded his head. But in his heart, he thought that this place was in fact very safe. Those two zombies only came here because they were under his control. However, keeping Sherbin on guard for an entire night was an enjoyable matter too. Time passed quickly, and night came in the blink of an eye. During this time, Ling Mo had taken out some food. All sorts of food, with varying degrees of abundance, was laid out. To Lin Wanxiu and Sherbin, who'd become accustomed to eating expired bread, it was a veritable assault on their eyes. Sherbin ground his teeth as he looked at the bread, but Ling Mo paid him no mind. He only took a packet of biscuits and slipped it over Lin Wanxiu before saying, "Have some, that way you'll have the strength to walk a little faster tomorrow." Sherbin's eyes widened in an instant, but Lin Wanxiu acted as if she was unaware of his gaze. She calmly took possession of the biscuits and asked once again, "Aren't those two going to eat? This place isn't comfortable. We'll go outside and grab some fresh air." Shana, who hadn't spoken the entire time, had turned towards her and spoken in a slightly stiff manner before she grabbed Ye Lian and walked out with her. Ling Mo looked on and felt moved. From the looks of it, Shana had grasped the ability to read the mood. She even knew how to use tactics such as this to escape. Ling Mo used this as a chance to slip away and said, "I'll go and check on them." Although Ye Lian and Shana's behavior was a little strange, both sides didn't know each other for long. They wouldn't be found out as long as they were a little careful. Look at his morals. The instant Sherbin saw Ling Mo step out the door, he couldn't help but furiously curse at him in a low voice. Lin Wanxiu slowly tore open the packaging. When she saw a trace of disappointment flash across Sherbin's eyes, she said, "He's already giving us a very good deal. Do you really think I'd have any say in the matter if he truly wanted to make things difficult for me? You can dislike him, but you have to remember that what he has is strength. Just like now, all you can do is quietly curse at him." Lin Wanxiu's words had resulted in Sherbin's face taking on a shade of both red and white as he finally gripped the bread in his hands. He was somewhat unresigned as he said, "Lin Wanxiu, why do I feel as if you've changed? How have I changed?" Lin Wanxiu leaned backward, a look of exhaustion appearing on her face. "I've taught you all sorts of ways to fight over these past few days, but your improvement was still limited. Living up till now has been very difficult for me, and I don't plan on dying just yet. On top of that, as a psychic, I can't allow myself to die so easily. I still want to go back to my hometown and look for my father and mother. He has strength, and I plan to follow him for an opportunity to live. Are you telling me that that's wrong? If you really do have my interests at heart, then don't provoke him. We'll be parting ways once we reach the school's infirmary. So why do you have to be like this?" Sherbin gritted his teeth and said, "I'm just worried about him turning out to be like those other people." Lin Wanxiu's expression turned increasingly disappointed as she looked at him and said, "I don't plan on explaining myself anymore. All you need to do is believe in me." Their exchange naturally wasn't heard by Ling Mo. At present, his head was filled with black lines as he stared at Shana and Ye Lian. 2. Think the black vertical lines you see on the heads of anime characters when unexpected happens and has negative implications. Click here for an image of it. These two zombie girls had run to the back of the kitchen and had developed a strong interest in the beverages on the stove. The one taking the lead was naturally Shana, who had many memories. She grabbed a bottle of alcohol in one motion and stared at it. She looked as if she was trying to think of something as she said, I remember. After drinking this, you'll feel very comfortable. It turns out that Shana wasn't a good girl in the past, and actually had memories of drinking alcohol. By the time Ling Mo appeared, Shana had already used brute strength to open a bottle of beer. She not only drank a few mouthfuls of it, she even urged Ye Lian to do the same. Although Ling Mo didn't know how the two zombie girls interacted amongst their own race, after thinking about Ye Lian's newly developed consciousness, he realized basic communication amongst their own kind shouldn't be all that difficult. Luckily, Ye Lian's alcohol tolerance is pretty good, and Shana's shouldn't be all that bad either. Thinking this, Ling Mo didn't seize the bottle of beer from them. In his eyes, letting these two zombie girls experience some new things was a good thing. Even if they'd never be human again, giving them a better understanding of human society and allowing them to come in contact with some human customs wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But what Ling Mo hadn't expected was these two zombie girls getting drunk before they'd even finished that bottle of beer. Although their faces were as pale as ever, their eyes glowed a faint red, similar to how Ling Mo currently looked. It was at a level where no one would discover their identities as zombies. But the important thing was that their spiritual undulations had suddenly intensified, and the expression that had when they looked at Ling Mo was rather strange. It can't be. Don't tell me zombies can't drink alcohol? That's right. Alcohol awakens their instincts. Ling Mo's face darkened at the thought as he slowly stepped backward. The one who first jumped towards Ling Mo was Ye Lian, but she revealed a look of struggle just after opening her mouth and stopped. Shana, on the other hand, was different. She jumped right in front of Ling Mo and held on to Ling Mo's arm. It took a great amount of effort for Ling Mo to stop her advance with his spiritual tentacles. While doing so, he said to her, "Didn't you say you that weren't going to bite me?" Shana paused for a moment before she pounced at him and said, "I'm not going to bite you. I'm just kissing you." Both her arms were wrapped around Ling Mo's, and her flushed red eyes were firmly fixed on Ling Mo's lips as she slowly leaned over. It might have been because of their spiritual connection, but Ling Mo's spiritual tentacles didn't have much of an effect against Shana. Shana, on the other hand, had become even more difficult to control after coming into contact with the alcohol. Worst of all was that Ye Lian had jumped on him once again and was now grabbing onto his other arm. "What kind of kiss is this? You're obviously thinking of biting me." Ling Mo was being forced back at every step, and the three of them ended up rolling on the floor. Although these two zombie girls had gone crazy under the effects of the alcohol, the spiritual connection they shared was still present, and they wouldn't harm him. But Ling Mo didn't dare to get intimate with them at present. He refused to relax, even though the two of them were coiled around him like octopuses. At this moment, Sherbin walked out of the warehouse, likely attracted by the noise. Upon seeing this embarrassing scene, Sherbin's face warped in an exceptionally interesting manner. He stood blankly there for over a dozen seconds before he hurriedly turned back and shut the door to the warehouse. After which, he acted as if he hadn't seen anything improper and quickly walked out the kitchen. Only after shutting the door to the kitchen with a loud bang did Sherbin indignantly spit on the floor and say, "It's not even dark yet, and they're already doing such shameless things." References plus. Fortunately, Shana and Ye Lian recovered from their intoxication just as quickly as they got drunk. But Ling Mo felt as if he was about to fall apart from exhaustion when they let themselves go. Staying alive sure wasn't easy. He took a deep breath as he rushed up to Shana and said, "The two of you aren't allowed to go near alcohol in the future." By this time, Shana's slightly red eyes had already turned back to normal. It might have been due to her characteristics of zombie, but her eyes seemed particularly bright even when, as was bathed in the light of dusk. Ye Lian was the same as well. Ye Lian's physical evolution was further along than Shana's, and she was the first to awaken as well. Without her, Ling Mo wouldn't have been able to put up a fight in the current world. Being forcefully kissed by a younger sister would definitely be an extremely joyful event, let alone being kissed by two of them at once. But such an event wouldn't be so delightful when these two sisters turn out to be zombies that didn't know how to read the mood. Ling Mo couldn't help but once again think of the tragedy that had happened while they were bathing. He dragged Shana over in a fit of rage and embraced her. He gave her a fierce kiss and said, "This is for thinking of biting me just now." Woo! With her strength, Shana was absolutely capable of resisting. But unfortunately for her, Ling Mo was the one calling the shots. She could sort of tell that Ling Mo truly was a little angry, so she was especially cooperative in her attempt to placate him. You picked up kissing so quickly." A stream of sweet-tasting liquid flowed down Ling Mo's throat. Following that, a wave of heat immediately spread throughout his body, and Ling Mo recovered a portion of his lost stamina from earlier. Ling Mo glanced at Ye Lian after letting go of Shana. He let out a chuckle and dragged her into his embrace as well. Although Ye Lian wasn't like Shana, who took the initiative to coordinate with him, she wasn't capable of putting up any resistance either. While Ling Mo could use his control over her to force her to match him, he couldn't bring himself to do such a thing to her. After having his stamina thoroughly replenished by Ye Lian, Ling Mo wrapped his arms around both of the zombie girls as he contentedly lay on the ground. Using the lack of space as an excuse, one human and two zombies had no choice but to huddle tightly together, which to Ling Mo was naturally a form of enjoyment. Although this wasn't the first time they'd huddled together and slept, Ling Mo still said in an exceedingly solemn manner, I'm doing this to prevent the two of you from harming others in the middle of the night. After all, there are two other people here. Shana appeared as if she didn't quite understand as she glanced at Ling Mo. After which, she shifted her gaze to Ye Lian, who was lying on the side, before she slowly nodded her head. You're very sensible, Ling Mo praised. Soon after, he knitted his brows. As expected, staying with other survivors is a depressing matter. Otherwise, I could play around with the two of you. After hearing Ling Mo heave a sigh, Shana looked as if her current position was slightly uncomfortable, so she shifted her body a little and asked, what would we play? Games. What kind of games? You'll find out after playing. Then can we play now? Shana's exceptionally bright pair of eyes flashed with a trace of anticipation. She even supplemented her request with another sentence. Big sister Lian wants to play as well. Ling Mo was filled with sorrow as he replied, we can't. There are other people around. All right, go to sleep. We still have to make our way to X City University tomorrow. Who knows? Ye Lian might even remember something once we enter the school. Although the chance of that happening was small, it had to be said that this slim hope still existed within the depths of Ling Mo's heart. After causing a din for a while, the three of them finally quietened down. Lin Wanxiu, who was lying on top of the single bed, couldn't help but reveal a wry smile. She raised her hand and brushed her cheek before she sighed and said, thankfully, this person really had no intentions of doing anything improper. Time passed quickly. Sherbin, who'd been sitting in the private room throughout the night, loudly knocked on the door to the kitchen and shouted, get up. It's morning already. The reason why he hadn't hastily opened the door was that he was worried that once he did, he'd be greeted with an even more unspeakable scene than the one he'd seen the night before. But to his surprise, the door creaked open shortly after he called out as Ye Lian's cold and detached face appeared from behind the door. Ye Lian's face was exquisite. A particular note was her fair skin and somewhat fluffy hair. Those who laid eyes on her found themselves virtually unable to tear their gaze away from her. But Sherbin couldn't help but tremble at the sight of her as the corner of his eyes immediately started to twitch. Ye Lian caused him no end of hardships. When he was caught, she didn't loosen her grip on him even after holding both of his hands behind his back. She gripped him so tightly that he felt like his arms were about to break off. After some rest, the various injuries on his body didn't pose much of a hindrance anymore, but the trauma inflicted by the incident wouldn't go away anytime soon. Upon seeing Ye Lian wordlessly stare at him, Sherbin couldn't help but avert his gaze and say, it's morning, we should leave. At the same time, let Lin Wanxiu know as well, please. Ye Lian coldly looked him in the eye before she shut the door with a bang. A trace of frustration flashed past Sherbin's face, but as Lin Wanxiu had said, his anger would only beget anger. He didn't dare to flare up in front of Ling Mo's group, so he could only seethe in silence. In truth, Ling Mo wasn't intentionally giving him the cold shoulder. He was actually in the midst of a very important matter, helping Shana undress. He'd long since cultivated the habit of waking up at the crack of dawn. In fact, he didn't need Sherbin's reminder at all, but it just so happened that he'd come running and knocked on the door when Ling Mo was helping Ye Lian wear her clothes. These hole-ridden clothes are really hard to take off. Shana's movement had been too abrupt. She didn't notice that part of her clothes had been caught under Ling Mo's arm when she moved, resulting in a sharp tearing sound and a gaping hole being revealed. Luckily, there were 2 spare sets of clothes within Ling Mo's bag. He took off Shana's damaged clothes after helping Ye Lian put on her jacket. Shana felt that Ling Mo's furrowed brows were a very fresh and interesting sight, so she refused to budge just to make things more difficult for him. But before he had the chance to finish, a soft creak was heard followed by a cough. Lin Wanxiu stood at the warehouse's entrance with a flushed look on her face. She seemed a little better and was currently looking at Ling Mo and a half-dressed Shana with an astonished expression on her face. What's going on? Ling Mo hurriedly dug out some clothes and threw them on Shana before he helped her wear her jacket once again. Only after doing all that did he put on a slightly awkward look on his face and say, don't mind that, huh? As he awkwardly laughed, Ling Mo thought in his heart, wouldn't most people just quietly avoid a situation like this when they run into it? Just like what Sherbin did last night. While that brat might be annoying, but at least he had the good sense to know not to watch. Lin Wanxiu was obviously a clever girl, but her eyes were firmly locked onto Ling Mo and Shana, which flustered Ling Mo. She was definitely doing it on purpose. Lin Wanxiu gave a faint smile and said, you treat your girlfriend very well. You even help her wear her clothes. If it weren't for that trace of blush that remained on her face, others who saw her would probably think that she hadn't seen anything. Ling Mo laughed. He fished out a bottle of milk from his bag and tossed it at Lin Wanxiu. It hasn't gone bad. Use it to replenish your strength. Lin Wanxiu clearly wasn't able to catch the bottle of milk in the state that she was in, but her bullet time ability proved its worth. As it fell to the ground, Lin Wanxiu unhurriedly stretched out her hand and managed to grab it. Surprisingly, this combination of fast and slow made others feel as if everything flowed well together. As expected, bullet time was an awesome ability, but an ability such as this definitely had room for improvement. Just like what he did for his own puppeteer ability, she'd have to slowly unearth her ability's potential by finding new ways of using it if she truly wanted to get stronger. Thank you, Lin Wanxiu said gratefully. Her body was weak. On one hand, she was suffering from an illness, and on the other, she was stricken with malnutrition. Although Sherbin had given her the choice picks amongst the food that they had available, how much nutrition could they offer? At the very least, she seemed more lively after eating an entire packet of biscuits. This clearly meant that not only was she undernourished, she didn't even get to eat her fill. Thinking up to this point, Ling Mo couldn't help but sympathize a little with Lin Wanxiu. She was a psychic, but she had to live a life of oppression. Her current attitude should more or less the same as a vast majority of the survivors. To normal people, the end of the world was far too cruel. Even Ling Mo had no choice but to tread with caution to minimize any mishaps. He might even end up in another situation like the time in New Era Shopping Mall, where he was almost done in by an advanced zombie. Such dangers lurked around every corner. Are we entering the school by the back door today? Ling Mo fished out some food from his backpack and ate as he asked. Lin Wanxiu shook her head and said, "We can't do that. The back entrance is filled with zombies. It'd be best if we used the route Sherbin and I took when we escaped by climbing over the wall." "All right then. You're the one who's familiar with the place. I'll listen to your advice." Ling Mo nodded his head and continued, "I'll tell you my objective. I plan to go to an area with the highest concentration of zombies." Lin Wanxiu was caught a little off guard when she heard Ling Mo's unexpected request. However, she didn't inquire any further. She just nodded her head after a moment of hesitation and said, "Okay. In any case, the school's infirmary is close to that area as well." Seeing how forthright Lin Wanxiu was, Ling Mo asked, "So which do you think is the place with the most number of zombies?" Lin Wanxiu laughed and said, "It's without a doubt the dormitory. That place definitely has the most number of zombies. Relax, I won't go back on my word. After all, I'll be in front of you and I don't have the strength to put up a resistance." In truth, Ling Mo wasn't in the mood to give pointers to others, but he genuinely felt that Lin Wanxiu was quite capable. He understood her desire to live on. She had her psychic ability, excellent mental preparation, and she displayed fantastic judgment in various situations, but she still ended up in such a state. However, in spite of the severity of her illness, she still refused to give up. After hearing what Ling Mo said, a look of astonishment flashed past Lin Wanxiu's eyes, and she began to contemplate on what he'd said. There weren't many zombies blocking the way, but with the number of corpses being strewn all over the ground, it was only a matter of time before more of them came over. After walking along the red light district for a significant distance, Lin Wanxiu said, "This is the place." Ling Mo immediately stopped in his tracks and looked at the segment of the wall that Lin Wanxiu had pointed at. Brownish bloodstains were stuck on the white-colored walls, giving it an especially jarring appearance. Someone's arm was torn off by a zombie here, leaving this bloodstain. But that student died not long after. The skeletal remains that we saw just now were likely his. A look of sadness flashed across Lin Wanxiu's face as she spoke in a low voice. Sherbin had also let out a helpless sigh. It looks like revisiting their old haunt had greatly affected their state of mind. The campus walls of X City University weren't all that high, and windows of the buildings within had all been shattered. Only, Ling Mo wasn't sure if it was Ling Wanxiu's group that had done it. He took a few steps back before he abruptly broke into a sprint and jumped. Both his hands found purchase on the wall's ledge, and he pulled himself up. Once he did, he crouched down on the wall and surveyed the area for a bit. He noticed a small forest behind the enclosure that didn't seem to have any zombies around it for the time being. After jumping down, Ling Mo controlled Ye Lian once again and made her traverse the wall. Her movements were even more nimble than Ling Mo's. Without the aid of a running start, she jumped up to the wall, and, with a press of her hand against the wall, she flipped over it and landed beside Ling Mo. This dazzling display of skill left Lin Wanxiu and Sherbin gaping in awe. In their hearts, they felt that one really couldn't judge a book by its cover. Although this girl looked weak and delicate, she was unexpectedly vigorous. However, Shana, on the other hand, didn't immediately jump over the wall. Instead, she turned to look at Lin Wanxiu and Sherbin. Lin Wanxiu let out a cough. With her frail body, it was reasonable to say that getting over the wall would likely be difficult for her. But, having learned from Ling Mo, she gave herself a running start and actually managed to jump up and latched onto the wall's edge with some effort. Following that, she slowly crossed over to the other side. When she landed, one of her legs started wobbling from the exertion, and she fell headfirst towards Ling Mo. Ling Mo didn't have the time to think things through, so he caught her in one motion. When he did that, a faint fragrance leapt into his nostrils, and he couldn't help but to freeze up. Who would have thought that she'd smell so nice even after being locked up in that warehouse for all this time? But he didn't persist in entertaining such thoughts. He hurriedly helped Lin Wanxiu up, and he, "Are you all right?" During this time, the entire act was seen by Sherbin, who was following close behind her. In that moment, Sherbin and Squo's expression underwent a huge change. He hurriedly pulled Lin Wanxiu back towards him and shot Ling Mo a glare as he said, "What are you doing?" Ling Mo gave him a supercilious look and chose not to bother with him. Lin Wanxiu looked slightly apologetic as she rushed up to Ling Mo and smiled, "Thank you." After which, she faced Sherbin and said in a low voice, "Stop looking for trouble. Ling Mo was only helping me up, otherwise I would have fallen." Lin Wanxiu's face became a few shades paler after traversing the wall, and her breathing sounded a little haggard. Sherbin eyed Ling Mo suspiciously and unhappily shut his mouth. With Shana's talent, she was naturally able to easily negotiate the wall and silently landed on the ground. Although she wasn't as nimble as Ye Lian, who had gone through more physical education, Shiwei crossing the wall was much nicer than Ling Mo's. In fact, Ling Mo himself had realized it during this period of time. No matter how much his physical body improved, the most that he could achieve was only strength that surpassed a normal human being. Obtaining sufficient strength to resist an advanced zombie was likely going to be very difficult. His strength lay in his spiritual power. With Shana and Ye Lian's valiant capabilities in close combat complementing him, Ling Mo was free to utilize his zombie puppeteer ability to do battle without fear of being drawn into close combat. This was likely the true method of using his puppeteer ability, using zombie puppets to make up for his own weakness in close combat, while at the same time putting his formidable spiritual strength on full display. But he wasn't necessarily walking the wrong path when he improved his physical body. After all, he did lack physical strength. He'd suffer losses if he were to solely rely on his spiritual strength, not to mention the fact that he needed the ability to protect himself as well. The small forest sat in the most remote corner in a wide expanse of land that X-City University encompassed. With trees all around them, the forest afforded the group a limited line of sight. As they traced back Lin Luanxio's escape route, one would be hard-pressed not to have their heartbeat quicken and feel a sense of nervousness when they saw motes of blood dotting trail. Bin and Lin Luanxio's expressions turned somewhat unsightly upon seeing the bloodstains, likely due to the fact that escaping had already exhausted whatever courage they had. They'd probably never think of going back to X-City University again unless it was absolutely necessary. Although this place looked safer than the outside, from the moment they jumped over the wall, Ling Mo could clearly tell that they'd entered an enormous zombie nest. Over 30,000 zombies were clustered in an enclosed environment. This was a truly terrifying figure. Compared to that, the 3,000 over-survivors within the campus were absolutely at a disadvantage as part of the minority. Resist? What kind of effective resistance could a group of students and campus staff, each with their own respective thoughts, possibly put up? An individual's fighting strength was laughable once a sufficient number of zombies gathered together. Previously, when Ling Mo used handphones to attract the zombies with the help of his zombie puppets, the result left him feeling as if he was being torn apart by over 100 zombies while he was still alive. Even now, the experience remained firmly engraved in his mind. Therefore, in reality, amongst this group of people, the one who was most prudent wasn't Lin Luanxio or Bin, but Ling Mo. However, compared to everyone else who looked like they were treading on eggshells, Ye Lian and Shana's expressions remained the same as ever. They walked at the front of the group without the slightest care in the world. As mutated zombies, the two of them weren't susceptible to the attacks of regular zombies. On top of that, they were also able to detect the presence of other mutated zombies in the area. Ling Mo allowed the two of them to take the lead so that the group would be on guard against the sudden appearances of any zombie. However, the calm and tranquil expressions of the two zombie girls had left Lin Luanxio and Bin, who weren't in the know, wide-eyed in astonishment. Lin Luanxio couldn't help but ask with some concern. There were zombies chasing us when we escaped. Some of them might have scattered into the forest. It'd be better for them to be a little more cautious. But before Ling Mo even had the chance to speak, Shana turned her head and glanced at Lin Luanxio before she coldly said, "No need." Even after being harshly rebutted by Shana, Lin Luanxio replied with a smile on her face, "I'm only giving you a word of advice. After all, it's my responsibility to lead you guys to the school." Upon hearing what Lin Luanxio said, Ling Mo wordlessly pulled Ye Lian and Shana further apart. With this, they'd be able to detect their enemies in a more timely manner. As for Shana taking the initiative to speak to others, Ling Mo wasn't all that surprised. He'd already realized that after regaining her memories as a human, although she still treated humans as prey, she also had a sliver of interest in them. Ling Mo wouldn't object since she was willing to do so. Instead, he felt rather encouraged by it. After all, the closer her thoughts were to that of a human's, the more profound her interactions would be with Ling Mo. Most importantly, she'd have a positive impact on Ye Lian. Ling Mo didn't mind them being zombies, but he didn't wish to see them filled with hostility when they encountered other people. Doing so wouldn't be beneficial for them. Being able to interact with others would, at the very least, add another layer of complexity to their facade, which kept the suspicions of others at bay. How much longer do we have to walk through this forest for? The route they traveled along within the forest wasn't a well-trodden lane. Instead, it wound through dense weeds and trees, their vision being obstructed, and their inability to clearly discern how much further their destination was had lead to Ling Mo asking this question. Lin Luanxio lowered her head and thought for a moment before she said, "It'll probably take another 7 to 8 minutes. This forest land area is comparatively larger, but it won't take all that long since we're cutting a straight line across." Just after she spoke, a black shadow abruptly shot out from a brush. A thick stench of blood tunneled into everyone's noses before the shadow even appeared in front of them. The black shadow's target was, impressively, Lin Luanxio. After overcoming his surprise, Bin raised his sharpening steel stick in response, but he was a step too slow. The zombie was a male, and based on how he looked, he appeared to be around the age of 20. He had a pale face, which lacked the ruddy complexion of a normal person. The expression on his face was distorted by the malevolence it bore, and his blood-red eyes bore an ominous glint. A brilliant strand of saliva could also be seen hanging from his slightly open mouth. He'd received a major injury before he turned into a zombie. His left shoulder had completely collapsed inwards, and one of his hands were badly mangled. Although it had already healed, it was still a ghastly sight. Most importantly, this zombie was quick on its legs. His physique was probably pretty good before he turned into a zombie. After appearing in front of them for a second, he leaped onto Lin Wanqiu. Although Lin Wanqiu possessed an ability, dodging such an attack in her current state wasn't so easy. However, she wasn't the type of person who'd wait for her own death. The moment she felt that gust of wind buffet her, she tightly gripped on her steel plate and abruptly twisted her body to face this zombie. The zombie advanced in an imposing and ferocious manner as its uninjured hand swept towards her solar plexus. With its strength, even if her skin wasn't torn apart, she'd definitely be restrained by it if its attack connected. Once that happened, she could only wait to be bitten. Most people wouldn't be able to struggle free once they were caught, unless the part in question was a limp like an arm, where one could make the decision to callously abandon their appendage. Lin Wanqiu's gaze turned extremely cold when she saw the zombie's rapid movements as it tried to grab her. As usual, she brandished the steel plate in her hands in a casual manner, obstructing the zombie's hand in this moment of life and death. Following that, she forcefully pushed the steel plate downwards. However, due to her weapon's inadequacies, she wasn't able to cut off the zombie's arm. Instead, fresh blood immediately spurted out of its wound in an unceasing manner. With this, the strength that it exerted immediately lessened. From the looks of it, it probably wouldn't be able to raise its hand anymore. However, this wasn't going to stop the zombie. Although his two hands no longer functioned, he still threw himself at Lin Wanqiu in an attempt to bite her. Lin Wanqiu bent her body and abruptly rammed into the zombie's bosom. With great effort, she managed to stagger the charging zombie. This was the limit of what she could do. However, the zombie jumped at her once again while her strength was still spent. In that instant, a trace of gray flashed across her eyes. Everything had happened in the blink of an eye. It was so fast, normal people wouldn't even be able to react in time. But Ling Mo was different. With his formidable spiritual strength, his reaction speed was a cut above a normal people. Seeing the zombie rush over once again, Ling Mo immediately sent out his spiritual tentacles, abruptly altering the course of the zombie's charge and sending it hurtling past Lin Wanqiu. At this time, Ye Lian had dashed forth like a cheetah, and her scimitar plunged into the zombie's belly as it swept past Lin Wanqiu. Using the zombie's forward momentum, Ye Lian dragged her scimitar across the length of the zombie's belly. Brightly colored intestines and fresh blood immediately spilled out, and the zombie staggered from side to side before it crumpled onto the ground. At this time, Lin Wanqiu came around. She had no doubt that she was going to die during that brief instant. Never did she expect to get a new lease of life instead. The zombie had moved in an odd manner during that critical moment. It was clear that the zombie had been influenced by Ling Mo. That much was plain for her to see. In spite of her poor health, Lin Wanqiu still took a deep breath before she turned to Ye Lian and Ling Mo to say, "Thank you." Ye Lian's expression remained ice-cold. Her speed was astounding. Not even a trace of blood could be seen on her machete. Ling Mo, on the other hand, merely nodded his head and said, "We need you to lead the way. Besides, doing this was as easy as lifting our hands. It's nothing much." It was at this time that Shana reacted. He'd originally planned on rushing over to support Lin Wanqiu, but he suddenly pointed at the zombie and cried out in fear, "Isn't that Lu Chuan?" Unexpectedly, he didn't get eaten and turned into a zombie instead. Shana's exclamation had caused Ling Mo's anger to immediately flare up. He lowered his voice and cursed, "Stop kicking up a fuss. What are we going to do if you attract even more zombies? Who knows how many of them are around here? Do you have the means to escape if you're surrounded? Idiot." Shana's expression immediately turned gloomy after being labeled as an idiot by Ling Mo. But after tightly gripping onto his sharpening steel stick, he bore Ling Mo's scolding without a word. He could clearly remember Lin Wanqiu's words. Most importantly, he clearly didn't have the strength to stand up for himself. Ye Lian's sudden attack completely surpassed his imagination. It was only then that he realized Ye Lian hadn't even been trying when she faced him. However, Shana secretly thought to himself, Ling Mo himself didn't take any action. From the looks of it, he's probably nothing much. In the end, he only knows how to hide behind a woman. Ling Mo was somewhat astonished found that Shana wasn't fuming in anger. He didn't look like the type of person who could suppress his rage. Could it be something that Lin Wanqiu said to him? In his heart, Ling Mo secretly made up his mind to let this brat have a taste some hardship. Shana hadn't learned his lesson even after being beaten up by Ling Mo the previous time. At the end of the world, strength was what dictated everything. Did this brat really think things were the same as before? Lu Chuan was part of our volunteer rescue squad, and he was among the students who escaped with us. Lin Wanqiu easily spat everything out in one breath. She walked over and glanced at the corpse before she immediately covered her mouth. Ling Mo noticed that the zombie's injured hand had only recently healed, but who would have thought that this person was actually Lin Wanqiu's companion? They seemed to have been considerably startled by the realization that their companion had turned into a zombie, but Ling Mo was rather indifferent about it. When a person was injured by a zombie, they'd be infected by the zombie's blood. This process would take place the instant they were injured. This was due to the various remnant flesh of unknown origins that were stuck to a zombie's fingers. The zombie's victim would be infected once these fingers came in contact with their wound. However, the reason why people didn't see many cases like Lin Chuan's was likely due to the fact that not many survivors managed to stay alive till they reached such a state, or that there just weren't any people to witness their change. However, Ling Mo himself had seen 2 such occurrences of this. The first was Liu Xian, whose body couldn't withstand the highly concentrated virus from a mutated zombie, which led to it rotting. The other was Shana. I never would have thought that. Lin Luanxiu quickly composed herself, but her expression that was originally a little lax became even more downcast. It was unknown whether it was due to her emotions being stirred or that she'd used too much of her stamina, but she said, "Xiao Zhongwan. I have no idea where this came from. Probably a nickname or something for the guy who turned into a zombie, managed to live, and even turned into a zombie." At that time, everyone was in a panic and were only concerned with running for their lives. Even when we heard him being bitten by a zombie, not one person even turned around to glance at him. Ling Mo gave her a profound look and said, "That's how things are at the end of the world." "That's right, but I really hope that things will go back to the way they were. I hope to live till I can see that day." Lin Luanxiu turned to Ling Mo and revealed a pained smile filled with hope. References plus. Living till such a day came. While thinking about it was simple, actually carrying out wouldn't be so easy. Furthermore, in Ling Mo's heart, he felt that this world that was riddled with problems likely wouldn't be able to return to how it once was. It wasn't just X City that was affected. Even the region that Ling Mo lived in might have been reduced to a ghost city as well. And even if humanity was able to once again establish itself, would they really be able to eradicate all the zombies out there? Ling Mo did harbor such hope in the beginning, but after seeing that no help was being sent their way even up till now, his way of thinking gradually began to change. Rather than wait for help that might never come, he might as well increase his own strength and rely on himself, instead, to continue living on. "Let's go. The corpse will soon attract other zombies." Ling Mo sighed and said. Ye Lian's manner of attacking was both swift and savage, which left a wound that was practically a gaping hole in the corpse's belly. Some of its internal organs had slipped out onto the ground, and a thick stench of blood permeated the air. Any zombies within the vicinity would soon rush over here like hungry wolves after catching a whiff of it. Seeing as Lin Luanxiu was practically unable to move due to her exertion in the previous battle, he allowed Shana to support her while also doubling as a rear guard to warn them of any dangers. Sherbin was only skilled at ambushes. He was just a little gigolo, wouldn't be able to react appropriately in a real battle, so he couldn't be counted on. Sure enough, zombies attracted by the smell of blood came out from every corner of the forest. These zombies were the ones that had originally been lured out of the school by Lin Luanxiu's group when they previously made their escape. They were then subsequently left behind in the vicinity of this area. With Ye Lian taking the lead, all the oncoming zombies were easily dispatched. As for the ones that came from other directions, more than half of them fell under the influence of Ling Mo's spiritual tentacles. Following that, he got close to them and finished them off with a single strike to their vital points. However, Ling Mo had no intention of lending a hand to deal with the zombies that came by Sherbin's way. Seeing this, he was placed in a difficult situation where he had to wind around a tree to deal with the zombies. If not for his rather nimble body, he'd likely have long since died. Seeing as Ling Mo didn't take any action, Lin Luanxiu knew that he did so with the intent to teach Sherbin a lesson. However, she was indeed intelligent. She knew that she owed Ling Mo one for saving her life just now, so she didn't have the right to make any requests of him. As such, she had no choice but to helplessly act as if she hadn't seen anything. Using the terrain to his advantage, Sherbin managed to take care of a few zombies. However, that bout of exertion left him as tired as a dead pig, to the point where he nearly collapsed on the ground while violently gasping for breath. In contrast, Ling Mo on his own had taken care of over 10 zombies that came his way. Aside from the faint beads of sweat on his forehead, he looked almost no different from how he did before. I never expected he himself to possess a pretty good level of strength. Just as Sherbin thought this, he immediately clenched his teeth in anger. "Hey, you don't amount to anything when compared to those 2 girls. Isn't he better just because he has an ability? I definitely wouldn't lose out to him if I had an ability of my own. He doesn't need to be so cocky about it." However, in spite of his frustration, he could only keep his curses hidden within his heart. Zombies continued to stream out of every corner of the forest, hampering the group's speed. A route that should have taken 7 to 8 minutes to traverse had now taken half an hour. Over 30 corpses were left in their wake when they finally got out of the forest, likely turning into a banquet for zombies before long. A meadow was situated just outside the forest, and in the middle of it, a narrow path could be seen. Wandering zombies could also be seen around it. While there weren't many of them, there were still around 20 milling about. Even worse, the meadow itself was very wide. Although Ling Mo could use his puppeteer ability to easily take care of these zombies, he didn't want to reveal too much of his ability. Up to this point, Lin Luanxiu and Sherbin were still under the impression that his ability simply relied on some sort of spiritual strength. While revealing the true extent of his powers wasn't of much consequence, it would lead to some unnecessary conjectures from other parties. Looks like the only choice left is to traverse this area slowly. The plan that Ling Mo adopted was very simple. First, he'd pick up a small rock and throw it at the closest group of zombies. Although the sound it produced would be minute, it was still sufficient for the zombies to take notice of it. When these zombies responded, Ling Mo would take control of 3 of them that were facing his direction. At the same time, he'd pop his head out his hiding spot. This would give others the impression that the zombies discovered Ling Mo due to the noise he made and not the little tricks that he'd employed. Seeing the zombies rush over at him, Ling Mo calmly retreated a certain distance backwards. Once he brought them towards the forest fringe, he allowed Ye Lian and Shana swiftly end them. For the sake of saving time, Ling Mo took the lead and jumped into the fray as well, making him appear to be extremely brave. However, in reality, so as to avoid accidentally receiving any injuries, he had to skirt the edge of the battle while disposing of these zombies. With his puppeteer ability, he could also use his spiritual tentacles to impair their movement and judgment. His methods allowed him to deal with his opponents in a skillful manner while expending a minimal amount of energy. While this way of fighting might look vulgar, Ling Mo clearly knew that his body was still only made of flesh and blood. He was finished the moment a zombie injured him. Accordingly, this was mankind's most fatal weak point. Just think about it. Zombies fought with all their strength and would never stop attacking unless they were killed. Humans, on the other hand, were afraid of everything. They feared coming into contact with anything, to the point where a mere scratch would be enough to set them off. Which is why when humans fought zombies, they rarely had sufficient courage to commit to a fight. But Ling Mo was different. On one hand, he could send Ye Lian and Shana charging into the midst of a group of zombies to wreak havoc. While on the other, he could use his puppeteer ability to influence those zombies that were closer to him, striking them while he was safe. To conserve her strength, Ling Mo didn't take any action. Sherbin, on the other hand, was overcome with exhaustion as he squatted to the side like a dead dog. However, Ling Mo had no intention of giving him a free show. Going out of his way to control a zombie, he sent it 2 steps forward in the direction of Sherbin before Ling Mo relinquished his control. Sherbin, who was practically about to keel over from exhaustion, thought he was out of the woods after his previous bout. He didn't expect to see a zombie charging straight towards him, giving him a huge fright. Seeing this, he hurriedly prepared to face his opponent. While dealing with the zombie, he depressingly thought to himself, this zombie was right beside Ling Mo, who was jumping all over the place, but it chose to come after me instead of attacking him. Do I really have such a mocking face? Relying on this method of fighting that was relatively more conservative but much safer, Ling Mo covered the entire distance to the forest. The zombies that were lingering off in the distance had already caught a whiff of the scent of blood and had taken initiative to come running without Ling Mo taking any action. However, what awaited them would, naturally, only be death. While these regular zombies may be a little more in numbers and present a threat to most people, they were only courting death when they went up against Ye Lian and Shana. In the midst of battle, Ling Mo noticed that although these zombies didn't take the initiative to attack mutated zombies, which were of a higher rank than them, that didn't mean they wouldn't defend themselves. The reason why he hadn't found this out earlier was that Ye Lian and Shana disposed of all their targets in a single strike, robbing them of the chance to put up a fight. However, due to the forest acting as an obstacle, Ye Lian and Shana run into a situation where they weren't able to finish off their opponents immediately. After one of the zombies had its arm chopped off, it immediately let out a low growl and pounced at Ye Lian, only to be affected by Ling Mo's spiritual tentacles in the midst of its attack before being cut down. Another zombie had its body injured by Shana, but it didn't drop to the ground. Instead, after swaying about for a bit and steadying itself, it turned around and jumped at Ye Lian, who was nearby, resulting in Ye Lian bisecting it at its waist. The first time could be written off as chance, but it was definitely an issue if it happened twice in succession. Only, he didn't know whether regular zombies had this trait in the past, or whether it was something gained after making some headway in their evolution. After all, even regular zombies would be able to make some progress in their evolution when they consumed the corpses of their kind. Although it wasn't obvious, but slowly accumulating their evolutionary progress over a long period of time was surely a terrifying prospect. And such a conjecture was one that Ling Mo had made before in the past. At the end of the world, regular people managed to grasp some survival techniques while they faced the challenging prospect of eking out a living in this new environment. At the same time, their mental state saw a gradual improvement as well. And amongst the population of ordinary people, there was another portion of ability users who were in the midst of increasing their own strength. At the same time, the huge population of zombies were also slowly evolving as a whole, with mutated and even the formidable advanced zombies emerging from within. After taking care of this batch of zombies, Ling Mo's group hurriedly dashed across the meadow and made their way towards the heart of X City University. As a university that was able to house between 50,000 to 60,000 students, the land area that X City University took up was extremely expansive. According to Ling Mo's explanation, there were numerous zombies around the teaching block and the dormitory. On top of that, there were so many zombies near the main entrance that it could make a person's hair stand on end. The survivors, on the other hand, had dispersed to every corner of the school and were relying on what little food they had to live in this zombie-infested school. One would require an ample amount of preparation if they planned on escaping from the school. Therefore, no one would willingly put themselves at risk by trying to escape unless it was absolutely necessary. This was even more so because people, in general, had a tendency to be driven by a herd mentality. Even if some people clearly knew that remaining trapped here was no different from waiting for their deaths, they chose to remain there with the rest of the lacking the courage to escape on their own. But even when they did decide to escape on their own, the number of people who were able to make it out were very little. Take Ling Mo, for example. In her group, only she and Sherbin had made it out. After listening to her explanation, Ling Mo spoke his mind and asked, "Your volunteer rescue squad from before should have been closer to the back gate, right?" Ling Mo gave Ling Mo an astonished look before she nodded her head and said, "That's right. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have chosen to escape by this path. Do you see that theater over there?" As she said that, she pointed towards a red brick building off in the distance and continued, "That's where the volunteer rescue squad I was previously in is situated. As of now, there are less than 20 people within it." A strange light flashed in Ling Mo's eyes as he asked, "Do you really have no intention of going back to them?" Ling Mo was stunned for a moment before she gave a wry smile and said, "I'd already severed my ties with them when I decided to leave this place. We walk different paths now, so I won't go back. Moreover, I have no intention of going there to humiliate myself." Ling Mo's mind was set at ease after once again confirming that Ling Mo did indeed have no intention of going back. His purpose in coming here was to hunt zombies, not to interact with other survivors. Taking care of a problem wouldn't be easy once it arose. "What's the approximate location of the school infirmary?" Ling Mo asked once again. Ling Mo raised her arm and pointed to a place far off in the distance and said, "It's located behind the C3 teaching block. You could consider that place to be the heart of the school. That's also the place that has the densest amount of zombies. X City University truly was a place that was worthy of housing 30,000 zombies. Even if they were in an area with relatively fewer zombies, the numbers they boasted would be enough to make a person's hair stand on end. In the past, X City University was widely known for its beautiful surroundings. But at present, walking along this exceedingly spacious path that was filled with greenery was an extremely painful affair. There were zombies in the brushes, on the road itself, and within the buildings at the side of the path. It's no wonder Ling Mo's injuries were so severe. Definitely wasn't a place where an ordinary human could safely escape from. What made Ling Mo most depressed was, due to him being unfamiliar with the surroundings, he had to adopt a more conservative approach and advance slowly so as not to attract the zombies in the vicinity. In short, they had to watch every step they took. Ling Mo leading the way did indeed allow them to proceed in a more relaxed manner as opposed blindly charging in, but the difficulty of the task at hand was still very high. This was especially so after Ling Mo found that mutated zombies couldn't completely disregard regular zombies. Now, for the sake of avoiding any mishaps, he was no longer willing to allow Shana and Ye Lian to charge forth in such an unrestrained manner. Because of this, their advance was slowed. However, this was a safer approach. It also finally gave Ling Mo, who still held some reservations about the strength of Ling Mo's group, a peace of mind. From her observations along the way, Ling Mo realized that Ling Mo's group of three not only had strength, they worked well together as well. Especially Ling Mo, who called the shots. The actions he took were both exceedingly calm and cautious. And it was precisely this prudent attitude that gave Ling Mo an ever-increasing confidence in her decision. Previously, in truth, Ling Mo had joined up with Ling Mo to try her luck. As for her chances of success, she definitely had her misgivings. After all, it hadn't even been a few days since she escaped from X City University. She still held a lingering fear of traveling back and forth amongst a group of zombies. Although Ling Mo's bearing gave her an easygoing feeling, in truth, he was a calm and cautious person. However, that was only her initial impression of him. One may know a person and how they look like yet not know their heart. So how could first impressions count for anything? Only after seeing Ling Mo in battle was Ling Mo's fears put to rest. She felt that following Ling truly gave her an opportunity to live. En route to their dangerous destination, they came to a fork in the road. Originally, there weren't even 5 zombies around. Ling Mo had planned on sneaking past them, but little did he expect to run into a mutated zombie after making his way towards one of the school's buildings. The shadow dashed out from the brushes at the back of the building with blinding speed, causing Ling Mo to immediately draw back. Ling Mo's reaction was swift as well. With a tug of her hand, Sherbin and she rapidly retreated to the side. Since they resided in a zombie nest, such as X City University, Ling Mo and Sherbin had naturally seen a mutated zombie before. As a psychic, Ling Mo had even engaged one before, but the battle wasn't an easy one. As for a regular person like Sherbin, running into a mutated zombie meant death. It might even spell death for a group of people if they encountered one. A mutated zombie like this wasn't something they could handle. Even if they were a little further away, they might still perish in an instant. The speed of a mutated zombie's attacks wasn't something a majority of regular zombies could match up to. Although Ling Mo was given a fright by this zombie that had been hiding in the brushes, his spiritual tentacles had seen continuous use for half a day. Faced with sudden danger, he almost instinctively used them, obstructing the mutated zombie's frontal assault. While Ling Mo retreated, Ye Lian had already hurried to his side, her scimitar in hand as she hacked at the mutated zombie's neck. However, from the looks of it, this mutated zombie's evolution was quite far along. It was probably just a step away from becoming an advanced zombie. It might even be on the same level as Ye Lian's from the way it immediately retreated 2 steps back after it recovered from Ling Mo's mental influence. However, this zombie had a natural defect, one if his legs were lame. In spite of this, he wasn't an opponent most normal people could face. With zombies all around their surroundings, Ling Mo didn't have the energy to tangle the mutated zombie. In the event that they were surrounded by over 50 zombies, the chances of them escaping with their lives were far too small, which was why Ling Mo gripped his short saber and went around when Ye Lian charged forward to attack. Shana also lifted her long saber as she attacked from the side, forming a 2-pronged assault with Ling Mo. 3 blades simultaneously flew towards the mutated zombie. Although the mutated zombie attempted to evade, Ling Mo's spiritual tentacles bound the zombie for a moment. This, coupled with his one unsteady leg, led to the zombie swaying on the spot. Squelch! The mutated zombie instantly became motionless when the 3 blades met flesh. Following that, immediately after pulling out her scimitar, Ye Lian had easily drawn out the gel within the mutated zombie's brain, slipping it to Ling Mo as she turned around. Ye Lian's series of actions was done in a very natural and flowing manner. Most people probably wouldn't be able to such a level of tacit understanding no matter how they practice their coordination with others. But with the spiritual link between the 3 of them, the level of understanding they shared would naturally be high. On the other hand, the number of mutated zombies that he'd hunted was no longer a small number. These mutated zombies that could cause a regular person's expression to change just from hearing about them no longer evoked any sense of fear in Ling Mo's heart. Shana and Ye Lian had attacked from angles that were obstructed by their field of view, giving Lin Wanxiu and Sherbin no chance to witness any of the battle from the start till its end. Lin Wanxiu was filled with shock when she saw their flawless coordination, which allowed them to rapidly dispatch a zombie that had clearly reached a high level of evolution. Sherbin was even worse off. His jaw hung agape, completely incapable of saying anything. When he recovered, he turned to Lin Wanxiu and planned to say something, but realized she was looking at Ling Mo with the intent to speak. Sherbin clenched his fist tightly in response, and a trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. He only managed to do all this because he's a psychic. He wouldn't amount to anything if he didn't have an ability. But Lin Wanxiu took no notice of Sherbin's abnormality. After recovering her composure, she asked with astonishment, "Have you fought with these kinds of zombies in the past? The coordination you displayed just now was truly beautiful." Ling Mo quietly noted the girl's meticulous observation. Thankfully, he'd intentionally obstructed her line of sight when they battled with the zombie. That's right, I call them mutated zombies. But even if all mutated zombies fall under the same category, there are differences between them. This one counts as having a very high level of evolution amongst them. As for newly promoted mutated zombies, they don't pose much of an increase in threat aside from their increase in speed and strength, so winning against them isn't impossible. Mutated zombies, what a fitting name. Lin Wanxiu nodded her head. Her eyes twinkled once again, and she said, "It looks like the 3 of you are not only lovers but also comrade in arms." Her words were spoken rather abruptly, but Ling Mo understood her meaning in an instant. With 2 beautiful women by his side, coupled with the scene she saw early in the morning, she probably came to the conclusion that the trio was living a life of debauchery. But now, with their fates tied together as they fought shoulder to shoulder in battle, the meaning behind it was completely different. Bonds formed during the moment of life and death would naturally be very firm, and, as a result, there wouldn't be any estrangement between them. As for the matter of Ling Mo involving himself with these 2 girls, Lin Wanxiu still had some objections about it. However, after seeing the amount of concern he had for Shana and Ye Lian when they fought, almost as if he feared even the slightest mishap befalling them, her way of looking at Ling Mo gradually began to change. X-City University's land area was far too large. Ling Mo's group had only just reached the vicinity of the gymnasium after more than half a day of traveling. However, a large distance still separated them and the heart of the campus, C3 teaching block. The gymnasium was a plaza, and no hiding spots existed to the left and right of the group. However, not many zombies were present. There wasn't much danger as long as they were careful. The non-stop battling Ling Mo had been subjected to ever since he entered the campus had mentally fatigued him. He, on his own, had carved his way through almost 100 zombies, and this was after the group had done their best to conceal their presence. He cut through nearly 100 zombies, not 100 cabbages. The slightest mistake on his part could lead to an unfortunate end for him, which was why Ling Mo had to consider various methods of assistance for himself when he fought. The amount of concentration required when Ling Mo paid attention to his surroundings, coupled with the drain on his spiritual strength as he fought, had led to him being overcome with fatigue. Fortunately, after several rounds of improvements, his body was much stronger than it was before, otherwise he'd long since be sprawled out on the floor. But even if that were the case, Ling Mo was already feeling lightheaded when they neared the gymnasium. Even Ye Lian and Shana had shown signs of fatigue. Although their status as mutated zombies afforded them plentiful amounts of physical strength, it still wasn't enough to withstand prolonged periods of battle. However, the one who looked the most miserable wasn't Ling Mo's trio, nor was it Lin Wanqiu who had the worst physique amongst them all. Rather, it was Sherbin. At the start, Ling Mo had even intentionally lured some of the zombies over to Sherbin, preventing him from resting. But with the ever-increasing number of zombies, Sherbin no longer had the chance to rest, even if Ling Mo didn't take any action. Sherbin was covered in sweat from head to toe of his body throughout their journey. His hair was a mess, clinging to both his forehead and cheeks. His gigolo-esque face was flushed red, and his lips continuously trembled. In his hands, the sharpening steel stick faintly trembled in tandem with his lips, painting an overall picture of a truly battered and exhausted individual. There's too many zombies along the way. Everyone's tired. We might as well rest in the gymnasium. Are there many of them inside? Ling Mo wasn't clear the circumstances within X City University, so he wouldn't shrink back when the time came to ask the appropriate questions. Throughout their journey, Lin Wanqiu had taken her role very seriously, and there weren't many inaccuracies in the information she provided. There usually aren't many people in the gymnasium. Many clubs didn't have activities on the day of the disaster as well. A majority of the students had also chosen to go to the larger gymnasium. After all, the facilities were more complete. So in my opinion, there shouldn't be many zombies within. Lin Wanqiu presented a clear and logical analysis, which Ling Mo immediately agreed with. Then let's go in and rest for a while. The group carefully made their way through the plaza before entering the gymnasium through a side door. Once inside, Ling Mo's mind was filled with only one thought: to find a spot to rest as soon as possible. But the cruelty of the current world left him with no choice but to steel himself and lead his group onwards. Lingering near the entrance of the gymnasium would easily attract the attention of zombies. Not only were these zombies not blind, their vision was markedly better than that of regular humans. Although they usually seemed no different from Spectre as they spun on the spot when they were inactive, they'd enter a fevered state in practically an instant once they spotted their target. Therefore, even if they were about to collapse from exhaustion, Ling Mo's group hurriedly made their way up to the next level of the gymnasium under Lin Wanqiu's guidance. According to what Lin Wanqiu had said, apart from some exercise equipment that was installed in the lounge, the second floor of the gymnasium also contained an indoor volleyball court and a taekwondo dojo. But what allowed Ling Mo to breathe a sigh of relief was that they hadn't run into any zombies on their way up to the second floor. When disaster struck, the survivors in the gymnasium had likely drawn away the zombies in their attempts to flee. That taekwondo dojo was previously closed for renovations, but we can inspect it through the French window one, a type of window. Click here to get a better idea of how it looks like and inspect the place. Lin Wanqiu suggested. The dojo might be a little dirty, but I feel that that's the most suitable place for us to rest. Ling Mo nodded his head before he cast a flabbergasted glance at Lin Wanqiu and asked, "How do you know so much? After all, the school is huge. You're just one student. How'd you manage to get such a clear picture on the state of things?" "I talked with everyone when I was with the volunteer rescue squad. I made careful inquiries of everything relating to the number of people or the state of buildings within the campus for both before and after the disaster struck." Lin Wanqiu gave a faint smile before continuing. "Even if I'm a psychic, a girl needs to put in even more effort than other people if they plan on living on in this world. And I never planned on confining myself to this place either. I thought of various plans, but their chances of success were far too little. So in the end, I chose to escape the school. I hope you'll be able to recover." Ling Mo muttered to himself before giving voice to his heartfelt thoughts. Although they didn't know each other for long, a girl like Lin Wanqiu who was smart and independent was the type of person that Ling Mo greatly admired. She was the same as Shana. They were both people who had a strength of heart and carried their own ideals. People like these, be it man or woman, deserved respect. After hearing what Ling Mo said, Lin Wanqiu revealed a trace of a smile and said, "Thank you." Their group quickly passed through the corridor and arrived at a door that had undergoing renovation, sign plaster on top of it. This should be the Taekwondo dojo. But after gripping onto the doorknob, Ling Mo abruptly took a step backwards, his guard raised as he looked at the door. Seeing Ling Mo's reaction, Shana wordlessly stood by his side and raised her long saber. Shana's attitude allowed Lin Wanqiu to immediately understand what was going on. A trace of confusion appeared on her face, and she said in a low voice, "I didn't know that there were survivors here." Ling Mo remained silent and fixed his gaze onto the door. In the instant he gripped the doorknob, he distinctly felt it faintly vibrate, which meant that someone was behind the door. Sure enough, the door immediately opened when Ling Mo released his grip, and a haggard-looking youth appeared from within who said, "Which faculty are you guys from?" Ling Mo furrowed his brows and walked past this person, casting a glance into the room. He found more than 10 people spread about the room, but all of them seemed to lack energy. And opposite this door was a large French window. They clearly used it to discover Ling Mo's party. However, based on the faint look of vigilance on the face of the youth's face, Ling Mo roughly knew what they were thinking. They probably had no intention of interacting with Ling Mo's group, as Ling Mo's group would undoubtedly increase their burden if they took refuge here. But they didn't expect Ling Mo's group to immediately make their way over to the Taekwondo dojo. At this point, they had no choice but to make contact. This was no coincidence. After all, the Taekwondo dojo was the best place in the gymnasium. It provided an early warning system through the use of the French window, and its location was sufficiently obscure. On one side, it was linked to the corridor, while the other was close to an emergency staircase. At this moment, Sherbin cried out in pleasant surprise, "Sukai! You're Sukai, right?" References plus. Upon hearing Sherbin's exclamation, one of the boys facing the window promptly looked over and squinted at Sherbin. Shortly after, a trace of a smile immediately appeared on his gloomy-looking face, and he hurriedly got to his feet, looking as if he'd received a pleasant surprise. When he walked over, Ling Mo found that he was well-built and was rather tall in stature. From his appearance, he was most likely from the physical education faculty, or, at the very least, a sports lover. "Sherbin? You brat, you didn't die." Sukai's eyes went wide as he sized up Sherbin. Soon after, he gave a hearty laugh before he turned to the youth and said, "Teacher Luo, this is Sherbin. He's from the same faculty as me." Teacher Luo shifted his gaze to Sherbin. After glancing at him for a moment, he gave a vapid reply. "We ourselves are about to run out of food." His words were whispered in a soft voice, appearing as if he were somewhat afraid of the well-toned boy. "Sukai, that's great. Where do you guys come from?" Sukai didn't even listen to any of Teacher Luo's complaints and continued to passionately chat with Sherbin. A pleased look flashed across Sherbin's eyes as he replied, "We just came out from the red light district." In the past, Sukai was considered a very talented student in the physical education faculty. Not only did he make multiple appearances in the downtown mixed martial arts competitions, he even obtained exemplary results. On normal days, he was the objection of affection for the girls within the campus. Now, looking at Sukai being confined here with these other people while he, on the other hand, was able to make it back alive, naturally gave Sherbin a certain amount of pride. This time round, not only did Su Cheng reveal an expression of shock, the people within the dojo stood up in succession, astonishment written on their faces. Only now did someone realize the presence of Ling Mo and the rest behind Sherbin, and someone even recognized Ye Lian at first glance. "Isn't that Ye Lian? The campus belle? Why is she together with Sherbin? The man beside her is also from our school." Sherbin was originally feeling quite pleased with himself, but he now felt as if the wind had been taken out of his sails. He hurriedly turned behind and just happened to catch sight of Lin Wanchio's admonishing gaze. A chill immediately ran down his back, and Sherbin felt his scalp turn numb. When he turned to look at Ling Mo, he saw Ling Mo wearing an impatient smile on his face with a cold look in his eyes. "Everyone quiet." Sherbin immediately shouted at everyone present before giving Ling Mo a tentative look and taking a step back, an embarrassed look on his face. Sukai was rather perceptive. He immediately gained some insight upon seeing Sherbin's strange reaction and cast an inquisitive gaze towards Ling Mo before saying, "Sorry, may I ask which faculty you're from?" Ling Mo shook his head and explained, "I'm not from your school. I just came by to settle some matters." Ling Mo looked unaffected on the outside, but inwardly he was cursing and swearing at Sherbin. When Ling Mo had first met this guy, he'd practically divulged the entirety of Lin Wanchio's background at once. Now, he was once again revealing their backgrounds as well. Sherbin was definitely specialized in selling out his teammates, telling them they just came out of the red light district. Wasn't that clearly letting the others know that they had the strength to make it through half the campus, and that they should cling onto Ling Mo's group and beg to be taken along? It wasn't wrong of him to posture, but what he did do wrong was that he had absolutely no talent in it. Not only was he more or less a burden, he was even trying to act as if he was the one propping up the group. Luckily, most people likely wouldn't believe in such talk. Ling Mo had taken Lin Wanchio warning Sherbin not to mess around into consideration. But at this point, Ling Mo's poor impression of Sherbin could no longer be reversed. Instead, he might as well use this as an opportunity to leave Sherbin here. But regardless, Ling Mo had to speak to Lin Wanchio in advance before he made his decision. In any case, the two of them held a cooperative relationship. It'd be better for him to first speak to her about it. Sure enough, Sherbin's words had caused quite a stir amongst the other survivors. Although they no longer loudly discussed it, the way they looked at Sherbin had clearly changed, their eyes now holding a fervor within their eyes. There were even some that started to become restless and appeared as if they wanted to walk over. Unfortunately for them, Sukai had practically barred their approach with his body and said, "Oh, doesn't matter, we all share the same identity now as humans, don't we? You guys showing up here means that we're fated to meet. Come on in and take a seat." Sukai looked as if he were all brawn and no brains, but in truth, not only were his eyes sharp, he was intelligent too. He guessed that Ling Mo was probably stronger than Sherbin, but he wasn't clear on how much stronger he was. Most importantly, looked far too ordinary, while Shana with her long saber raised had a piercing look in her eyes, giving her an imposing presence. This made him think that this girl might just be the strongest of the group. However, when he glanced at Shana, Shana returned his gaze with a strange look of her own. He didn't know why, but when he locked eyes with Shana, Sukai had this indistinct feeling that he was being treated as if he were prey. He hurriedly averted his eyes before finally resting them on Ye Lian's body. She was the one who was known as the campus belle, and she looked more than 10 times better than her photos in the forums. On top of that, Ye Lian looked rather imposing as well, but he hadn't heard tell of her being able to use a saber in the best. Seeing Sukai unable to tear his gaze away from Ye Lian, Ling Mo furrowed his brows and asked, "What are you looking at?" Sukai was stunned. After glancing at Ling Mo, He cast a questioning gaze toward Sherbin. Sherbin knew he'd already provoked Ling Mo. He spoke in a very soft voice that lacked confidence. He's Ye Lian's boyfriend. Her boyfriend? Sukai's face held a look of shock, but it quickly reverted back to normal and said, haha, sorry about that. I didn't notice. Why don't you guys come in? Although this place isn't all that big, it should still be enough for you guys to stay here for a while. Ling Mo didn't have the least bit of goodwill left for these people. Upon hearing what Sukai said, Ling Mo gave a derisive grunt and replied, no need. We're just resting here for the time being. It's fine if you guys rest inside for a little while as well. Sukai planned to continue persuading him, but Ling Mo had already turned around to look at Lin Wanxiu and said, is there anywhere else that we can use in this place? Lin Wanxiu nodded and glanced at Sukai before she turned to face Ling Mo and said, follow me. After which, she took the lead and made her way towards the other end of the corridor. Following after her, Ling Mo shot Sukai a cold glance before leaving with Ye Lian and Shana. Sukai's face darkened when he saw Ling Mo head down the corridor with the rest. He pulled Sherbin, who was at the back of the group, over and asked in a low voice, tell me about him. Sherbin bestimmt. He was about to say psychic, but he haltingly corrected himself when he thought of Ling Mo's chilling gaze. He is. How would I know what kind of person he is? Either way, he's Ye Lian's boyfriend. After he said that, he dejectedly added, his skill isn't bad either. Oh, Sukai nodded his head before he suddenly leaned closer, whispered, you definitely have some food on you, right? Could you give us a bit of help? I'll be honest with you, we don't have much left. Sherbin had a bitter look on his face. How could I have any food? Ling Mo has plenty of it. However, he dislikes me, so I don't get any. But I, your father, can do without it. Sherbin's face was flushed red in anger. In that case, Sukai clapped Sherbin on the shoulder and said, it looks like your life these past few days wasn't all that good either. How long are you guys planning to stay here for? How would I know? But since it's getting dark, we should be staying here for the night. How about this? Look for a chance to separate yourself from the group a while later. I'll be waiting for you at the staircase. Sukai's suggestion gave rise to a look of suspicion on Sherbin's face, but Sukai quickly added, I only wanted to speak with you about some things, don't worry. Besides, aren't we brothers? Are you telling me that Ling Mo even has the ability to restrict your freedom? All right then, I'll take my leave. Sherbin hurriedly said his farewell to Sukai and rushed to catch up with Ling Mo's group. Sherbin, on the other hand, remained silent at the entrance for long while before he revealed a chilling smile. From the looks of it, Ling Mo had Sherbin under his thumb, causing resentment to well up within Sherbin. People like Sherbin were the type people who had a vicious side, but they were narrow-minded and extremely jealous. He thought his true personality was hidden very well, but Sukai had long since seen through him. With a bag that big and the number of weapons they had, Sukai slowly clenched his fist. Appearing as if he'd made up his mind, he turned around and faced the group of students still had a look of astonishment on their faces. A male student squeezed his way out of the group and agitatedly said, Sukai, why'd you block us just now? Didn't you hear what that person said? They came from the red light district. We can't stay here and wait for our deaths. We need to beg them to bring us along. Sukai slammed the door shut with his backhand and shot the male student a vicious glare filled with anger. What did you say? Although the male student was tall and chubby, he was fearful of Sukai. He immediately shut his mouth after hearing Sukai retort and even meekly averted his eyes, no longer daring to meet his gaze. Everyone in the room immediately fell silent, but another male student quickly welled up the courage to say, he's right. Sukai, you've always brought a few people out to look for food, and you always end up being the only one to come back alive, but the food you bring back isn't even enough to last us a few days. If this keeps up, we don't die just yet. Let's ask them for help. What? Are you trying to say that I'm the one who left them behind and caused their deaths? Are you trying to imply that if this keeps up, the rest of you are going to die as well? Sukai's eyes widened, and his tone of voice immediately turning vicious. Each and every one of you are eating the food that I've risked my life to bring back, and yet you still dare to say such things to me? All of you would be dead without me. Are you all thinking that I deprived you of your lifeline just now? Do you idiots really believe that they managed to get through the red light district with just a few of them? What a joke. Let's not talk about the others, but I know all about trash like Sherbin. As for the other guy, he doesn't look like anything much either. Even if he's stronger than Sherbin, it isn't by much. Even if Ye Lian and the other girl look rather skillful, they're stringing along and invalid. After saying that, Sukai licked his lips and let out a derisive laugh. Do you guys really believe they have what it takes to get through the red light district? Then let me ask you this. What are they doing here? Why would they bother coming back after going through all that trouble to escape? That guy saying he has things to take care of here is full of shit. Do you think I'm like the rest of you idiots and lack a brain? With the way things are, he wouldn't come running back even for the sake of his own mother. The way I see it, they're likely getting ready to escape. That, Sukai's words caused everyone to look at each other in dismay. After hesitating a while, he couldn't resist asking another question. Then why would they lie? Why? To scare you idiots. Didn't you see what he had on him? Didn't you see large his bag was? How much do you think is inside it? Also, Ye Lian and that long-haired girl were all holding sabers. What kind of weapons are we using now? Baseball bats and dismantled metal poles. If we had better weapons, would so many people have died? Sukai's tirade had caused his spittle to fly all over the place and left his face red from the agitation. It's afternoon now, and they're likely exhausted. Coupled with the fact that they're bringing along an invalid, chances are they won't be leaving this place tonight. Are you implying that? Another person tried to sound out Sukai's intention. Sukai clenched his fist and raised it in flash, his eyes filled with unconcealed viciousness. Tell me, do you guys think it's easier to steal from the living or from zombies? The dojo was immediately filled with silence. They were trapped here for a long time and rarely encountered survivors, but those survivors often cried to ask them to stay. Not only did this not bring the slightest advantage, but added a burden. Sukai was the strongest, and naturally had become the leader of the group of survivors. Although when he went out in search of food, he always brought an unlucky few along, but for the rest of the people, it was a chance. As long as the sacrifice isn't me, and I don't have to see it. People think that even if there must be a sacrifice, I can get food, then it's nothing to pick out some people as bait, as long as the role of bait doesn't fall on their head. Unable to resist their fate, and not having the courage to resist, they had become more and more numb, which is the mentality of the group of students now. So when Sukai made such a suggestion, they were shocked for a moment, but quickly revealed a greedy and excited expression. Yes, they must have lied to us. They brought so many good things, but give us nothing? Aren't we classmates? That is, do they have the heart to let us starve to death? That's too ruthless. Let's ask them first. If they won't, we'll take it. Listening to these students' more and more intense discussion, Sukai's face suddenly revealed a trace of smile. Long-term hunger and the shadow of death that could come at any moment has caused them to become devoid of the last vestiges of sanity. They are now a group of lunatics, only needing a little push, and you can make them go completely crazy. However, at this moment, a shrill voice suddenly rings. You say that they're going to escape from school, which means that before, they were stranded in school like us? Even if the food has been collected over several days, how do you explain the 3 blades? Our school doesn't allow carrying blades. The person who asked this question is a short girl. Sukai didn't have a strong impression of this girl, only that she usually didn't say a word. Unexpectedly, she dared to stand up against him. The problem is that girl hit the nail on the head, and the group of people who had just been interested in the theft immediately realized that something was wrong. Sukai's heart suddenly felt very disgusted with this girl. He wanted to rush forward and slap her, but at this time had to restrain again, said with a smile. Perhaps it was quietly brought in, for after all, it's not that strictly enforced. Did you forget? On the news before the disaster? It said our city was searched, and they found more than 5,000 prohibited guns and various knives, and then burned it all. Does this not explain the problem? Also, who hasn't brought something into the dorms that the school doesn't allow? That is, if we let them go, we might starve to death here. I don't want to starve to death, and maybe they're willing to give us food? Although, these people have some doubts in their hearts. In contrast, they're even more reluctant to give up this precious opportunity. Sukai only a slight smirk at the corner of his mouth, while he coldly watched the face of the helpless girl. In fact, Sukai indeed not dumb, he could see clearly these few people's strength is absolutely not low. At least Shana and Ye Lian should not be trifled with. After all, with just the 3 good weapons they had, it would be sufficient to take them all out. If they were really weak, how could Sukai have shared so much food with the group? Even if they didn't want to go along with his strategy to take out Ling Mo and the others right away, they still add value. 1. His purpose is only to use these students. Then let them go ahead, and those who are strong will not be able to unscathed under the siege of so many people. And hiding behind a bargain, you can gain big. The best result is that they will not only get food and weapons, but they may also have a good relationship with Ye Lian. Even if she is killed in the chaos, it's fine as long as the face is not damaged. You did not take the road to heaven, but broke through the doors of hell. You can't blame me for being ruthless. Just blame your bad luck. I was forced to. Having more than just a sneer in his heart, Sukai had his eyes locked onto the girl who questioned him. He pulled the girl over. When the girl was just about to scream, he reached out and covered her mouth, and then to the group of stunned people, exposed a hint of evil smile. I know you haven't been with someone. In order to improve the success rate, we should practice in advance of going down, right? This female classmate decided to sacrifice herself and let you enjoy yourselves, both for your bravery and for the battle encouragement. However, those without courage can stand on the side and jerk off. Have courage come. As soon as he said it, the group of boys immediately showed very surprised expression, but from Sukai's look, it was not a joke. The girl mentioned was almost mid-air, eyes full of tears, showing a look of begging, watching the staring boys. Sukai did not wait for them to answer, and Rip soon tore off the girl's clothes. There are many of you who have never been in the meet. How could you refuse? His provocative words, and the excitement of the scene, immediately unleashed the beast hidden in the heart of the group of people. As the first person rushed up, the scene suddenly became out of control. Even 2 other girls have not been spared. Sukai's cold eyes suddenly turned to stand at the door of Teacher Luo, suddenly revealed a strange smile. Teacher Luo made eye contact with Sukai and immediately shuddered all over. He took a deep look at the Sukai, eventually gritting his teeth and joining in with the insane group of people. Had a lot of trouble with this line. If anyone can find a better translation for, 更不会少这些手段，也不会等到林默一行人离开，而是当场就出手了. I can change it. TLN. I'm thinking of translating this. It's relatively easy, and I like the series so far, though Sukai choke on his own dick and several others. And the previous translator said anyone can pick up the series while they're on hiatus. As a reminder, I machine translate, and I don't know the language, so it's not going to be 100% accurate. Since I'm by myself, I don't know how often I can put out chapters, but I'll try not to make it too long. If you see any mistakes, point them out so I can fix it. Also, if anyone knows of resources on how to set up my WordPress to make reading and navigating more easy and fluid, a link would be appreciated. Sherbin and Sukai only had a brief talk. Ling Mo was watching them. It stands to reason that they are both acquaintances, using their given names casually, but vaguely. Ling Mo had an uncomfortable feeling. In particular, just that Sukai's expression, it seems very warm, but made Ling Mo feel very irritable. Like the other students in the dojo, their eyes have the color of undisguised greed, and by contrast, Sukai seems to be a little too calm. Yes, it is too calm. Look at their appearances. They should have been stranded here for a long time. From the beginning, they think that Ling Mo and his party are the refugees. Therefore, teacher Luo acted indifferent. But Ling Mo felt this behavior is no longer normal. Back when Sherbin said they came from the red light district, the students began to stir. Even teacher Luo had a light shine in his eyes. But rather Sukai still maintained a very calm look with a feeling of contrived enthusiasm. There's a small warehouse, although the location is not very good, but it'll barely make do. Well, let's rest here. Just then Lin Wanxiu suddenly raised her hand to point to the corridor at the corner of a room. To discuss, her tone of voice said. Ling Mo nodded and went to open the door. This warehouse conditions really much worse than the Taekwondo dojo, with only one window. However, the rooftop is attached to the outside and can be retreated to if something happens. On both sides of the warehouse were wooden racks, piled with a number of small equipment. Ling Mo picked up a ping-pong ball and threw it. At the end of the world, who has the mind to engage in sports, these equipment can only stay rusty and moldy. Survival is the most intense and exciting sport for survivors. Shana had shown great interest in the equipment, and she looked at everything carefully. Natural Lin Wanxiu felt a little weird. The way here, Shana and Ye Lian's behavior also faintly produced a glimmer of suspicion. Although there is no difference between their appearances and ordinary people, their performance in battle is astounding. Their movement is neat. The way of killing is very bloody and violent, and in such a tiring situation, even can maintain a constant color. Is this something ordinary girls can achieve? Still, Lin Wanxiu doesn't have the least bit of suspicion. Not ordinary people. It can't be a zombie, can it? She heard Shana speak with her own ears. Ling Mo did not know Lin Wanxiu had some suspicion of Shana and Ye Lian identity. He is secretly feeding Ye Lian in the guise of wiping the blood off of Ye Lian's hands. Ling Mo divided the piece of gel she had just got in half and put it in Ye Lian's mouth. Even if he did not deliberately manipulate her, when the gel was placed on Ye Lian's mouth, she immediately listened and separated her lips. As the gel slipped down her throat, the bloody glow in the eyes of Ye Lian suddenly brightened, and then slowly restored to normal human appearance. This scene is not seen by Lin Wanxiu, because Ling Mo deliberately blocked Ye Lian. Following up, he fed the other half to Shana. But remembered Shana can be more difficult than the Ye Lian. While she ate the gel, she spontaneously sucked Ling Mo's finger and kept her warm tongue slipping over his fingers while giving a burst of sucking noises. Hey, don't bite me, Ling Mo quickly whispered. Shana glanced slightly at Ling Mo, and then reluctantly opened her mouth so Ling Mo could draw out his fingers. Ling Mo took the opportunity to pinch Shana's cheek and said, I give you something to eat, and you actually think of biting me. I said I wouldn't bite. Shana was silent for a moment, then said it, but her eyes that just flashed red had betrayed her. I suppose she's just hungry, Ling Mo thought. On the way, he also had the opportunity to give Shana and Ye Lian the viral gel, but once a zombie moves, it means high physical exertion. This gel doesn't seem to be enough for them. Fortunately, the two of them have evolved at a higher level. These common viral gels do not make them appear strange at all, Ling Mo thought. Although these virus gels are a bit low for them, it can add up and also will slowly promote their evolution. Ling Mo actually wanted to take in some of their fluids here to supplement his physical strength, but can see Shana and Ye Lian both have a tired look, so Ling Mo had to give up this plan. The liquid in their body could supplement his own physical strength. It may also supplement theirs. Man, I guess you're tired, right? After Ling Mo fed Shana, Ye Lian also came to his side. Due to the close mental connection between the two, her instinctive reaction under fatigue is to rest around Ling Mo. The sucking sound is of course hidden from Lin Wanxiu. She looked him in the eyes, her face hot at the same time, could not help but feel a little interesting. Especially in the case of unknown truth, the dialogue between Shana and Ling Mo sounds like a small couple bickering and joking. It is not easy to keep such a good mentality in the end, especially since they have also experienced so many fierce battles. This can no longer simply be described as excellent psychological quality. Could it be that it's just thick skin? Think of here. Lin Wanxiu suddenly feels suspicious of her own suspicions. Although Shana, amazing performance in the battle. In this moment, she seems to be nothing more than a spoiled little girl. And Ling Mo rubbing Ye Lian's hand also makes it seem like she's actually a girl who's just not very good at taking care of herself. Is it possible that I'm jealous in my heart? Lin Wanqiu could not help but be surprised, then looked dim. Before she was ill and injured, she was also the most powerful person in the volunteer rescue squad, who had the advantage of her power to make up for her weakness as a girl with insufficient strength. However, when the accident occurred, she almost became a useless person. In today's battle, Lin Wanqiu felt that, even if she is still intact, but also inferior to the two girls. Is it because of this so I feel jealous? This is not a good sign. Jealousy is a knife. Lin Wanqiu indulges in flights of fancy at the same time. Sherbin also breathlessly entered the door. He had just been strong in front of Su Kai and others, but in fact he got tired, quickly already tried to get on the ground. At this moment, barely able to support himself into the warehouse. Just closed the door, couldn't wait to sit down like a dead dog, gasping constantly for air. Sherbin, what did you just say to Su Kai? Lin Wanqiu gave Ling Mo a glance, and saw he did not care about Sherbin's opinion. He took the initiative to ask about Sherbin's reason. Sherbin frowned somewhat, and thought, what do you mean? Am I a prisoner on trial? Ling Mo is treating me with a poor attitude. And, surprisingly, Lin Wanqiu treats me the same. Hello, before I totally devoted myself to you. In order to live, well, can you not live without Ling Mo? He even had a vicious word in his head. Slut. One day of fatigue, continuing to experience the crisis of life and death. So Sherbin's heart was full of irritability. Especially just a moment ago, Lin Wanqiu made him deal with Su Kai, and it even made him lose face. Although at the time he was afraid of him, he feared angering Ling Mo, but at this point it's over, and he felt a great anger and a strong sense of humiliation. Thinking so, Sherbin's eyes became a little cold. Nothing. He asked me some personal business. Why? Do you have to control this? He said, the eyes consciously and unintentionally swept to the Ling Mo, seeing Ling Mo, Shana, and Ye Lian sitting together, and even comfortably putting his head on the long legs of Ye Lian, and couldn't help revealing a hint of complicated expression. Why does he have a power and I don't? It's not fair. Translator. Farum. Lin Wanqiu saw that Sherbin's attitude was somewhat strange, but she still lowered her voice and said, after all, I am in a weak condition. Will you stop? I could have never come with. If you hadn't let me. Sherbin said here, some can't go by themselves. If Lin Wanqiu did not bring him, that basically amounts to sentencing him to death. He would be trapped in the red light district, and without Lin Wanqiu he wouldn't have the resources to survive. Regardless of sharpening sticks or his small fighting skills, these were taught to him by Lin Wanqiu. Sorry, I'm tired. Sherbin evasively looked at Lin Wanqiu's eyes, leaning against the wall, closed his eyes. Lin Wanqiu secretly sighed, also leaned back, and no longer spoke. She vaguely felt that, if Sherbin continued like this, it may not have a good ending. But she couldn't influence Ling Mo's way of thinking, but also could not persuade Sherbin, although she did not fight much along the way. The continuously walking made Lin Wanqiu very tired. Seeing Ling Missouri close his eyes, Lin Wanqiu quietly grabbed her left arm, and then pressed down a little harder. A trace of pain immediately surfaced on her face, and she tried to move it, but nothing happened. Looking down, slowly released her grip, and slowly tightened fingers again. A fine layer of sweat formed on the tip of her nose, and her eyes flashed with a sad look. If we hadn't met Ling Mo in time, I'm afraid I would have lasted a week at most and would die. As Sherbin said, due to being tired, although it was not late, Ling Mo, after thinking, decided to stay here for one night. Although he did not have a very good feeling about Su Kai, he did not think much about it. How could he know that those seemingly pitiful students were torturing their own companions? Dead? Dead. One of the boys, still shaking his body, suddenly felt the body of the girl stop moving. His enthusiasm and impulse were immediately extinguished. He probed with his finger. His face suddenly became pale, but also he became soft at once. But just when he called out, Su Kai mercilessly kicked with his foot. You called for what? Not afraid to arouse suspicion. All of you. Now you've had a good time, and also killed people. When you start, there's no turning back, understand? Su Kai's hungry wolf-like gaze swept past. This group had a panicked or complex look, but Su Kai only felt very satisfied. This group of people have never been a good thing. Every time Su Kai went out looking for food, they were bound to pick out a victim. Each time, these people push those who are weaker or have a weaker personality to their death. Women who are not capable of protecting themselves are naturally the first to be sacrificed. There were originally 7 or 8 other girls, all of whom were sent out as bait. Now these 3 girls, in fact, sooner or later would not have come to a good end. It's just that the group never thought to vent on them, because in their opinion, the best use for the girls was to be used as bait. At times, desire only need a fuse to be detonated. They indirectly killed many people, but it's the first time they've killed with their own hand. These 2 are not dead yet. One of them heard Su Kai's words and couldn't help but open his mouth. Su Kai looked at the 2 girls, unable to move on the ground. His eyes revealed a trace of fierce look. Then kill them. Killing 1 is murder. Killing 2 is also murder. The sky soon darkened, and in the warehouse, except for deep breathing, no sound could be heard. Ling Mo was lying underneath the window, his head resting on Ye Lian's legs, and his other hand held tightly in Shana's hand. He obviously slept soundly. The 2 female mutant zombies leaned together, eyes closed. Though their breathing is faint, it could be seen from the slight ups and downs of their chests. but they're also in a state of deep sleep. Sitting beside Ye Lian is Lin Wanqiu. She had been resting some 2 meters from where they had been, but with the breeze blowing constantly in from the window, being cold, she unconsciously went over to the nearby heat source. Lin Wanqiu, almost out of instinct, attached herself to Ling Mo. She tilted her head slightly, leaning on the shoulders of Ye Lian. Her legs were nearly seamlessly attached to Ling Mo's body. Sherbin coldly watched this scene. When he saw Lin Wanqiu and Ling Mo almost affixed together, suddenly a hint of cold flashed in his eyes. He grasped the sharpening stick on one side, his eyes full of jealousy and resentment staring down at Ling Mo's throat. Are you sure you can kill Ling Mo? Even if he didn't kill him, he could infect him and turn him into a zombie, a monster that eats people. Sherbin felt his heartbeat suddenly became very intense. All his blood seemed to boil, and his mouth felt dry. He can't move his hands? A few dozen seconds later, Sherbin came to. Even if he can kill Ling Mo, when Shana and Ye Lian woke up, they would definitely kill him. Moreover, if they were unable to reach the school infirmary, Lin Wanqiu will die. Sherbin's expression suddenly became complicated. He really felt this Ling Mo person was very annoying, but for him to risk their lives to attack Ling Mo, it didn't seem worth it. And looking at Lin Wanqiu's sleeping face, he cannot help but become soft-hearted. Although Lin Wanqiu is doing this in order to survive, the thing made him feel a little resentful. But after all, Lin Wanqiu had done a lot for him, and for this girl, he is holding special feelings. Just go to the school infirmary and part ways. Then it will restore Lin Wanqiu to her previous attitude. Count yourself lucky. Sherbin eventually put the sharpening stick down, said fiercely in his heart. He waited quietly for a few minutes, and after confirming that these people were indeed asleep, he quietly stood up, opened the door in a very gentle motion, and left. What he does not know, however, is that at the moment he closes the door, Ling Mo, who seemed to be asleep, suddenly opened his eyes. Sherbin came out of the warehouse. At first his movement is stiff, then he turned his eyes to the dark corridor. Sukai told me to go to the stairwell. Is there anything else he said to me? In fact, it was nearly 2 hours after the time to meet Sukai. Sherbin was going to the stairs to see each other, but he still felt some hesitation. But at this time, seeing everybody asleep and haunted by curiosity, he decided to go and see. Sherbin, with doubts in his heart, carefully moved towards the stairs. He saw Sukai just before he reached the stairs. Sukai originally had a very impatient look, but when he saw Sherbin, immediately showed a very excited look. He took 2 steps, grabbed Sherbin's arm, and lowered his voice, said, "Brother, I know you wouldn't stand me up. Come here with me." Then he dragged Sherbin to the 3rd floor and finally stopped at the corner of the stairs from the 2nd floor to the 3rd floor. Sherbin, somewhat impatiently, shook off Sukai's hand and asked, "What are you calling me for? I really don't have the food." "I know." Sukai only smiled, asked slyly, "Brother, you know I'm the most loyal person. We used to have a good relationship, right? Now that we've been through such a catastrophe, we're still alive to meet. That's only the fate, brothers. I'm not afraid to offend you. I feel today, brother, you don't seem to be having an easy time." Sukai was trying to sway him. Sherbin was somewhat doubtful, but what was a poke in his weak spot was that last sentence. His face suddenly changed and then reluctantly sighed. "Since you see it, I do not deny it. Yes, I'm not good. In fact, the last 2 days were better than now. Oh, there's nothing unpleasant to say between us brothers. Isn't it what Ling Mo did to you? Although I'm also in distress, but as brothers I cannot ignore this." Sukai slapped his chest to prove his word. Sherbin looked suspiciously at Sukai, although he had some doubts about the authenticity of Sukai's remark. With Sukai's sincere eyes and tone, he let his heart waver. Whether he is lying, if he is willing to go find Ling Mo trouble, isn't that what I want? Translator, Hannah, Chan 42. Thinking of this, Sherbin nodded his head, but he did not want to reveal his own crimes, so he just vaguely said, "That boy is too cruel of a person. Fuck, he actually dared to start something with my brother." Sukai exaggeratedly slapped his thigh, then indignantly said, "Don't worry, I will help you get justice." However, he suddenly changed tone, whispering, "Sherbin, you tell your brother the truth. Have you really come back from the red light street? Why do you think I boasted? We did come from the red light district, and you saw that there was an invalid among us. There was no big hospital near here, so we planned to go to the school infirmary to look for drugs." As to what Ling Mo's trio came to X City University to do, Sherbin was not clear, so he did not say anything. Listening to Sherbin speak, Sukai's eyes suddenly became complicated. Although he told a group of students to not believe it, in fact he was still dubious. At this time, hearing Sherbin affirm this statement, he also felt some concern. But soon he would get the worry off his back. After all, there was so much cannon fodder. So, how many of them should be strong? "Sherbin, your brother wants to help you vent your anger, but you have to tell me about their situation before I do anything." Sherbin suddenly hesitated with a thinking face. Sukai sighed and said, "Brother, how did you become such a timid person? Why, when I'll help you succeed, are you still afraid of him this way?" "I'm afraid of him." With Sukai poking his sore spot, Sherbin immediately said furiously, "How could I not fear him? I just think that you can't beat him. Let alone him, the 2 around him, the girls you can't beat either. They kill zombies like chopping a watermelon. Impossible. I took the Sanda, Chinese kickboxing, award in the city. What martial school is he? More powerful than a professional athlete like me." Sukai Lauget, This narrow-minded Sherbin, too easily excited, although the group with him is nothing but a drop of blood in the sea. However, with Sherbin's words made, Sukai wonder, was using those cannon fodder to take out the group really the right choice? If one can cut a zombie like they can cut a watermelon, how strong were they? Even if Sherbin exaggerated, it still shows that they really are not good to mess with. Sherbin just blurted out, but suddenly felt something was amiss. Although he does not speak his mind, he can also spot some problems at this time. Sukai was a man with whom his relationship can only be said to be ordinary. If he did not understand the strength of Ling Mo, he may have been just trying to help Sherbin succeed. But even after Sherbin's words describing their strength, he still had an expression of resolve. This seemed a bit strange. Sherbin, although extremely jealous, was not arrogant enough to think that he was the king of the sky, that Sukai was willing to sacrifice his life for him. So his expression soon sank. Sukai, what are you trying to do? Seeing Sherbin react so quickly, Sukai could only fall back on his usual ploys, since his cover of a sincere friend was blown. He smiled insidiously, quietly shifting to the side, blocking the path of Sherbin. Then honestly, I really want to help you get back at him, but also want to take advantage of the benefits. You said that there's a lot of food on that Ling Mo's body, right? And the weapons that they had, I am very jealous. Sherbin's heart suddenly went thump. His look to Sukai's eyes suddenly become extremely incredible. He never imagined that Sukai would actually come up with this idea. Although he also thought of wanting to kill Ling Mo, and even almost acted on this, he never wanted to grab Ling Mo's luggage. He was torn up inside because of jealousy, but Sukai was clearly motivated by greed. Sherbin felt shocked for a time. Sukai did not give him the opportunity to think, but continued to persuade him. You see, you also hate him. If we should cooperate, as long as you could take the opportunity to attack him, we could even win. I think you care for that sick girl, right? In this way, I call the shots, capture her, and then you can feel free to... Sukai, shoot up. Sherbin just had some shivers at the beginning of the plan, but at this time to even listen to the idea to actually take Lin Wanchu's body, he almost involuntarily shouted. However, at the end of this sentence, he found that Sukai's eyes suddenly became very cold. This kind of look could only appear after someone had really killed people, saw their blood spilled. Sherbin slowly took half a step back. He suddenly felt regret. He regretted that he ever came here and met Sukai. From Sukai's eyes, he saw undisguised killing intent. Sherbin, I really want to help you. Will you just talk to me? Sukai approached him step by step, and at the same time whispered, if you and I together can beat these few people and take their food, maybe we can find a way to escape. You do not know, but this school has collected less than the adequate amount of food, and this opportunity I will never let go. What do you want me to do in the end? Sherbin really felt some scalp numbness. He looked at Sukai nervously and asked, my dear brother, tell me about their strength. Sherbin ground his teeth. He looked around and found that Sukai had intentionally or unintentionally blocked his way. Fighting, he does not think he will be his match. Why, you do not want to say. Sukai and approached some. His muscular frame gave Sherbin great pressure. Sherbin hesitated for a moment, but finally spoke, saying, that Ling Mo is a bit weird. He is an ability user, but it seems he does not favor close combat. The other two women are masters with knives. The sick girl is not threatening. Do not touch her. Sukai only smiled. Haha, brother, you really are kind to your love, but I still have one thing to ask for your help with. At that soft laugh, Sherbin suddenly felt a tearing pain from his abdomen. He stared incredulously, watching this man who called himself his brother, in the blink of an eye, not hesitate to lay his hands on his classmate. Sukai's expression is grim, and he holds a small half of a thin steel pipe. The other end has been stabbed into the belly of Sherbin. Sherbin had a desperate and frightened expression, and Sukai felt great satisfaction. You're too timid. I'm afraid you're a bad guy. I'm sorry, brother. Sukai smiled and whispered in Sherbin's ear. Sherbin's mouth began to fill with blood, and strength drained from his body. He slowly raised his sharpened stick, but in his extremely desperate eyes, Sukai was holding his sharpening knife in his hands. Thanks. I'm lacking a handy weapon. Sherbin widened his eyes, a dumbfounded look on his face, but the body slowly fell down limp. Sukai coldly looked at his body that fell at his own feet, his eyes suddenly becoming a bit complicated. Ability user. This identity gave Sukai a somewhat surprised feeling. He did not know anything about any so-called abilities, but fortunately, Ling Mo's weakness is melee, while melee is his own most confident fighting style. As for Shana and Ye Lian, even if they are stronger, they are, after all, only girls with limited physical strength. No matter how strong, he's still outnumbered. Sukai, after hesitating for a few seconds, revealed a hideous color and whispered. He decided to act immediately and promptly deal with Ling Mo. Once this was dragged out for a long time, they may find the disappearance of Sherbin becoming suspicious. The group of crazy people he leads will gradually calm down. Taking advantage of the fact that they're still in the midst of the madness brought about by killing their companions, is a good time to thin out the cannon fodder. When Sukai walked downstairs, a dark shadow popped out of nowhere. Sukai felt a sudden wind blowing toward his back. His heart made a BA bump sound. His reaction wasn't slow. He immediately tilted his body and threw his arm to counterattack. Usually if someone did a sneak attack on Sukai, they They would mostly end up being knocked out by him from his counter. But this time, although Sukai hit the attacker, he only managed to push him back without doing any damage. With the moon shining through the windows on the hall, Sukai looked at the person who attacked him with a gloomy face. They actually had just met in the afternoon. "Hello," said Ling Mo, who was holding a shiny short knife with a smirk on his face. The facial expression of that smile irritated Sukai to the bones. Sukai pulled himself together from the shock of the attack, and then raised a sharpened knife. Sukai coldly said, "Great. Everything is much simpler now after I finish you off first. You're a dumbass for following brother Sure being alone by yourself." Ling Mo replied, "I'm not dumb, and you'll soon know why." After seeing Sukai's fighting pose, although Ling Mo looked relaxed, he was actually also alert and prepared. The strike Sukai just made previously isn't something a normal guy could pull off. He is someone who's been fighting for quite a while. Ling Mo is not good at near-distance fight. He didn't even properly learn how to fight before. All his moves are originated from fighting with other people when his life was on the line. But his skills of the puppet mastery can make up for his disadvantage. After listening to what Ling Mo said, Sukai licked his lips and grinned. "You think that just because you're some kind of bullshit person with superpowers, you can go one-on-one against me? Whatever. After I kill you, I will make love to your girlfriend, Ye Lian. She's so pretty. It must feel good to fuck her right." Ling Mo's smile disappeared right away. The look he was giving Sukai was very cold. "I won't let you die that fast." Ling Mo tightly held on the short knife and charged. Despite the lack of power, Ling Mo's speed and agility was much faster than normal people. The distance between the two was just less than 3 meters. Sukai didn't think that Ling Mo could move like that. With the time less than a blink of an eye, Ling Mo was already in front of him. A streak of cold light fiercely cut towards his neck. What surprised Sukai was that despite how normal Ling Mo looked, he still managed to use his agility to show power in his strike. Although he's shorter than Sukai, it did not make him less powerful when he dashed towards Sukai and jumped to stab him with gravity, pushing down the knife, making a sound, clearly showing a dominating slash. If the slash was successful, Sukai would have probably been dead. But Sukai was also a person with experience in fighting. He stepped back, used the sharpening knife to block the side part, but at this moment he realized he was a bit slow without knowing why. He was planning to completely block Ling Mo's short knife, but his sight blanked out a bit. When he pulled himself back together, he was already halfway through putting down his sharpened knife. Doom! Sound of metals clashing. Sukai and Ling Mo's wrists both fell to shock. A line of blood appeared on Sukai's neck slowly and didn't stop until it made his whole neck red. Sukai stepped back in shock and touched his neck. That was so close. Almost lost my fucking head. If he hadn't raised his arms to lift the sharpened knife he was planning to put down, his head would have been removed to somewhere else. The knife cut off his skin, though it was just a flesh wound, but he still bled a lot. That was too strange. Sukai thought, how could he possibly lose sight at that critical moment and also move completely opposite of what he intended to do? Sukai angrily looked at Ling Mo. He knows there was no turning back now. "Fuck your mother." Sukai roared with low voice and charged. But the moment he charged, his sight blanked out again and got a headache. After that moment, he felt that he had bumped into Ling Mo with a cold feeling passing from his stomach. Ling Mo moved and backed up right away. Sukai blankly stood at the original position. The sharpened knife was stabbed inside his stomach and nearly went all the way in, only the handle remained outside. So tired, Ling Mo looked at Sukai while pinching between his eyebrows. Ling Mo's most powerful skills were his puppet mastery, which was completely useless against regular people. But apparently using the spirit tentacle to interfere was really effective. But the demand of spirit power was very high. Ling Mo did a lot that day, and he wasn't fully recovered. After fighting with Sukai, he felt a bit of headache. Seeing Sukai slowly falling down, Ling Mo showed a slight of happiness. He slowly walked towards Sukai, seeing him with his eyes wide opened and still twitching. He squatted down and laughed at him, saying, "This wouldn't have happened to you if you hadn't had bad intentions. Fuck off." Although Sukai felt hopeless, but he kept cursing. Ling Mo shook his head. "Don't worry, I won't kill you now. I heard your conversation with Sherbin. You wanted to take action with your classmates, right? A pussy like you wouldn't dare to take action by yourself." Sukai was silent and filled with rage for a few seconds and said, "You aren't a good guy either. You didn't stop me from killing Sherbin." Ling Mo sneered and said he deserved it. "It's none of my business either. Plus you don't have the right to say whether I'm a bad guy or not. Cut the crap. What do you want to do to me? I will immediately." Sukai was a tough person. He was smiling still even despite the fact that he was going to die. Ling Mo sneered and used the body of the knife to slap Sukai's cheek and said in a cold voice, "I told you I won't let you die that easy. Wait a little bit. Something really good is going to happen to you soon. Do whatever you want. I'm not afraid of you." Sukai showed a slight fear in his eyes, but said it regardless. "Just wait." Ling Mo then did something unexpected and instead went and sat on the steps of the stairs looking at him with a smile, while also playfully glaring at him. Dying is fearful, but the most fearful thing is waiting to die, especially being looked by Ling Mo this way. Sukai felt regret, fear, and despair, but mostly reluctance. Sukai knew what kind of person he was after the disaster. In order to run away from the dorm, he locked his buddies with the infected roommate and then ran without turning back even though they were crying for help. In order to survive, he had sacrificed a lot of people Even for just a tiny bit of food, he would be willing to throw his partner under the bus just to survive. But Sukai didn't think he was wrong. He just wanted to live. Without the restraint of laws and ethic values, this world had already become a place where only the strong survived. Weak people should be the stepping stones of strong people. Weak people don't have the right to live. While Sukai was thinking and twitching, he suddenly felt his stomach burning to the point that he thought he was going to be burned to death. What happened? Sukai started to twitch severely. His eyes started to be covered with a layer of shiny blood. With despair and fear, Sukai felt his blood was burning in his body. What happened? Sukai started to keep shouting, but when he started to shoot out the first word, Ling Mo stepped on his mouth and told him to shut the fuck up. The situation is different to Shana's mutation. Was it because the virus isn't strong enough? Ling Mo subtly felt with his spirit tentacles that although Sukai was struggling, he was not bleeding a lot. On the other hand, he seemed to be awake, but his face was extremely pale, his face muscles were twitching, and he looked like he was in a lot of pain. After using the spirit tentacle, Ling Mo tried to control Sukai. In the beginning, Sukai's resistance was very fierce, but as he gradually lost his cool, eyes started to scatter. Ling Mo's persistence finally succeeded. While Ling Mo's spirit power started to replace Sukai's control of his own body, Sukai suddenly stopped twitching. Is this a half-zombie or a defective zombie? Ling Mo controlled Sukai to stand up and found out that his situation was different than other zombies. The purity of virus was very low and not really affected by the infection that much. Good thing the sky was dark. Other people shouldn't be able to see anything abnormal about Sukai. Ling Mo controlled Sukai to mess up his hair, to block his eyes, and buttoned up his coat to somehow cover the stab part's stomach, and headed toward the Taekwondo gym. In the beginning, Sukai's actions looked a bit weird, but quickly he began to walk normally again. If his face didn't have any expressions, nobody would be even able to tell that Sukai was now actually someone else. In the corner of the Taekwondo gym laid 3 corpses of the girls. The other people inside the gym seemed to subconsciously stay away from the corpses and all sat on the other side of the gym. Although their eyes still showed some excitement, their bodies were quivering hard, but they couldn't tell if it was because they were excited or slightly frightened. Someone couldn't bear the silence and asked, "Why hasn't Sukai come back yet?" "Yeah, we should have taken action earlier. What, they run away? Are you an idiot?" "Who the fuck would dare go out at night?" said a man with disapproval. "We can't just keep waiting. I'm getting really nervous now." "You're not just nervous, are you? Just say it. You're scared." "Well, little pussy." "Fuck you. Who you calling a pussy?" While the people were having a fierce argument, the door was suddenly knocked on, and some of the people stood up immediately. Teacher Lo silently went to the door and took a wooden stick, hid beside the door, and slowly opened it. The moment they saw the familiar figure, everyone's panicked expression on their faces faded away. Teacher Lo also felt relieved. He put the wooden stick on the ground and walked aside. The person was, of course, Sukai. Because of the insufficient light, people didn't realize what Sukai looked like right now. They didn't even notice that he was already in a position where he couldn't even walk back. They didn't even see that blood was leaking along his pants and slowly dripping to the ground. Some of the boys came to him and excitedly asked him, "So do we take action now, Sukai? Did you ask how much food they have left? How long can their food last?" Ling Mo slightly sneered. As a zombie puppet, Sukai couldn't talk, and Ling Mo's skills wasn't powerful enough yet to make him talk. But he used an even more direct way to answer the people's question. When Sukai put his hand on one of the guy's shoulder, the guy was shocked for a second and then smiled with gloat and said, "Brother Sukai, just tell us, are we taking action now?" Sukai looked up with his shiny red eyes, which immediately made that guy's facial expression turn dark. Just when he was about to scream, he suddenly felt a sharp pain on his waist. The thin steel stick that was used to kill Sherbin was now in this guy's waist, twisting slowly. The guy's face became stiff with his eyes wide open, looking at Sukai with disbelief. His throat made a GG sound. People around didn't notice anything strange yet, until the guy grabbed Sukai's arm slowly and kneeled down to the ground. When they saw this, a guy started joking. "Come on, you are such a skisser. If you want to be Sukai's subordinate, you could have just asked him and not get on your knees like a woman about to give a blowjob, huh?" Just when he finished talking, Sukai pulled out the steel stick from him and then stabbed the person in front of him in the stomach. As the blood sprayed out of the body, the rest of the people in the room finally realized something was definitely wrong. "Sukai, what are you doing?" Of course, Sukai didn't answer back. He just killed another 2 people in response again, while the people around him didn't even have a chance to dodge or escape. In just a short time, there were 4 bodies under his feet. The ones who were still alive started to back off with extreme fear, looking stupefied at Sukai. "Sukai, Hakai." Unfortunately, the only response they got was a paid of red eyes looking back at them. Although the color wasn't as red as the ones from a real zombie, it still gave the rest of the people in that room the same conclusion. Zombie? Zombie." Some cowards screamed immediately and started to back off in fear, but the space in a room was only so big. Where could they possibly run to or even hide? The others who weren't as cowardly as the rest were still scared, but at least they picked up some weapons from the ground to fight against Sukai. But Sukai was the strongest amongst all of them before. Even though he had turned into a zombie and couldn't use martial arts to fight back, he still brought some pressure to those people in the room. Not only that, Sukai's whole situation right now was way too weird. Zombies don't knock on doors, and they also wouldn't use a knife to stab someone. Through Su Kai's vision, Ling Mo could clearly see their ugly expressions. He wasn't planning to kill them all at first. He had just wanted to see what they are up to by controlling Su Kai's body. But he would have never thought that he would have seen such a cruel and despicable scene when he had entered the room. He didn't even want to know what had happened to those girls that had died in the corner. When he heard those people excitedly asking him when they were going to take action, Ling Mo's killing intent raised to the maximum. Ling Mo was not a killer, but he was very pissed off now. With the experience of killing the bold guy and his group of people, killing these people in this room was like killing chickens in a slaughterhouse. Within a blink of an eye, he had already killed 4 people. As for the remaining ones, he was not going to let any of them survive. The remaining ones all had fearful expressions while Ling Mo was controlling Su Kai. It seemed like Su Kai was a hungry wolf going into a herd of fat sheep. Su Kai gripped the knife and charged, in order to attack Ling Mo's group by surprise. Su Kai had given the people in that room some weapons. If they actually had the courage to have gone head-to-head with Su Kai might have been killed. Even if Ling Mo had joined the fight, he might not have been able to leave without getting harmed. But they were already scared shitless to death. When Su Kai moved, they didn't even try to fight back. They all ran away instead. Throughout the whole battle, although Su Kai kept getting hit, he didn't really take any major damage since he was a zombie puppet. As long as he wasn't hit on a lethal spot, he wouldn't be hurt. The only thing that delayed him from killing everyone with ease was that his abdomen was still bleeding, so his movement was slowed down a bit. But it was still strong enough to kill all those pieces of shit in the room. In a short, while the Taekwondo gym started to be filled with crying, yelling, and sometimes even screaming. If it wasn't for the fact that the room was soundproof, they probably would have gotten the attention of the zombies outside of the building. Some of them had started to run for the door, even though it was closed by Su Kai when he came in. When they had reached the doorknob to turn it, their faces all contained despair when they realized that the doorknob couldn't be turned. Su Kai's pair of eyes were filled with despair and regret while looking at the corpses all around the room, and finally staring at the closed door. Although he was controlled, his situation was a bit different as a zombie than others, so he somehow knew what he had done during the whole process. Reluctance, humiliation, all kinds of emotions were filled inside him right before his death. But everything was too late. He stared at the door and then took his final breath. While Su Kai took his last breath, Ling Mo let go of the doorknob he was holding onto, made a long sigh, turned around, and then left. To him, making sure what happened inside with his own eyes wasn't important anymore. These people deserved death. Ling Mo didn't feel guilty at all. When Ling Mo went back to the barn, Lin Wanqiu was standing right at the door, but Ye Lian blocked her way. Of course, Ye Lian was being controlled by Ling Mo. Shana was still leaning on the window, looking at Lin Wanqiu with a cold expression. Listen to me. Maybe if I try to persuade Sherbin, maybe he won't do anything. When Ling Mo opened the door, Lin Wanqiu was still trying to persuade Ye Lian and Shana. But when she heard the sound of the door, Lin Luanqi shut her mouth immediately and gave Ling Mo a complicated look. The two of them looked at each other without talking. After a while, Lin Luanqi asked him with a bitter voice, "Is he dead?" Ling Mo nodded, then stopped for a bit and added, "Believe it or not, I didn't kill him." Those words made Lin Luanqi change her expression for just a second. She didn't believe it at first, but on second thought, she was all alone now. Even her last companion had died. There was literally no way she could deny Ling Mo anyways. There's no reason for him to lie to her, while he had the absolute advantage. On thinking to this point, Lin Luanqiu felt very complicated. If it wasn't Ling Mo who killed him, she could somehow guess what had happened. Knowing how Su Kai really was, she could guess that Sherbin's reason for sneaking out was probably for Su Kai. It didn't take an idiot to put 2 and 2 together. Seeing Lin Wanqiu looking sad and quiet, Ling Mo sighed, went over to her, and tapped her shoulder. Ling Mo had wanted to comfort her, but right after he tapped her shoulder, Lin Wanqiu made a sudden yell in pain. "What happened to you?" Ling Mo was puzzled for a second. He didn't use any strength when he tapped her. He only touched her lightly. Shana came after hearing the yell and asked, "You got pinched by him too?" She couldn't see what Ling Mo did to Lin Luanqi from her angle. So just from hearing Lin Wanqiu's yell, she thought about what she had happened to her before when Ling Mo touched her and assumed the same thing happened too. Who pinched her? Ling Mo suddenly got confused. Lin Wanqiu shook her head and said, "It's nothing, I just feel a bit complicated." She avoided Shana's question, but in her mind, she was wondering what Shana meant by getting pinched and where. But in thinking that she subconsciously thought it's probably better not to ask. Ling Mo suspiciously looked at Lin Wanqiu. Suddenly at this moment, Ye Lian suddenly stepped 2 steps forward and grabbed Lin Luanqi's left hand. This sudden move shocked Lin Luanqi and Ling Mo, especially Ling Mo, whose expression changed immediately. Ye Lian wasn't the type to touch people, as she was always in Ling Mo's control, even though it was minimal. If Ye Lian was off Ling Mo's leash, she would surely become a killing machine. Taking the initiative to touch a human like this was a first for Ye Lian. Shana looked confused for a second, and then walked towards Lin Luanqiu to sniff at her. "That's so weird. You have a bit of blood smell," said Shana while licking her lips. "You guys." Lin Luanqi started to panic. "Smell of blood? I don't remember that you got hurt on the way," Ling Mo said, frowning with his eyebrows. He started to think, as a fully mutated zombie, and more evolved, Ye Lian really has a sharper smelling ability. Through the clothes, she could actually sniff the light smell of blood, which normal people could never do. But Lin Wanqiu shouldn't have gotten hurt on the way. Looking at her, she seemed to have something embarrassing to say. Ling Mo suddenly seemed to realize something and asked, "Are you on your period?" "What the fuck? When did my period come?" "Come." Lin Luanqi blushed and said, clenching her teeth. Ling Mo embarrassedly made a cough and asked, "So you actually got hurt?" Lin Luanqi was silent for a few seconds and then pulled her left sleeve. When she showed her little arm, Ling Mo gasped. A piece of cloth was wrapped across her arm. Blood had already dyed the cloth to a black-red color. Couldn't even see what the original color was. The reason why the bloody smell was light was because there was a light smell of alcohol spreading out. Ling Mo immediately realized she used an alcoholic drink in the bar to disinfect it. But the wound was deep, and she couldn't really recover. Plus, the alcoholic drink wasn't real alcohol, so it's hard to say if it could really disinfect or not. Without strong willpower and endurance, there was no way a girl could suffer from this kind of pain and act as if nothing happened. "No wonder you want to go to the hospital with me. You couldn't hold on any longer. You never told Sherbin before, did you?" asked Ling Mo with doubt. Lin Luanqi shook her head and said, "There was no reason for telling him at that time. But I'm kind of regretting it now. If I had told him, he wouldn't have turned out like this. He was much better before. All because of this goddamn disaster changed everyone." Ling Mo deeply looked at her and took a bottle of hydrogen peroxide and said, "Stop blaming yourself. I'll disinfect you first. This is so expensive." Lin Luanqi said, a bit hesitating, "No worries, when we get to the hospital, we can probably restock." Ling Mo smiled and controlled Ye Lian's arm that was grabbing Lin Luanqi's arm, and Shana slowly unveiled the cloth that was surrounding it. Although Ling Mo was prepared, but after seeing the deep wound, he couldn't help frowning. After disinfecting with hydrogen peroxide, Ling Mo applied hemostat, and then used a clean bandage to wrap to finally finish applying first aid. Seeing Ling Mo taking out a lot of things like magic, Lin Luanqi felt unbelievable. "You guys are amazing. It's not hard to find a pharmacy in the city, but it's hard to get all these things and survive. After all, these pharmacies are all in the big, infected areas." Ling Mo smiled and thought that with 2 mutated zombies, these places were holy lands with free entrance and exits. "Okay, I think you can probably make it to the hospital like this." Although Ling Mo wasn't really good at patching up wounds, after wrapping the bandage onto Lin Luanqi's arm, it at least looked a lot better than it originally was. It looked at least decent with the help of Ye Lian and Shana. "You actually really didn't need to do this. We were just under a partnership. There was no need for you to go that far for me," Lin Luanqi said with a low voice. Ling Mo smiled and said, "Just helping out. Also not trying to be nosy or anything, but you have nothing to do with Sherbin's death." He could tell that although Lin Luanqi looked calm, but her eyes started to turn red. Losing her last companion made Lin Luanqi upset and bewildered. Ling Mo was going to tell her how Sherbin eventually had betrayed them, but he thought that wasn't a really good idea afterwards. Knowing the truth probably wouldn't make Lin Luanqi feel any better. After a long, crazy night, it wasn't far from morning. Everyone took the chance to rest and left the gym when it reached morning. After a simple breakfast before leaving, Lin Luanqi asked where Sherbin died and when to see him for one last time. Looking at Lin Luanqi leaving the barn, Ling Mo was thinking in his head, after a few hours of letting the information of Sherbin's death sink in, Lin Luanqi has finally accepted the fact that Sherbin is dead, or else she wouldn't have the courage to look at his corpse. After combing Ye Lian and Shana's hair and wiping their face, Ling Mo took them away. The 2 mutated zombies were already used to being taken care of by Ling Mo. Though Shana had her memory recovered and Ye Lian started to have some self-awareness, they both could actually already do these easy things by themselves, but they still let Ling Mo to do these things for them since they liked it. And, of course, Ling Mo enjoyed these moments as well, besides taking a little bit of advantage here and there. Most importantly, he enjoyed being able to have a time like this, which during Apocalypse was very rare. He purposely slowed down, and when he reached the stairs, Lin Luanqi was already there waiting with her eyes red. "Let's go," said Lin Luanqi before Ling Mo said anything. Ling Mo felt relieved, because if she didn't try to take the initiative to say something, he honestly really wouldn't know how to comfort her. Not to mention that it's no use for other people to say something for those kinds of things. The person in question needs to move forward by themselves first. In front of the gym, the zombies were walking around slowly. In wide open areas like this, if someone had popped their head out, they would definitely get the zombies' attention right away, and if they started to fight, they would probably attract even more zombies that were hiding in the corner. So, Ling Mo chose to bypass them. After crossing the square by leaning on the flower bed and carefully walking through, Lin Luanqi pointed at the building with a high point on the top that was very far away and said, "That is the school hospital." Although they could see the school hospital's roof from afar, it didn't look so far under a linear distance, but if they had followed the road path, it would take a long time to get there. Not to mention there's a lot of zombies. Sometimes when you kill a few zombies, the others will get attracted by the smell of blood and come over. In order not to be surrounded, Ling Mo would always kill zombies on the way, and then take everyone else to quietly sneak to the backside of the buildings while the other zombies got attracted to blood. There were some pros and cons with this method though. The bad point of this method was because some zombies that hid near the corners of buildings would also be attracted to the smell of blood, and they would run and accidentally bump into Ling Mo and the others. The good point in this method was that although they sometimes got caught by the corner zombies, they had two mutated girl zombies that were both powerful and fast. They would be able to finish off the zombies in the backside of the buildings before the other zombies got attracted to them. Ling Mo was extremely smart when it came to fighting zombies. For places with a small space and no obstacles, Ling Mo would either use his psychic power to stop them and let them come to die by themselves, or use the spirit tentacles to distract them when they were fighting and then find an opening to kill them. Although normal people couldn't really tell that psychic powers were being used, Ling Mo could guess something weird was going on since she had been with the three of them for a whole day, especially when the night before they were able to detect the smell of blood coming from her. She felt really suspicious about Ye Lian and Shana. Normal people shouldn't be so sensitive about the smell of blood. Not to mention, she used an alcoholic drink to cover the smell and disinfect. Even though she was smart and suspicious of them, she would never guess that the two girls who looked so normal were in truth actually mutated zombies. But watching Ling Mo for a whole day made her realize something about Ling Mo's superpower. Although she wanted to ask and confirm, she realized Ling Mo was always unclear when he talked about his superpower, so she decided not to ask as she didn't want to be so nosy. Sherbin's death probably made her anxious about her situation, so when there were a lot of zombies, she would also help fighting. Though she didn't have a good body, but with her bullet timing superpower, she also killed a lot of zombies. On the way they came across a lab floor, Ling Mo became interested when he thought there might be mutated zombies in there, so he made an excuse of resting and took everyone inside. He left Shana and Lin Luanqi to stay at the first floor and took Ye Lian upstairs. After all, his real intention in coming to X City University was to hunt down mutated zombies, collect as much gels as he can, to let Shana and Ye Lian to evolve, especially Ye Lian, who is at a critical point of evolving. As far as she passes this obstacle, she can evolve to an even more advanced zombie. Although it would have been easier to do this after sending Lin Luanqi to the hospital, this was the first time he saw so many mutated zombies gathering in a lab. It really would suck to miss this opportunity. When he came out with the idea of resting, Lin Luanqi didn't even say anything, even though she thought the excuse was kind of weird. She would never think that Ling Mo was actually going to hunt down mutated zombies. She would never associate it with this kind of crazy thing, but she thought maybe Ling Mo was going to collect some special things inside the building. There were a lot of zombies in the lab. Some mutated zombies also started to appear. If they bumped into mutated zombies in an open space, Ling Mo might have been a bit nervous. But places like this, even if Ye Lian doesn't do anything, relying on the environment and superpower, he could still finish off those mutated zombies. To save time, Ling Mo didn't go head-to-head with the zombies. Instead, he let Ye Lian to fight using her strong close combat fighting skills while he stood on the side, using spirit tentacles to distract them, and then used a knife to stab them. With good teamwork, this method turned out to be very useful. Usually the mutated zombies would be dead before they had gotten a chance to show their true powers. With just 10 minutes, Ling Mo had collected 5 zombie gels, although the purity was quite low, but he was still satisfied. There was definitely a lot of mutated zombies in this semi-closed school, where all the zombies had gathered together in. Ling Mo was thinking about how he could cultivate some more mutated zombies with his power to increase his fighting force, but it would take a lot of time and energy as well as resources to cultivate some. Ye Lian and Shana would probably have starved to death, though, before he successfully cultivated them. Ling Mo had actually bred a mutated zombie before, but the level was really low. The puppet zombie that Ling Mo was controlling was a mutated zombie, but its gel was extremely small due to Ling Mo feeding it carrions. So Ling Mo realized mutated zombies can eat meat to fill their stomach, but it wouldn't be possible for them to evolve. Eating carrions can't help zombies recover the energy they used, so the zombie puppet was actually not so different than normal zombies. Even normal zombies eat human flesh as a #1 choice. Simply put, for mutated zombies, zombie gel is the main course while human flesh is sorta like a dessert and regular meat can only be considered as leftovers. Ling Mo couldn't help but laugh when he thought about how he had wasted a evolved zombie due to the lack of knowledge. But there was nothing he could do about that. These zombies were all new to him. The only thing that Ling Mo knows right now was that if they keep evolving, they would eventually gain some consciousness. While he was killing the rest of the mutated zombies, Ling Mo used his psychic powers to gather the other zombies in classroom and then lock them all in there to avoid unnecessary fights. Although there were more normal zombies than mutated ones, the normal ones were too easy to defeat since they didn't have any consciousness, and as long as you knew their habits, it wasn't a hard job to kill them. Even normal people can still survive fighting these types of zombies as long as they stayed calm. But surviving and going anywhere you want were two different things. Normal people wouldn't even dare to think of walking across a school gathering with zombies like what Ling Mo did. After giving Ye Lian a zombie gel, he took out another gel and put the remaining 3 gels into a plastic bag. He predicted that the gels would merge into one higher purity gel within a short period of time. He believed the process of how a zombie evolves was probably due to the viruses eating up each other. After going back downstairs, Ling Mo found a chance to give Shana the gel, and then asked Lin Luanqi, "We're almost there. Why don't you tell me what's it like over there, since we probably need to stay there for a bit as well?" The school hospital was just a slightly bigger clinic, but you can get things that you can't find in a pharmacy. Although Ling Mo promised Lin Luanqi to take her to the hospital, he wasn't going to leave empty-handed. Lin Luanqi curiously looked at Ye Lian, and then looked at Ling Mo. She couldn't tell what had happened inside beside the fact that they fought with zombies. After listening to what Ling Mo said, she had to give up guessing and said, "When I was in the self-rescuing team, we had the idea of going to the school hospital because some of the classmates were hurt, but we gave up afterwards because it was too hard. I still know a bit about the school hospital, though. There's a doctor on duty and 2 nurses. Not really sure if there were any patients when the disaster happened, though. But I know the area is bigger. It wouldn't be a problem if there were zombies roaming around. Even if things go south, we could still manage to get out." Despite what she said, she was thinking the numbers of zombies in the school is for sure less than this lab building. If Ling Mo and Ye Lian could go upstairs, then the school would be nothing for them. Regardless of this thought, Lin Luanqi was still really careful about it, so she reminded them anyways. "How long is it going to take to get there?" Ling Mo asked after contemplating. Lin Luanqi thought and said, "Maximum 5 minutes, but I don't suggest walking through the big road because there's a basketball court on the way. There used to be a lot of people there before, which probably means that there's a lot of zombies now. Why don't we take the shorter path?" "Whatever you say," Ling Mo said and laughed. When he turned around, he suddenly heard Lin Luanqi ask, "I actually wanted to ask, but I admit I'm being a bit nosy, and I want to go to the hospital with you guys and figure out how to survive, but this question has been bothering me a lot." "Say it." Ling Mo turned around. She looked embarrassed while he felt puzzled at the same time. Lin Luanqi looked at him deeply and then suddenly looked at Ye Lian and said, "Since Ye Lian is from our school, even if she doesn't know what's going on in school, she should at least know where the paths leads to, right?" "But," SHIT, Ling Mo thought. He only thought of asking her to lead him, but he forgot that Ye Lian was a student of X City University. If she showed no knowledge of the school, it would cause Lin Luanqi to be suspicious. But Ling Mo's reaction was fast. After seeing Lin Luanqi looking at him in a weird way, Ling Mo made a hollow laugh and showed a second of slight grief in his eyes and said, "She is suffering from amnesia." "Amnesia? Ow!" Lin Luanqi was shocked, but when she wanted to ask more, she stopped after seeing Ling Mo's emotion in his eyes. Ling Mo's emotion wasn't fake. To Ye Lian, she was actually no different than someone who was suffering from amnesia. This was technically the best explanation in this situation where he couldn't say the truth. "Sorry, didn't mean to be so curious." Lin Luanqi felt a sudden regret, blaming herself for minding about other people's business. She just couldn't help herself from asking the question ever since she became suspicious of Ye Lian and Shana. Ling Mo didn't help either due to him being so mysterious and abnormal. After seeing Ling Mo's reaction, the way she looked at Ye Lian changed. Lin Luanqi was actually afraid of this extremely beautiful but cold girl and tried to avoid her. But she was thinking what terrible thing had happened to this girl that caused her into getting amnesia. Ling Mo was willing to keep this girl who had lost her memory. This was what other people wouldn't be willing to do. In this world full of danger, it's like walking on thin ice for normal people, not to mention someone who suffers from amnesia. Her curiousness must have brought up a sad memory for Ling Mo. Lin Luanqi felt sorry. She sighed and embarrassedly said, "I'm really sorry." "It's fine," said Ling Mo. He was actually quite sad, especially since he has to tell other people that Ye Lian lost memory, while in actuality, she was no longer a human being. Good thing is when she recovers her memory in the future, she wouldn't have to feel sad about becoming a zombie, which is the best ending for Ling Mo. If she could recover like Shana, that would also be great. But right now, he can only peacefully help Ye Lian recover her memory and gain her sanity. Ling Mo didn't feel like staying. He packed up a bit, and then everyone moved on. This time Lin Luanqi took them to walk into a small garden, took a shortcut, and headed to the hospital. Looking through a row of trees, Ling Mo found out there really was a basketball court on the other side. There were lots of zombies walking around there. If they really had decided to plow through there, it would have taken them forever to get to the hospital. As the best school in X City University had a lot of facilities. Ling Mo originally thought that the school's hospital size would be the same as a clinic, but never would he believe it was a European building with a red cross attached to the top, connected to a garden. There was only a little bit of zombies here. After they killed the zombies with ease, they went into the school hospital. The gate of the hospital had been broken by the zombies. Half of the door panel was hung to the wall, which looked like it was going to drop at any time. It made a GA sound when the wind was blowing on it, making it swing also. Looking from the gate is a landscape hall. The emptiness made it feel creepy even though it was bright enough. The staircase is facing diagonally to the gate. You could see a puddle of blood that has been dried out. The ivory color of the wall was spattered with blood stains, which glowed extremely bright under the sunlight. "The consulting room is right at the first floor," said Lin Luanqi. Ling Mo nodded, held tightly on the short knife, and waved at Ye Lian and Shana. The three of them went in and quickly and checked all the rooms on the floor. What made Ling Mo felt weird was that there were no zombies. On the second thought, there shouldn't be a lot of people in the school hospital. Maybe when the disaster happened, the mutated zombies had already chased after those who were escaping. It was a good thing that there were zombies. Ling Mo took them to the consulting room after checking. Nobody died in the consulting room. Besides a layer of dust on the desk, everything looked the same. Even a laptop remained opened. It was just turned off because it ran out of power. There were some broken tiles and half of a broken teacup on the floor, probably dropped from the table when school doctors were running away, or maybe a zombie accidentally pushed it off. While Ling Mo kicked the things to the side, he also reminded Lin Luanqi, "Be careful. I've never been here before." Lin Luanqi seemed to be curious. She looked carefully at how the two desks were arranged and then went around it to open the drawer. There was only a mobile phone and the school doctor's personal belongings like beverages. She took out everything useful and then put it on the desk. Ling Mo took some stuff that he thought was decent and then gave the rest to Lin Luanqi because he didn't have enough space in his bag. But while the drawers were opened one after the another, something surprising thing was found. Some bottles of vitamins, and it looked upscale. All of them were used for extra nutrition. For most survivors, insufficient nutrition was quite common. Even Ling Mo himself can only just fill his stomach. The food couldn't be compared to the food they used to eat. If he hadn't gained some strength while he was evolving, he probably wouldn't be able to keep up the fighting pace right now because of insufficient nutrition. This seems good. Lin Luanqi took one of the bottles, looked at it. Her eyes widened. The expired date is quite long. Although she felt a bit reluctant, but she gave all the medicine to Ling Mo. This should be useful to you. Ling Mo took all the medicine and put it in the bag. He hesitated and took one out and gave it to Lin Luanqi. Take it. Your body is very weak. Lin Luanqi opened her mouth ready to reject, but eventually bit her bottom lip, took the bottle, and sincerely said, "Thank you." Even though they got something good that they didn't expect to get, their original plan was to come here to cure Lin Luanqi and try their best to find regular medicines and first aid supplies. Those things were probably even more important than food. You can get food anywhere as long as you were brave enough and good enough, but medicine was different. Pharmacies are scarce. You can't find it anywhere you go to, and if you're injured, it's hard to move on. If you only go look for medicine when things happen, you are basically dead meat. Ling Mo immediately realized that this room was just this big. Besides the bottle of vitamins they found in the drawer, there was only a small amount of medicine in the cabinet, so there should probably be some more in the other rooms. Ling Mo was a bit puzzled at first, but felt relieved afterwards. Medicine was not that urgent, but Lin Luanqi's wounds needed to be taken care of right away. All the tools and machines to cure Lin Luanqi was here in this building. They finally found half bottle of povidone iodine solution and sterilized saline water. But when everyone circled around the tools and machines to help cure Lin Luanqi, the atmosphere became weird. It's fine to let the two mutated zombies try to treat the wound, but what if the blood stimulated them when they are sewing up the wound? This is no joke. Even if Ling Mo could control them not to attack her, it would still expose themselves as zombies. So Ye Lian and Shana had been excluded from helping. Ling Mo looked at the stitch on his hand. He braced himself and asked, "Can you do it yourself?" Lin Luanqi thought really hard, then hesitated and shook her head. "I can't." "Then I'll do it. There's no other options. I have to do it." Ling Mo decided to do it anyways. But Ling Luanqi deeply looked at him and suddenly asked him, "Do you know how?" Ling Mo paused and used an uncertain tone of voice and said, "Would it be fine if I told you I know how to sew socks?" What he said was actually true. He had sewn socks for Ye Lian in the past. Although Ye Lian and him were childhood sweethearts, they've never really confirmed any relationship between themselves. Ling Mo sincerely loved her, but never said it to her due to the fact that he thought Ye Lian was not in his league. To raise his personal value, Ling Mo had been striving very hard, but all the hard work and dreams were all in vain because of the apocalypse. But for Ling Mo, his focus had never changed. In the past, it had been Ye Lian, and right now it still is, with also Shana, who is fighting with him. So under the situation in the past, Ling Mo would never ask Ye Lian to do anything, not to mention sewing socks. Lin Luanqi showed a very weird look, thinking that it was the only way. She gritted her teeth and nodded her head and said, "I appreciate it." Taking a deep breath, Ling Mo suddenly looked so concentrated and put in the first stitch. Lin Luanqi showed a bit of pain. In order not to get distracted, she looked away. After having evolved his mental strength, his concentration level had become much higher than other people, so he was fast and accurate when he was sewing. He didn't have a problem with sewing, but he had a problem in making the stitch look pretty. After he tied the knot, cut the stitch, and looked at the wound he sewed, he looked embarrassed. Lin Luanqi looked back. The moment she saw the wound, she twitched the corner of her eyes a bit. Ling Mo quickly wrapped it up and thought, although it might look ugly, there's really no time to be picky about these kinds of things. Ye Lian took a bottle of water, an anti-inflammatory drug, and handed it over to Lin Luanqi. Although this wasn't the proper way to heal a stitch, it should be fine. After this moment, she can only rely on Lady Luck to see if it heals properly. But after sewing everything, she didn't move anymore. Ling Mo had to help her up, and then went to find a ward for her to rest.